The apocalypse has descended, and civilization is in ruins. Chen Mo, an automotive modifier, merges with a dilapidated bus, activating the mobile home system. Seeking upgrades? Simply recruit exclusive female companions. The sharpshooter policewoman is on board. Unlock the 360-degree electromagnetic gun turret, unleashing a barrage that leaves no corpses unscathed. The genius female doctor has joined. Unlock the energy engineering laboratory, where a perpetual motion engine is within reach. The tsundere young lady seems of little use, but wait, she can unlock a luxurious restaurant and KTV, boosting food production and morale by 200. While others are fighting over scraps, Chen Mo drives his land aircraft carrier, accompanied by a convoy of female companions, singing in a wasteland as he searches for the next city to modify. Chapter 1. Activation. A crimson fog has enveloped the world for 3 days. Crunch. The last morsel of compressed biscuit crumbles between his teeth, the dry remnants scraping his throat, delivering a sharp sting. Chen Mo huddles in the storeroom of the auto repair shop, peering through the oil-streaked glass window at the bleak world outside. The air is thick with an acrid blend of rust and decay, a nauseating concoction. Outside lies hell. The cacophony of roars, gnawing sounds, and the occasional wretched scream creates an unending symphony that torments every survivor's nerves. Chen Mo dares not lose focus. He licks the last crumbs of biscuit clean and carefully folds a wrapper to stow it away. In this Dothworld scenario, anything might prove useful. He is the modifier at Black Hand Zhao Auto Repair Shop, where before the apocalypse, the boss Zhao Tian exploited him and colleagues ostracized him out of jealousy for his skills. He felt like a ghost, his only solace found in the mechanical parts he worked with. But now, those petty rivalries seem laughable. He wonders if the corpulent Zhao Tian has become one of the monsters outside, or perhaps a meal for them. Surviving is now his sole thought. Chen Mo's gaze drifts through the crack of the storeroom door to the forgotten behemoth in the corner of the workshop. It is a scrapped armored bus. Its black exterior, with rugged lines, exudes a brutal beauty. It is said to have been the whimsical creation of a wealthy eccentric, intended as a personal toy for the apocalypse, only to be abandoned midway when funding ran dry. The rich man's end never came, but everyone else's did. A wild thought takes root in Chen Mo's mind. Rather than sit here and starve or be torn apart by monsters, why not take a gamble? For 3 days, he has lived like a rat in the shadows. By day, he hides in the storeroom, meticulously planning each action. At night, he sneaks into the workshop, using the dim light of emergency lamps to repair the steel giant. He scavenged batteries from 3 discarded trucks, connecting them to solve the power issue from a scrap loader. He salvaged usable hydraulic hoses to replace the bus's aging components. In the most perilous moment, he crawled through the wrecks in search of a matching spark plug. An infected creature, its decayed and twisted face, loomed less than a meter away. He held his breath, his heartbeat seemingly suspended. Fortunately, the monster appeared uninterested in the immobile corpse, roaring as it staggered past. Now, everything is ready. Chen Mo takes a deep breath, pushes open the storeroom door, crouches low, and rushes to the bus's driver's seat with utmost speed. Bang! The heavy door slams shut, muffling the maddening noises outside. The world seems to quiet instantly. Inside the driver's cabin, exposed wires and makeshift welds create a rugged industrial punk aesthetic. This is Chen Mo's finest work. He sits in the driver's seat, feeling the cold metal beneath him, a wave of unprecedented satisfaction surging within. He turns the key he has just connected. Virum. The dormant engine awakens with 2 deep growls, akin to a giant stretching after a long slumber. The vehicle begins to tremble violently, the engine coughing as if it might stall again at any moment. Chen Mo's expression remains unchanged as hands move like shadows across the dust-laden control panel. Insufficient fuel pressure. Bypass valve activated. Circuit overload. Switching to auxiliary battery 3. Air intake blocked. Initiating forced ventilation. In that moment, his mind transforms into a supercomputer, processing every fault with precision. At last, after a series of violent vibrations, the engine's roar stabilizes into a powerful, rhythmic growl, like a beast finding its breath. He has succeeded. A surge of immense joy and fatigue washes over him. Chen Mo leans back, exhaling deeply. His hand unconsciously grips the cold, rough steering wheel. Just as his palm makes contact, an aberration ensues. Zzz. An indescribable flow of data courses through his arm, flooding his brain, racing down his spine, electrifying his entire being. His vision is engulfed in a blinding blue light. Then a cold, emotionless mechanical voice booms in the depths of his mind. Detecting compatible host. Gene lock sequence matching. Compatibility 100. Mobile home core system. Binding in progress. 1050. 99. Binding successful. Chun Mo opens his eyes, the agonizing throb in his head receding like a tide, gasping for air, drenched in cold sweat. What just happened? A hallucination? No. That chilling mechanical voice resounds again, carrying an undeniable authority. Welcome to your mobile home, Commander. Chapter 2. Recruitment via radio. Commander? Chun Mo is momentarily taken aback. This voice resonates directly in his mind, cold and clear, devoid of any human emotion. He shakes his head violently, attempting to dispel this auditory hallucination, but the voice lingers like a brand seared into his consciousness. Before he can gather his thoughts, a flash of light catches his eye. A pale blue holographic screen unfolds before him. The screen is semi-transparent, allowing him to see the chaotic wiring and dusty dashboard of the driver's cabin beyond it. At the center of the screen, a three-dimensional model identical to the armored bus beneath him rotates slowly. Every detail is vividly clear, from the rough welding seams at the front to the makeshift exhaust pipe he hastily attached at the rear. Below the model, lines of data cascade like a waterfall, eventually freezing. Mobile home, basic armored bus status, half-damaged body structure integrity 45, core components severely missing armor. 5,100 barely adequate iron plating, only capable of fending off low-speed shrapnel and small scavenger's engine. 15,100 a patchwork of junk, prone to failure at any moment. Urgent replacement recommended. Space. 210 currently available space is 2 units, while the remaining area is occupied by clutter and inaccessible zones function module. 0 your abode is utterly barren, resembling a crude tin can energy points. 0 you are in dire financial straits. Unable even to activate the interior lights, Chun Mo read each word deliberately. With every line, the corners of his mouth twitched. The remarks in parentheses, rife with unabashed sarcasm, were akin to a direct slap in the face. This wretched system had a sharp tongue. Though its evaluations were harsh, they were piercingly accurate. This vehicle, which he had regarded as his pride, was nothing more than a heap of scrap in the eyes of the system. With an armor rating of merely 5 points, it seemed even the mutated wild dogs could gnaw through it. The engine, a heavyweight, was likely to malfunction at any moment. Wasn't this akin to opening a blind box? Encountering a thank you for your patronage amidst a horde of corpses would indeed be a grand spectacle. Chun Mo's expression darkened. He had once fancied himself the creator of a modern-day Noah's Ark, only to realize it was merely a metal coffin poised to fall apart. Just as his spirits plummeted, the mechanical voice resonated again, illuminating the only path forward. Detecting that the commander is in a state of confusion and self-doubt, this system will provide a tutorial. To upgrade your metal coffin into a true fortress for the apocalypse, you cannot rely solely on your own strength. The core function of this system, the coexistence protocol, has been activated. You must recruit female crew members who possess a high degree of compatibility with this system to become your exclusive pilots. What on earth? Chun Mo thought he had misheard and couldn't help but voice his disbelief. Recruit female crew members? Even in this apocalyptic world, was such absurdity still a consideration? Surely this system was not some frivolous construct. Before he could voice his skepticism, new explanations popped up beside the 3D model on the system interface. Each successfully recruited exclusive pilot will unlock and manage a unique function module based on her personal strengths and potential. Examples: a top-tier sharpshooter may unlock a weapon platform, an outstanding biologist might unlock a medical laboratory, a genius engineer could unlock a modification workshop. The higher the crew member's compatibility, the greater the level of the unlocked function module and her potential for growth. The more crew members you have, the more function modules your abode can activate simultaneously, enhancing its capabilities. Warning: energy is the lifeline of your abode. Movement, combat, production, everything consumes energy points. Once energy points are depleted, your abode will be rendered completely inoperative, transforming into an immobile iron tomb. Tutorial concluded. First task issued. Within 24 hours, recruit your first crew member to install the first functionality module in your abode. Gazing at the luminous screen before him, Chun Mo fell into a prolonged silence. He finally comprehended. This vehicle was his greatest trump card in the apocalypse. Those women endowed with unique talents were the keys to activating and amplifying this trump card. This was not about trivial emotions. It was a matter of the purest and most pragmatic resource integration. What he needed were professionals capable of standing on their own, partners who could transform this dilapidated vehicle into a bastion of war, not delicate individuals in need of protection. How intriguing! Chun Mo licked his cracked lips, the despair in his eyes evaporating, replaced by the thrill of a hunter spotting prey. He was no longer the exploited, marginalized modifier. From this moment on, he was the commander of this mobile abode. His goal was to transform this battered bus into a formidable land carrier capable of traversing the wasteland with impunity. Yet a pressing question arose. Where could he find such individuals, especially those highly compatible women? The world was shrouded in red mist, with cities teeming with deranged, infected beings and survivors who would resort to any means for survival. Human nature was far more terrifying than the monsters. Venturing out in this vehicle before securing the keys, he was likely to become a target due to this conspicuous metal coffin. He had little faith that the 5 points of armor could withstand much assault. He needed a strategy, one that involved active selection rather than passive waiting. Chun Mo's gaze swept rapidly across the cramped cockpit. Finally, it settled on an inconspicuous corner beneath the passenger seat. There lay an old shortwave radio, a discarded relic from the factory that he had repaired during his idle time. After the apocalypse, all communication signals had been severed phones and the internet had become useless artifacts. However, this shortwave radio, which did not rely on base stations, might still function. A bold plan rapidly took shape in his mind. Instead of flailing about like a headless chicken, why not turn tables? What was his greatest advantage at present? Safety. This battered yet structurally sound armored bus was among the few shelters in the city capable of withstanding minor attacks from infected beings. What else? Resources. Even before the apocalypse struck, he had a habit of stockpiling food and water. Though limited, if used sparingly, it could sustain him for quite some time. Safety and sustenance wasn't that the most valuable currency in the apocalypse? He could leverage this information gap to attract capable yet beleaguered survivors to seek him out. With this realization, Chun Mo hesitated no longer. He bent down, retrieving the dust-covered shortwave radio and deftly connecting it to a backup power source. Zzzzz. Upon switching it on, a cacophony of static filled the air. Chun Mo frowned, patiently adjusting the knobs. As he slowly scanned through different frequencies, all he encountered was the deathly silence of static. It felt as though he were the last person on Earth. Just as he was about to give up, his finger turned the knob past a specific threshold. Sasha, help, a faint, desperate cry flickered momentarily. There was a signal. Chun Mo's spirits lifted as he carefully adjusted the knob, locking onto the frequency with precision. This time, the voices coming through the radio were clearer, though still a disjointed chorus of survivors' calls for help and wails of despair. It resembled a makeshift public distress channel. However, the information was too chaotic to be of any use to him. He did not need mere victims, he required valuable crew members. Taking a deep breath, Chun Mo grasped the radio's microphone and pressed the talk button. Clearing his throat, he endeavored to make his voice sound steady and trustworthy. Ahem, calling all survivors. This is the home base mobile fortress. He paused, allowing others a moment to respond, then continued in a tone that brooked no argument. I possess a thoroughly reinforced armored sanctuary capable of withstanding large-scale hordes, providing an absolutely secure refuge. I am currently seeking survivors endowed with exceptional skills to join my team as we endeavor to forge a new order in this apocalyptic world. To enhance the persuasiveness of his message, he added a tantalizing incentive. Food and water are abundant. Let me reiterate, this is the homeland Arkansas. I require capable partners, not burdens. If you possess specialized skills in combat, medicine, engineering, or research, please respond immediately. I shall determine whether to come to your aid based on your location and value. Upon concluding his declaration, he released the call button. The entire channel was instantly enveloped in silence. The previous cacophony of cries and pleas for help had vanished. Clearly, everyone was rendered speechless by the weight of his broadcast. Chun Mo remained patient, quietly awaiting the response. He was confident that the bait he had cast was sufficient to lure the big fish he sought. His voice, transmitted through the waves, penetrated the thick crimson mist, reaching every unknown corner of this forsaken city and resonating in the ears of every survivor grappling with despair. Chapter 3. Response in the channel. An oppressive silence reigned. After Chun Mo released the call button, the only sound that remained in the radio station was the faint crackle of static, reminiscent of an unending snowfall. He remained silent, his fingertips resting on the cold casing, patiently awaiting a response. The bait had been cast. Whether a shark or a swarm of piranhas would bite, or if nothing at all would surface, was left to fate. This profound stillness persisted for what felt like an eternity. Then, abruptly, the stifling quiet was shattered. A fraud. Another bastard trying to lure us out as bait. A man's furious shout erupted, brimming with distrust. Is it true? Do you really have an armored vehicle? Please, help me. I'm trapped in the restroom of the Times Mall. And I have plenty of food to trade with you. A woman's voice followed, tinged with desperation and a hint of flattery. Location. Report your location, you damned fool. My wife is a nurse. She can administer injections. She can act as a medic. Hurry and save us. In an instant, the public channel transformed into a cacophony reminiscent of a bustling marketplace. Desperate pleas, furious curses, and countless probing voices intertwined, vividly showcasing the myriad facets of humanity in a world on the brink of collapse. Chinemo listened impassively. This was not what he sought. He needed calm. Professional elites with formidable skills, not a gaggle of fledglings merely crying out for salvation. His ship, the Homeward Bound, was not a charity. Every position was invaluable. Just as he prepared to shut down the radio and attempt another channel, a calm, clear, yet subtly urgent female voice pierced through the din like a sharp ice pick, reaching his ears with uncanny precision. This is Su Qing. Her voice was not loud, yet it commanded immediate attention, silencing the channel momentarily. There were no tears, no pleas. Only the steady composure of a soldier executing a mission. Chun Mo raised an eyebrow, his finger retracting from the off button. This was intriguing. Requesting tactical support. The woman continued, her terminology far too professional for an ordinary survivor. I am trapped on the rooftop of the 7th police station in the Southern District. Visual estimation indicates over 50 infected bodies are gathering below, and their numbers continue to rise. I am a former detective, holding a shooting license, proficient in firearms. Currently, my ammunition is running low. Repeat, my ammunition is running low. Requesting fire support and extraction. Her information was succinct and devoid of superfluous words. Location, enemy status, personal value, and current predicament, all conveyed with clarity in just a few sentences. Chen Mo's eyes brightened. This was a professional, in stark contrast to the others in the channel, who merely wailed and begged. She was a breath of fresh air. A detective? A shooting license? Specialization in combat shooting. This is precisely the kind of operator tailor-made for the weapon platform. Chun Mo resolved instantly. She would be the first crew member of the Homeward Bound. He had no interest in the renewed clamoring and cries for help that erupted in the channel. Grasping the microphone firmly, he pressed the call button. The surrounding noise was instantly subdued by his signal. Address. He uttered 2 words, his voice steady with an undeniable authority. On the other end, Su Qing, who was calmly observing the horde of corpses below from her rooftop cover, paused momentarily. She had initially approached this sudden broadcast from the Homeward Bound with a glimmer of hope, anticipating unreasonable demands, or perhaps a ruse. However, the response was immediate and decisive, exuding an aura of formidable confidence. Southern District, 7th Police Station. She replied without hesitation. Wait for me. Chen Mo concluded with those last 2 words. And without waiting for any further response, he abruptly switched off the shortwave radio. The world fell back into silence. He had no need for further dialogue. Action was the most compelling proof. Commander, a wise decision. The system's voice resonated in his mind. Survivor Su Qing's personal profile aligns remarkably with your requirements. Preliminary compatibility exceeds 90. Talents like this are exceedingly rare in the early days of the apocalypse. Chen Mo paid no heed to the system's retrospective remarks. His gaze was fixed, his hands swiftly maneuvering over the controls. The engine, which had previously operated smoothly, now roared to life under his command, emanating a deep growl. Virum. The fuel pump's power was maximized, and the secondary intake valve was forcibly opened. The cobbled-together engine emitted a strained moan as it pushed its limits. The entire vehicle trembling violently, as if a slumbering steel beast was awakening from its slumber. The black armored bus, parked in the center of the repair shop, suddenly illuminated its headlights, piercing the dimness of the workshop with 2 blinding beams. Buckle up, Chen Mo barked, as if issuing orders to both himself and the vehicle that was about to become his companion in this harsh world. He slammed the accelerator down. Boom. The engine's roar ascended to a crescendo, and enormous torque transferred through the drive shaft to the wheels. This steel beast, dormant for years, finally revealed its fangs. Crash. A thunderous sound erupted as the flimsy roll-up door of the repair shop crumbled before the armored bus, as fragile as a sheet of paper. Instantly torn apart, and sent flying. Countless metal shards erupted outward. The black front of the vehicle, embodying an unmatched aesthetic of violence, leaped forth from the darkness of the workshop, charging into the apocalypse shrouded in crimson fog for the first time. Roar? A few infected beings meandering at the workshop entrance were drawn to the sudden noise, their decaying faces reflecting confusion, soon followed by the instinctual urge to attack. However, before the weighty steel construct, their flesh and blood proved utterly feeble. Chen-Mo barely turned the steering wheel. Splat! The armored bus barreled forward without flourish, simply rolling over its adversaries. The vehicle barely jolted, as if it had merely traversed an inconspicuous stone. Chen-Mo glanced through the windshield, observing only indistinguishable puddles of flesh in the rearview mirror. His expression remained completely impassive, ignoring the gathering horde of infected beings drawn by the commotion. He tightened his grip on the steering wheel, redirecting the vehicle according to the mental map in his memory. The armored bus rampaged through the streets, bulldozing aside abandoned cars and barricades without mercy. This half-damaged steel beast, as the system had described, unveiled its feral and menacing side for the first time to both its commander and the brutal reality of the apocalypse. Unstoppable. Chapter 4. Collision. The homeward bound roared. This contraption, pieced together from countless discarded parts, unleashed a wild power that belied its shabby exterior under Chen-Mo's extreme control. The black armored bus, like an unrestrained steel beast, rampaged through the desolate streets engulfed in crimson fog. Along the way, the staggering infected beings instinctively gravitated towards the roar of the engine, shuffling forward with stiff movements, their rancid mouths agape as they attempted to lunge at the moving metal canister. Then, there was nothing further. Chen-Mo could scarcely muster the energy to turn the steering wheel. Bang! Splat! The vehicle merely jolted slightly, as the once human monstrosities were effortlessly crushed beneath the massive wheels, transforming into indistinguishable puddles of blood and flesh, painting the desolate city streets with sinister shades of dark crimson. The physical annihilation was utterly lethal. Chen-Mo's expression remained impassive, his gaze akin to two fathomless ancient wells, devoid of any ripples of emotion. His focus was acutely honed, one half fixed on the road ahead, while the other attuned to every tremor and breath of the steel beast beneath him. The engine's temperature, the grip of the wheels, the balance of the vehicle, all data swirled rapidly in his mind, akin to a rigorous performance test. Although the system rated it as a potential piece of junk, the engine functioned with an unexpected obedience, as if proclaiming its worth to its new master. Soon, the red dot marked on the navigation map materialized at the edge of his vision. The 7th police station. It stood as a solitary 3-story edifice at the intersection, like a rock besieged by a tide of darkness. This so-called black tide comprised a terrifying horde of at least 100 infected beings. They pressed tightly together, frenziedly battering the already deformed electric sliding iron door of the station with their bodies, teeth, and hands bearing blackened nails. Bang, bang, bang. The muffled yet rhythmic thuds reverberated, enough to send chills down one's spine even from a distance, seeping through the car window. The iron door groaned in agony under the relentless assault. On the verge of collapse, Chen-Mo's gaze drifted over the chaotic throng below, landing on the rooftop of the station. There, a lithe figure crouched behind a low wall, peering out to shoot before retreating, her movements swift and precise, devoid of any superfluous actions. Even from hundreds of meters away, Chen-Mo sensed the calm professionalism radiating from her. It was Su Qing, clad in slightly oversized police attire. Her figure appeared even more slender, yet her grip on the firearm was as steady as a rock. With each gunshot, an infected being attempting to scale the wall was expertly dispatched, collapsing into the mass below like a discarded sack. Her marksmanship was impeccable, a testament to her skill. However, Chen-Mo keenly observed that her firing rate was gradually slowing. Clearly, as she had mentioned over the radio, her ammunition was nearing depletion. At that moment, Su Qing emptied her last magazine. She swiftly withdrew behind cover, deftly discarding the empty clip and reaching for her final reserve magazine at her waist. Her movements remained quick, yet Chen-Mo discerned a hint of resolve in her suddenly tense posture. This was her last vestige of resistance. Once this final bullet was spent, an inexorable tide of corpses awaited to engulf her. Chen-Mo hesitated no longer. It was time for his performance. He whispered to himself, his gaze sharpening like a blade. His left foot pressed down on the clutch, while his right foot slammed the accelerator to the floor. Virum! The engine's roar escalated by an octave, transforming from a deep growl into a piercing shriek. The entire armored bus seemed to receive a surge of adrenaline, jolting violently before charging towards the dark mass of corpses with a ferocity incongruent with its bulk. It was as if a hornet's nest had been stirred. The hundreds of infected beings before the police station were simultaneously roused, abandoning the pitiful iron door to turn their hollow, bloodthirsty eyes towards this unwelcome intruder. Roar! A cacophony of thunderous howls coalesced into a wave of sound, nearly tearing the air asunder. Yet, Shenmo's gaze remained unflinching, gripping the steering wheel like a merciless executioner. He drove his platform of judgment towards those unforgivable condemned souls. The foremost dozen infected beings scarcely had time to react before being wholly devoured by the black front of the vehicle. There were no screams, no struggles. In the face of absolute weight and velocity, the fragility of flesh was laid bare. Boom! The armored bus, like an uncontrollable black iron rhinoceros, plowed through the horde with an unmatched ferocity. The crunching of shattered bones, the tearing of flesh, and the dull thuds of metal colliding amalgamated into a horrific symphony. Countless severed limbs and dismembered bodies were hurled into the air by the tremendous force before raining back down. The stench of blood and viscera instantly coated the front of the bus and the windshield, blurring the view ahead. Yet, Shenmo's actions did not falter. He even activated the windshield wipers to clear the filth aside. The bus maintained its speed, carving a blood-soaked path 3 meters wide through the densely packed corpses, coming to a precise halt directly beneath the police station. The surrounding infected beings were scattered, momentarily creating a small vacuum of space. The pneumatic door hissed open. Without a backward glance, Shenmo issued a curt command towards the cabin. Get in. On the rooftop, Su Qing, who had just reloaded her last magazine and was preparing for a desperate stand, was rendered utterly stunned. She stared dumbfounded at the black behemoth that seemed to have emerged from hell, at the door swung wide for her, and at the calm, almost unnerving voice emanating from within. Was this an illusion? A figment of her imagination in the face of death? Yet, the instinct for survival propelled her into action, leaving no room for contemplation. This fleeting opportunity was her sole chance at life. A flash of remarkable determination glimmered in Su Qing's eyes. Without a moment's hesitation, she sheathed her recently loaded handgun, flipped over, and, bracing herself against the low wall, gracefully propelled herself outward. Her toes found purchase on an air conditioning unit jutting from the second floor, allowing her to arc through the air beautifully, landing precisely at the open door of the bus below. Thud! Her tactical boots landed firmly on the metallic floor of the vehicle, producing a resounding thud. Before she could steady herself, the pneumatic door slammed shut behind her with a hiss. The cacophonous roars and crashes that could drive any normal person to the brink of insanity were instantly muffled. The world felt as though it had been muted, leaving only the low, steady hum of the idling engine and the sound of her own slightly hurried breaths. Chapter 5. The weapons platform inside the cabin. Su Qing cautiously surveyed her surroundings. In stark contrast to the hellish scene outside, this space was eerily quiet. The heavy doors had effectively blocked nearly all noise, leaving only the low rumble of the engine idling, akin to a colossal beast peacefully dozing. The air was permeated with a faint scent of machine oil and a metallic tang, not unpleasant, but rather imparting a peculiar sense of reassurance. The interior of the vehicle was modest in size, allowing a clear view of the ceiling at a glance. The walls were adorned with exposed wires and pipes, meticulously secured with clips by the owner, creating a chaotic yet orderly ambience imbued with a hardcore industrial punk aesthetic. Several emergency lights cast a soft glow, dispelling the darkness without being harsh on the eyes. Everything indicated that the vehicle's proprietor was a pragmatic individual with a profound understanding of machinery. Her gaze ultimately settled on the silhouette of the man in the driver's seat. He sat quietly, not even bothering to glance back at her, as if the woman who had just descended from the sky and leaped into his vehicle was a mere figment of imagination. This calmness, or perhaps indifference, swiftly supplanted the flicker of gratitude that had momentarily risen in Su Qing's heart with a heightened sense of vigilance. As a police detective, she had witnessed too many individuals revealing their true natures in extreme circumstances. The man before her, along with this enigmatic armored vehicle, exuded an uncanny aura. Thank you. Su Qing broke the silence, her voice tinged with a barely perceptible rasp from prolonged dehydration and the fatigue of battle, yet maintaining a steady tone. The man in the driver's seat, Shenmo, appeared oblivious to her words, showing no reaction. However, within his mind, a cold mechanical voice cascaded through information like a waterfall. Ding. Survivor Su Qing has boarded the vehicle. Individual scanning biological traits, genetic sequences, and mental fluctuations. Conducting homeostasis compatibility test. A flurry of data streamed across the virtual display before Shenmo, culminating in a colossal percentage figure that glimmered with a faint golden light at the center of the screen. Test complete. Compatibility 95. Extremely high. Specialization determined. Combat shooting. This individual possesses exceptional combat instincts, a calm psychological disposition, and top-tier shooting talent, making her a perfect match for the weapon platform, functional pod. Strongly recommended for immediate recruitment. 95. For the first time, Chunmo's heartbeat registered a slight acceleration. His earlier confidence in the broadcast had been a gamble, betting on his judgment that this composed female detective was the talent he required. It seemed he had indeed placed a winning bet. A combat specialist with a compatibility score of 95 was akin to a novice's gift bestowed upon him by the system. Do you confirm the recruitment of survivor Su Qing as your first exclusive driver? The system's inquiry resonated once more. Chen Mo slowly turned his head, finally meeting the gaze of the woman he had rescued. She was clad in ill-fitting police attire, with streaks of gray and black grime upon her face. Yet these blemishes could not obscure the brilliance and sharpness of her eyes. Those eyes revealed neither fear nor panic, only scrutiny and wariness. Akin to a leopard lurking in the shadows, poised to pounce at any moment. Her hands appeared casually relaxed at her sides, yet her index fingers subtly rested upon the holster at her waist. This was a woman who remained vigilant even in the safest of environments. Excellent. Chen Mo appreciated engaging with such individuals. I am Chen Mo, the owner of this vehicle. His tone was flat, as if stating a fact unrelated to himself. His gaze swept over Su Qing's handgun, continuing, I require a combatant, not a protected passenger, nor a cheerleader to wave flags, but someone capable of wielding weapons and obliterating the creatures outside. Can you fulfill this role? Su Qing met his gaze without flinching. The man's eyes were as cold as ice, serene as still water, yet unfathomably deep. His words were brutally candid. Yet, he articulated the sole truth of a post-apocalyptic world. The weak have no right to negotiate. He offered her an opportunity to become strong. Without hesitation, Su Qing nodded. Her response succinct. I can. There were no inquiries as to why, nor discussions of terms. She understood that surviving and being seated in this vehicle represented the best possible condition. Very well. Chunmo's lips seemed to twitch slightly, too quick to be perceived. From this moment onward, you are a member of this vehicle. As soon as his words concluded, the system's voice promptly provided final confirmation. Ding. High compatibility driver Su Qing confirmed for recruitment. Homeostasis agreement activated, crew position 1. Exclusive functional pod, weapon platform, has been unlocked. Adaptive installation in progress. A faint yet high-frequency mechanical whirring suddenly emanated from the rooftop. Su Qing stiffened, instinctively gripping the handle of her gun, cautiously glancing upward. From the midsection of the ceiling, a heavy armored panel measuring 2 square meters slowly slid aside, accompanied by the deep grinding of gears. The dim, crimson-hued sky shrouded in fog appeared beyond the hatch. Subsequently, a complex structure, exuding an aesthetic of brutal beauty, rose from below. It consisted of 6 robust gun barrels, connected to intricate transmission mechanisms and a vast ammunition box, the dark gun muzzle shimmering with a metallic chill, as if a steel beast, poised to devour, was awakening from slumber. A 6-barrel rotating heavy machine gun, commonly known as a Gatling. Judging by its fierce design and intricate structure, it was no ordinary weapon. Su Qing inhaled sharply. As a detective with an intense obsession for firearms, she immediately recognized what this signified: absolute, overwhelming, and unparalleled firepower. It represented a metal storm, a flesh and blood grinder. Such a formidable weapon had no place in this locality, let alone on a vehicle that appeared cobbled together from scrap. This transcended mere modification. It was sheer artistic engineering. She gazed in awe as the heavy machine gun, upon reaching its apex, slowly rotated half a circle, its dark muzzle ultimately pointing towards the horizon, resembling a sovereign surveying its domain. The interior of the vehicle fell silent once more. Su Qing gradually turned her head, regarding the man at the wheel with the same gaze one might reserve for a monster. In that moment, she truly comprehended the magnitude of mystery and terror embodied by this man and his vehicle, far beyond her initial imagination. Chapter 6. The gas station within the confines of the vehicle. Su Qing shifted her gaze from the now closed ceiling back to the man at the wheel, who had remained as tranquil as a still lake throughout. Who exactly was this Chen Mo? What had he done before the apocalypse? An arms dealer? Or perhaps a top agent for some clandestine organization? No, neither seemed fitting. His hands were calloused, adorned with small scars, and his fingernails bore traces of indelible black grease. They belonged to someone who had long been engaged with machinery and components. An automotive modifier? A modifier capable of conjuring a Gatling from thin air? This was more surreal than the red mist and zombies outside. To make it operational, energy was required. As Su Qing's mind was on the verge of bursting with countless questions, Chen Mo's calm voice once again broke through her thoughts. It was as if he could see through her innermost feelings. He extended a finger and gently tapped the air before him. The light blue virtual screen that belonged solely to him reappeared. This time, he did not conceal it, but openly displayed its contents to Su Qing. Her pupils constricted once more. A holographic projection? She beheld a three-dimensional model of the bus, along with rows of data that, though incomprehensible to her, exuded an aura of power. Ultimately, her gaze was firmly drawn to a line of text shimmering with red warning lights. Energy points. 0. Energy points? She instinctively read it aloud. You may interpret it as the lifeblood of this vehicle. Chen Mo's voice remained even-toned. Movement, illumination, and activating the function compartment all require energy points. He paused, casting a pointed glance at the roof of the vehicle. Even the behemoth must expend energy points to unleash its fiery breath. Su Qing instantly comprehended. No matter how formidable a weapon, without ammunition and energy, it is merely a heap of scrap metal. This vehicle is a colossal energy-consuming machine, and at present, it is in a state of hunger. How to obtain it? Su Qing immediately inquired about the crux of the matter. She had instinctively assumed the role of a combatant. To gain power, one must first pay the price for it. It is the most equitable law in this apocalyptic world. 2 pathways. Chen Mo's fingertip glided across the screen, bringing forth another segment of explanation. The first, converting waste materials. Any industrial waste containing energy, such as metals, plastics, and rubber, can be transformed into energy points through the conversion furnace at the rear of the vehicle. The second, his voice lowered slightly, carrying a chill, is to hunt them. He pointed towards the infected beings outside, futilely clawing at the bus's exterior. Within them, there lies a certain probability of crystallizing energy. That substance is the most efficient source of energy. Su Qing's expression shifted. She gazed at the monsters that once filled her with dread. Now, they appeared to her as mobile power banks. So that is how it is. This vehicle, this system, its operational logic is a perfect closed loop. Combat consumes energy, yet hunting enemies replenishes it. To survive and to grow stronger, one must engage in relentless battles and ceaseless hunts. It is brutal, yet it is fair. Su Qing inhaled deeply, the shock and confusion in her heart replaced by a fierce fighting spirit. Where to? She asked. The gas station. Chen Mo brought up a simple city map on the virtual screen, a red dot blinking a few kilometers away. Fengming Road Gas Station. It is a small transportation hub in the southern part of the city, where numerous vehicles became trapped at the outbreak of the apocalypse. He tapped on the red dot. The abundance of abandoned vehicles means we can find a wealth of waste materials. Similarly, the congested vehicles have trapped many living humans there. Now, they should have all become. He left the thought unfinished, but the implication was clear. An abundance of waste materials, as well as a multitude of power banks. That place is a perfect beginner-esque village. Su Qing examined the map, glanced at the roof, then turned to Chen Mo's calm face. She finally understood. This was not merely a hunt for resource replenishment. It was also a test of her, the newly inducted combatant, to determine whether she truly lived up to her title. A test of whether she possessed the qualifications to control the steel behemoth known as the weapon platform. How do I control that weapon platform? Su Qing's expression turned serious as she posed her most pressing question. Chen Mo remained silent, merely tilting his chin, indicating she should look to the side of the driver's seat. With a low hum, accompanied by a faint mechanical whir, a chair with a distinctly sci-fi design slowly rose from the previously empty floor. The seat's material was unique, neither metal nor wood, exhibiting a muted metallic sheen. Its design was entirely ergonomic, the backrest and armrests bearing an aggressive curvature as if perpetually poised for battle. Before the seat, a foldable control panel unfurled. At its center was a pitch-black targeting screen. Below the screen were 2 intricately designed controllers resembling fighter jet joysticks, alongside rows of buttons flashing with various indicators. Their functions unknown. The entire control station appeared as though it had been plucked straight from a futuristic battle mech in a science fiction film. Su Qing's breath caught once more. She felt her worldview being repeatedly shattered and reassembled since boarding this vehicle. Sit down. Chen Mo's voice beckoned like a demon's temptation, poised to instruct her on what to do. Su Qing's throat tightened. Without a hint of hesitation, she stepped forward and, with a sense of reverence akin to a pilgrimage, settled into her designated throne. The seat seemed to possess a life of its own, automatically adjusting to her form the instant she sat down, enveloping her perfectly. An indescribable sensation of fit and security coursed through her spine. She gently placed her hands on the cold metal control sticks. The moment she grasped the controls, the targeting screen ahead illuminated instantly, a cascade of pale blue data streams pouring down like a waterfall, ultimately coalescing into a line of succinct yet powerful text. Weapon platform connected, Operator Su Qing. Chapter 7. Firepower coverage. The armored bus came to a gradual stop, approximately 150 meters from the Fengming Road gas station, blocking the street's entrance like a rocky outcrop. Through the grimy windshield, the scene at the gas station was laid bare. It was a quintessential snapshot of the apocalypse. Several private cars were crumpled together at various twisted angles, blocking all entrances and exits to the gas station. Their doors swung wide open as if voicelessly screaming. Shattered glass and scattered luggage littered the ground. Amidst this steel graveyard, hundreds of figures wandered aimlessly. They were ragged, their skin taking on an unhealthy gray hue, their movements stiff and eerie. As the low rumble of the homeward-bound engine shattered the eerie silence, these figures seemed to be activated by a shared switch. Almost simultaneously, they ceased their movements. A second later, all rotting heads turned towards Chun-Mo, hollow eye sockets igniting with a primal thirst for fresh flesh. Roar! Hiss! The cacophony of agonizing howls surged, coalescing into a wave that sent chills down one's spine. They were coming, like sharks sensing blood or hornets disturbed from their nest. Hundreds of infected beings squeezed through the gaps in the vehicles, navigating over abandoned obstacles with a staggering yet increasingly swift gait, converging towards the armored bus, forming a black, putrid tide. Inside the vehicle, however, the atmosphere stood in stark contrast to the chaos outside. Chun-Mo's hands rested steadily on the steering wheel, his gaze unfaltering and fixed ahead, even as Su Qing, now fully prepared for battle, sat beside him. He calmly inquired, "Are you ready?" At any moment. Su Qing's voice emanated from her designated throne, unervingly serene, as if they were merely about to engage in a shooting game at a shooting range rather than face a horde of the undead that could engulf their bus. Her eyes were locked onto the targeting screen before her, where the entire gas station was displayed in high definition, countless red targeting boxes locking onto the approaching infected. Data regarding distance, movement speed, and threat level rapidly refreshed in front of her. An unprecedented sensation of control coursed through her body via the cold metallic joystick. Commence. Chun-Mo's voice resonated, akin to the activation of the Grim Reaper's scythe. A flicker of excitement and fervor flashed in Su Qing's eyes, erasing any hint of hesitation as her thumb forcefully pressed the red fire button. Rat-a-tat-tat. No, this cacophony transcended mere sounds of gunfire. As the steel beast atop the vehicle awakened, a piercing, dense roar erupted, seemingly capable of rending the very sky asunder. 6 barrels whirled to their maximum under the motor's power, transforming into a blur beyond the eye's capture. Subsequently, a searing metal storm composed of countless tracer rounds erupted from the pitch-black muzzle. The torrential wave of bullets surged forth, bearing the momentum of annihilation as it traversed a distance of 150 meters, crashing violently into the advancing tide of the undead. The first 10 or so infected barely managed a sound before their bodies met the metal storm, disintegrating as if tossed into an industrial shredder. Flesh, bone, and putrid entrails were torn, ground, and vaporized in an instant. A vacuum several meters wide was carved through the horde. Su Qing's focus was unwavering. Rather than being awed by the terrifying might unleashed, her mind entered a state of absolute calm, akin to a bullet time. Her hands remained steady as a rock, her thumbs skillfully maneuvering the joystick with precision. She eschewed mindless continuous fire, adhering instead to her former training as a police officer, executing precise and efficient bursts. Tap, tap, tap. A brief 3-second burst obliterated 5 or 6 infected in a straight line. With a subtle motion of her wrist, she shifted the gun's aim. Tap, tap, tap. Another short burst dispatched several infected, attempting to encircle them from behind the vehicle, along with the car door they used for cover, turning them into a sieve. On the targeting screen, the red boxes marking the enemies vanished at an astonishing rate. Su Qing felt as though she were wielding not a machine gun, but a brush dipped in the pigment of death, freely painting upon the canvas of this apocalyptic world. This sensation was exhilarating. The overwhelming firepower suppressed the once menacing horde, halting their advance. Any infected attempting to charge would be instantly met with a rain of bullets, exploding into a cloud of crimson mist. The scene transformed into a one-sided, unambiguous slaughter, a dimensional onslaught from a higher civilization. In less than 5 minutes, as Su Qing released her finger after one final burst, the thunderous gunfire abruptly ceased. Outside the gas station, silence reigned. The horde of hundreds had vanished entirely, replaced by a battlefield strewn with dismembered limbs and the stench of blood. The air was thick with the acrid scent of gunpowder and the nauseating odor of gore. Well done. Chun-Mo's voice shattered the silence. tinged with an almost imperceptible note of approval. The pneumatic door hissed open. Chun Mo rose from the driver's seat. Retrieving a long-handled industrial claw and an empty metal recycling box from the wall, his demeanor unchanged as he stepped out. He treaded upon the debris-strewn ground with an expression that suggested he was merely walking in his backyard. Approaching a larger remnant of the infected, he used the claw to pry apart the shattered remains. Soon, a crystal the size of a pigeon egg, wholly black yet emanating an eerie luminescence, appeared before him. Indeed, it was there. Chun Mo carefully grasped the crystal with the claw and tossed it into the recycling box, producing a satisfying chime. This was an energy crystal, the essence within the zombies, the finest sustenance for the Arkansas. He did not linger but continued his search across the bloody battlefield. 1, 2, 3. His movements were deliberate yet steady, akin to a traveler collecting shells on a beach, imbued with patience. Su Qing, seated in her weapons platform, observed the man navigating the corpses with calmness through the targeting screen. In that moment, the last vestige of her doubt and caution dissipated. A strong individual, indeed worthy of following. Before long, Chun Mo had collected over a dozen energy crystals of varying sizes. He then turned his attention to the abandoned vehicles blocking the road. Approaching a wrecked pickup truck, he swung the claw, shattering the window with ease. In a matter of moments, he violently dismantled the still intact metal door and casually tossed it into the recycling box. Then, he moved to the second, the third. Each action exuded a rhythmic grace, applying just the right amount of force to extract the most valuable components. Professionalism, indeed. After more than 10 minutes, the half-meter-high recycling box brimmed with assorted scrap metal and energy crystals. Chun Mo hefted the heavy box and returned to the vehicle. Bang! The pneumatic door sealed shut once more, isolating the hellish scene and its stench from within. Returning triumphantly. Chapter 8. First Enhancement. Bang! The heavy pneumatic door slammed shut, entirely sealing away the ghastly scene and the nauseating stench outside. The world returned to tranquility in an instant. Inside the cabin, only the low rumble of the idling engine and Su Qing's slightly hurried breaths remained. Chun Mo placed the metal recycling box filled with scrap and energy crystals onto the floor with a dull thud, his expression devoid of any emotion. As if he had merely stepped out to collect a parcel rather than traverse through the gates of death. Su Qing sat in her combat seat, observing his composed silhouette, her astonishment mounting. This man was terrifyingly calm, as if he were inherently suited for this brutal apocalypse. Chun Mo paid no heed to Su Qing's gaze, striding directly to the rear of the cabin. There, he stepped on an unassuming pedal. With a click, the metal floor of the cabin slid apart, revealing a circular feed opening approximately half a meter in diameter. The interior of the feeding port was enveloped in darkness, unfathomably deep, with only a low, resonant hum emanating from within, as if some mechanical entity lay dormant. This was the stomach of the Arkansas. Without the slightest hesitation, Chun Mo lifted the heavy recycling box and poured its contents into the abyss. A cacophony of twisted metal doors, shattered rims, and an array of unidentifiable parts cascaded like a waterfall into the gaping maw. Finally, he carefully slid in the dozen or so black crystals that emitted an eerie, faint glow. Releasing his grip, he allowed the empty recycling box to tumble to the ground. He then pressed the pedal again, and the feeding port began to close slowly, the floor returning to its seamless state. Almost at the moment the feeding port was fully closed, a powerful low-frequency vibration surged from the bottom of the compartment, causing the metal floor beneath his feet to tingle. The transformation furnace was activated. The lights in the compartment flickered briefly, as if a vast amount of energy had been instantaneously siphoned away. In Chun Mo's mind, the system's voice resonated punctually. Detected convertible resources undergoing high-energy decomposition. High-purity energy crystal conversion efficiency increased by 30. The intense vibration persisted for approximately half a minute before gradually subsiding, restoring silence within the compartment. Conversion complete. Energy points gained. 850 points. Success. A glimmer of barely perceptible excitement flashed in Chun Mo's eyes. This was their first pot of gold, the initial fuel for the Ark's ascent. He could hardly contain himself as he summoned the modification interface, visible only to him. On the pale blue screen, a three-dimensional model of the armored bus floated serenely. Surrounding the model, two modules flickered with enticing golden light, as if beckoning to Chun Mo. Engine upgrade, available. Tire replacement, available. Chun Mo's gaze flitted between the two options, his mind racing with calculations. Just then, as if recalling something, he hesitated, slightly turning his head to fix his gaze on Su Qing behind him. You decide. His voice remained calm, yet it sent a shiver through Su Qing. She looked up in surprise, meeting Chun Mo's gaze. Was he seeking my opinion? In Su Qing's imagination, A man as powerful and enigmatic as Chun Mo should be an absolute dictator, unyielding in his commands. Yet now, he had entrusted this crucial decision to her. This represented a recognition, a respect that acknowledged her as a true partner. A warm current quietly coursed through the depths of Su Qing's icy heart. Taking a deep breath, she suppressed her fluttering emotions, her mind racing. While formidable firepower was undoubtedly vital, mobility was the foundation of survival in this perilous world. Possessing greater speed meant they could freely choose to fight or retreat, firmly seizing the initiative. Fight when they could win, flee when they could not. This was the golden rule of survival in the wasteland. Engine. Su Qing declared without hesitation, her eyes resolute and bright. We need greater speed and stronger explosive power. Only by outrunning all our enemies can we secure our survival. Good. Chun Mo's response was succinct, appreciating Su Qing's decisiveness and strategic clarity. He turned back, lightly tapping the virtual screen to lock in the engine upgrade option. Confirm consumption of 500 energy points for level 2 turbo engine modification. Confirmed. Energy points, 500. Remaining, 350. Level 2 turbo engine modification commencing. Estimated time, 15 seconds. No sooner had the words left his lips than a violent tremor surged from the bus's chassis, threatening to dismantle the vehicle. Su Qing instinctively grasped the armrests of her seat, steadying herself. In the cockpit, the makeshift engine emitted a pained wail before abruptly shutting down. The compartment was instantly plunged into silence and darkness, with only the glow of the modification interface illuminating Chun Mo's view. Soon, a jarring cacophony of metal grinding and gears reconfiguring erupted from the engine compartment, akin to an unseen, highly efficient repair team performing a miraculous transformation at an astonishing speed. 15 seconds felt interminable, as though a century had passed. When all the strange noises abruptly ceased, a deep, resonant roar erupted, unlike anything before, more robust and powerful. The lights in the compartment flickered back to life, even brighter than before. A surge of palpable power coursed through the vehicle structure, distinctly felt in every corner. If the previous engine had resembled a frail old man clinging to life, the current engine was akin to a muscular, peak-conditioned champion. Modification complete. Level 2 turbo engine installed. Performance enhancements. Maximum speed increased by 30. Torque by 25. Fuel efficiency by 10. Satisfied, Chun Mo nodded at the data displayed on the system panel. With the remaining energy, he would replace the tires. He directed his thoughts towards the other option. Confirm consumption of 300 energy points for explosion-proof off-road tire modification. Confirmed. Energy points, 300, remaining, 50. This time, the commotion was significantly less. The vehicle was briefly elevated, accompanied by a series of crisp clicks, as if components were being swiftly disassembled and reassembled. On the three-dimensional model before Chun Mo, the four worn highway tires were replaced by a set of new, rugged tires featuring exaggerated treads and thick sidewalls. Modification complete. Explosion-proof off-road tires installed. Performance enhancements. Terrain adaptability increased by 40. Puncture resistance by 60. Traction by 20. With the last 50 energy points, Chun Missouri opted not to make any further modifications, saving them as a reserve. Gripping the steering wheel once more, he felt the eager vibrations coursing through it. Brace yourself, he whispered, then pressed the accelerator down. Roar. The engine's roar instantly reached its zenith. Su Qing felt an overwhelming force push her back into her seat, nearly rendering her breathless. This colossal steel beast, weighing over 10 tons, shot forth like a cannonball. The speed was more than doubled compared to before. Ahead, a wrecked car obstructed their path. Chun Mo had no intention of slowing down. A flicker of madness glinting in his eyes. He intended to test the limits of this vehicle. The armored bus, propelled by the engine's fury, crashed directly into the obstacle without flinching. Boom. With the new off-road tires and immense torque, the bus's front end effortlessly lifted, the massive wheels crushing the wrecked car's roof beneath them. The fragile body of the car, in the face of absolute weight, crumpled as if made of paper. Instantly flattened and torn apart, the vehicle merely jolted violently before surging ahead in scathe, leaving that heap of scrap metal far behind. The powerful thrust, the thunderous roar of the engine, and the rapidly receding ruins outside all caused Su Qing's heart to race uncontrollably, a sensation of hope and safety blossoming wildly within her. Chun Mo felt the surging power of the vehicle beneath him, gazing at the dilapidated road extending into the horizon, shrouded in red mist. He understood, this was merely the beginning. Chapter 9. Old grievances. A few kilometers from the gas station on Fengming Road stood a large logistics warehouse, the domain of the notorious Zhao Tian. The massive rolling door of the warehouse was sealed with heavy steel plates, leaving only a narrow door on the side, just wide enough for a person to crouch through. Surrounding walls, over 2 meters high, were topped with rusted barbed wire. A few ragged and emaciated sentinels leaned weakly against the walls, resembling vultures struggling to survive in a post-apocalyptic world. Inside the warehouse, however, the atmosphere was starkly different. A burly, bald man with a face full of flesh sat imperiously on a throne fashioned from stacked old tires. He was Zhao Tian, the unscrupulous owner of Zhao's auto repair shop before the apocalypse, who, after the world fell apart, had rallied a band of outlaws through sheer ruthlessness and a few concealed firearms, becoming the local warlord in this area. At his feet knelt a weary woman, carefully trimming his thickened and yellowed toenails with a small knife. Beside them, an improvised grill sizzled with a strange-smelling piece of meat, the origins of which were unknown. This was the reality of the apocalypse. Those with power could continue to thrive, perhaps even more lavishly than before. Boss, look, a wiry, rat-faced man hurriedly descended from the makeshift watchtower on the warehouse's upper level, clutching a scratched military binoculars, his face alight with uncontainable excitement and a hint of sickly flattery. He was Zhao Tian's top lackey, known as the Slim Monkey. Zhao Tian, disturbed by his exuberance, kicked the woman repairing his toenails, knocking her roughly to the ground. What are you screeching about? Is there a horde at the door? He spat, snatching the piece of grilled meat and taking a hefty bite, oil dripping from his mouth as he mumbled curses. No, boss. The Slim Monkey nodded eagerly, inching closer with the binoculars held out. You must see. On the eastern road, there's a big vehicle. By golly, it's impressive. Like a moving iron turtle, smashing through anything in its path. Iron turtle? Zhao Tian scoffed, spitting out a piece of unchewable sinew. In these times, there are plenty of moving metal scraps. What's so remarkable about that? You've clearly never seen anything. No, boss. The Slim Monkey grew anxious, gesticulating wildly. That vehicle looks familiar, like our factory's scrap bus. What? Zhao Tian's chewing halted, his brow furrowing into a knot. Old Chinese scrap? Didn't I kick him out long ago? That heap of junk can still move? Before the apocalypse, there had been a young man named Chun Mo in his shop, skilled in modifications, but a bit dim-witted and stubborn, often clashing with Zhao Tian over plans. Eventually, after a dispute over wages and substandard parts, Zhao Tian had him ambushed and had his arm broken, forcing him to leave. That dilapidated bus was a treasure Chun had yearned to restore, while Zhao Tian had seen it as nothing more than worthless scrap. He was still alive? Zhao Tian seized the binoculars from the Slim Monkey's hands, raising them to his eyes and peering toward the east. Through the lens, a pitch-black armored bus sped down the ruined road with an audacious presence. The familiar silhouette was unmistakably that of the factory's old vehicle. Yet, Zhao Tian distinctly recalled that the vehicle had once been so decrepit that its hood wouldn't close, and 2 tires were completely flat, essentially a hollow shell. But now, the vehicle before him gleamed with a cold metallic sheen, its once ragged tires replaced with massive, menacing off-road treads. What made his heart race was that this vehicle showed no intention of avoiding any obstacles. In the mere seconds he observed, the bus barreled forward, crashing directly into an abandoned sedan blocking its path. Boom. Zhao Tian could almost hear the deafening roar that followed. In his view, the sedan crumpled like a crushed soda can beneath the weight of the monstrous vehicle, while the black bus merely jolted slightly, rolling over the wreckage without losing speed. Is this still the heap of scrap? Zhao Tian's breath quickened involuntarily. His gaze locked onto the vehicle, greedily scanning every detail as if to consume it whole. Suddenly, atop the bus, he spotted something. A menacing contraption, usually concealed but now partially revealed due to the violent motion. Those 6 parallel, thick gun barrels. That intricate mechanical structure. It was a Gatling gun. A genuine 6-barrel rotary machine gun. Damn! Zhao Tian couldn't restrain himself from exclaiming. A surge of fiery greed erupting from the depths of his being, clouding his mind instantly. This was undoubtedly a prized possession. This was no longer just a battered bus. It was a moving fortress of steel, an indomitable killing machine. How had that Chun Mo managed to acquire such formidable weaponry? What gave him the right to possess such treasures? Jealousy and greed, like venomous snakes, gnawed at his sanity. Before the apocalypse, Chun Mo had been a poor boy subsisting under his thumb. How could he now wield such a deadly apparatus? He must have stumbled upon some incredible arms cache or a hidden base from before the fall. Damn it, this should have been mine. Zhao Tian licked his parched lips, eyes gleaming with the fervor of a starving wolf. He lowered the binoculars, his flesh quivering as he revealed a cruel grin. That boy must have loaded all his treasures onto this vehicle. He turned to the slim monkey, his voice raspy with excitement. Once we seize this vehicle, everything inside will belong to us. The slim monkey, equally salivating, nodded vigorously. Boss is brilliant. How could that kid stand against so many of us? No matter how tough his vehicle is, can it outrun our motorcycles? Indeed. Zhao Tian tossed the bone in his hand to the ground, abruptly rising from his throne. His voice booming throughout the warehouse. Everyone, stop loafing around. We have work to do. Gather all the brothers, grab your gear, and fill up the motorcycles. His commanding voice echoed in the vast warehouse, filled with undeniable authority. There's a big catch on the eastern road. Zhao Tian pointed outside, his face alight with uncontainable fervor. Bring that black armored vehicle over here. The supplies, weapons, and women inside are all yours. Upon hearing the mention of women, the desperate men in the warehouse erupted with fervor, their eyes gleaming with a primal hunger as they howled like beasts. They discarded their cards and rummaged through the corners, retrieving machetes, steel pipes, and even a few rusted homemade shotguns. Boom! The sound of revving engines filled the air as a dozen modified motorcycles, each with its own unique design, were swiftly rolled out of the warehouse. These machines bore sharp steel spikes for ramming and were adorned with Molotov cocktails filled with gasoline, while rusty machetes were tied to their handlebars, embodying a gritty post-apocalyptic aesthetic. Zhao Tian mounted a sidecar of a tricycle motorcycle, wielding a double-barreled shotgun with the serial number ground off, and gestured to his men. Let us go. Chase him down. Remember, try not to damage the vehicle. It's our future throne. The roar of the motorcycles surged forth, like unleashed wild dogs, kicking up clouds of dust as they streamed out of the narrow side door of the warehouse. They maneuvered through the ruins with agility, quickly coalescing into a relentless tide of steel, racing towards the distant, receding shadow. Chapter 10, Crushing Boom. The secondary turbo engine roared, its immense power transmitted through the drive shaft, continuously fueling the four menacing off-road tires. The armored bus, weighing several tons, surged forward like a feral black beast across the shattered roadway. The crumbling debris outside whizzed by, transforming into a blur of indistinct colors. This exhilarating speed filled Su Qing with an unprecedented sense of security. Sitting upon her designated throne, she remained vigilant, her gaze fixed on the main control screen of the weapon platform. The images transmitted from the rearview camera were crystal clear. Just then, several small black dots appeared on the horizon. The dots rapidly magnified, the roar of engines growing louder as it pierced through the vehicle's soundproofing. They're on our tail. Su Qing's voice resonated through the internal communication channel, calm and concise. A dozen motorcycles, all modified for speed, approached with ill intent. Chen Mo did not turn around, but merely glanced at the synchronized monitoring footage from the side of the driver's cabin. Among the pack of crazed motorcycles, one tricycle stood out, its sidecar occupied by a familiar bald, rotund figure, binoculars in hand, his face alight with greed and fervor. It was Zhao Tian, the Black Hand. My former boss. Should we eliminate them? Su Qing inquired, her finger poised delicately on the firing button, ready to awaken the slumbering steel behemoth. They have targeted this vehicle. Chen Mo's response was indirect yet clear. There was nothing left to discuss. Any foe daring to covet the homeward would be crushed without mercy. The roar of the motorcycle gang grew ever closer. Like hyenas scenting blood, they quickly spread out, encircling the armored bus from both sides. Stop. Pull over now. The whores and pretty boys inside better surrender, or Zhao will ensure you have no remains. The vulgar taunts, laced with arrogant laughter, pierced through the crimson haze, sounding particularly jarring. Suddenly bang, bang, bang. Several bandits brandished homemade pistols and shotguns, unleashing a torrent of bullets upon the bus's armored exterior. Clang, clang. The bullets ricocheted off the thick armor, producing a shower of sparks, leaving only a few inconspicuous white marks on the black paint. Are they trying to poke an elephant with toothpicks? Su Qing scoffed, her disdain palpable as she observed the futility of the bandits' assault on the monitor. Such feeble attempts were hardly worthy of scratching the homeward. The bandits soon realized their ineffectiveness. A burly man on a Harley, perhaps eager to showcase his bravado, twisted the throttle and sped alongside the driver's cabin. One hand controlled the handlebars, while the other wielded a massive pipe wrench, swinging it violently at the bulletproof glass of the cabin, all the while shouting furiously. Chen Mo's gaze finally shifted, revealing a glimmer of change, a look akin to that reserved for the condemned. He did not grant the man a second chance to swing his wrench. With a swift turn of the steering wheel, the armored bus lunged forward, its massive frame crashing into the Harley with reckless abandon. What? The man's mocking grin froze as the rapidly approaching black mass filled his vision, leaving him only enough time for a brief, terrified scream. The sound of metal twisting echoed horrifically. The man and his bike were instantly consumed beneath the towering wheels of the Homeward. The sturdy Harley crumpling like a soda can under the overwhelming weight, torn apart into unrecognizable shreds of flesh and metal. The bus barely jolted before regaining its smooth trajectory, as if it had merely rolled over a small stone rather than a living being in a motorcycle. This gruesome and shocking spectacle plunged the entire motorcycle gang into an abrupt silence, stunned by Chun Mo's brutal and unexpected counterattack. Open fire. Chun Mo's cold voice resonated within the internal channel. Understood. Su Qing was already prepared. Her previously calm demeanor now replaced by a bloodthirsty exhilaration as she pressed the button with conviction. Buzz. The concealed six-barrel rotary machine gun on the roof sprang into action, rapidly rotating as it received the command, the dark muzzle pivoting to lock onto the pursuing motorcycle gang. In the next instant, roar. A sound far louder than all the motorcycles combined sliced through the air, a sharp and relentless roar that echoed across the landscape. A torrential storm of metal erupted from the six spinning barrels. Tracer rounds carved deadly paths through the dim red mist, forming an impenetrable curtain of fire that swept mercilessly over the entire motorcycle gang. Rat-tat-tat-tat. Cries of anguish and explosions instantly became the dominant symphony in this wasteland. A bandit, along with his bike, was obliterated into a cloud of flesh and bone upon the onslaught of the hail of bullets. Another motorcycle, attempting to veer away, had its fuel tank struck precisely, erupting into a massive fireball that consumed two nearby comrades. Su Qing operated the machine gun with cold efficiency, executing rapid bursts with unwavering precision. Each gunshot signified the end of a life and the destruction of a motorcycle. In the wake of the gunfire, chaos reigned, blood and metal scattered. This was no longer a battle, it was a one-sided massacre. Demons. These are demons. In the cart, witnessing the hellish scene before him, the infamous Zhao Tian was paralyzed with terror, his face trembling like a sieve. His double-barreled shotgun clattered to the ground, a foul liquid trickling down his pant leg. He had originally thought himself a hunter here to rob, only to find that he was the prey of a reaper wielding a butcher's knife. Run. Turn back. For God's sake, run. Zhao Tian frantically pounded the driver's head with his fists, his voice sharp and piercing from sheer fear. The driver, already terrified, clumsily turned the vehicle around, fleeing desperately towards their point of departure. But could they escape? The Homeward, upgraded with a secondary turbo engine, far surpassed the patched-together wrecks of motorcycles. Chun Mo pursued, the massive vehicle deftly executing a drift on the battlefield littered with corpses, once more colliding with two motorcycles attempting to flee. The bandits were utterly routed, the few surviving thugs scattered like frightened rabbits, lamenting their fate and wishing for more limbs to escape. Su Qing ceased firing, the smoke from the gun slowly dissipating in the air. The battlefield, aside from the crackling remains of a few burning motorcycles, returned to a deathly silence. Chun Mo paid no heed to the fleeing rabble. His gaze remained fixed on the distant three-wheeled motorcycle speeding away in a frenzy. To eradicate the roots, one must strike deep. Chapter 11. The bandit camped. The armored bus came to a halt on the ravaged battlefield. The gunpowder smoke had yet to clear, the air thick with the acrid stench of charred flesh and blood. Chun Mo's gaze penetrated the blood-stained windshield, locking onto the distant three-wheeled motorcycle, fleeing in panic. Zhao Tian must die. They cannot escape. Chun Mo's voice echoed through the internal communication channel, cold and devoid of warmth. Are we going to raid their lair? Su Qing inquired, having regained her composure after the exhilarating slaughter. This man was even more ruthless than she had imagined. Yet she relished this ruthlessness. In the apocalypse, mercy towards enemies is cruelty towards oneself. To eradicate the roots, Chun Mo's eyes were icy. He would leave no possibility of a counterattack, even if such a risk appeared as insignificant as an ant. Virum. The secondary turbo engine emitted a deep roar once more. The armored bus turned, its massive off-road tires leaving clear imprints on the asphalt littered with shell casings and debris. There was no need for effort in tracking. The three-wheeled motorcycle, driven by sheer terror, left behind erratic and varied tire marks, like a signpost clearly indicating the direction of their lair. Following the trail, the armored bus commenced its inevitable haunt. A few kilometers away, a large abandoned logistics warehouse appeared on the horizon. Surrounding the warehouse was a rusty barbed wire fence, with the entrance barricaded by discarded vehicles and furniture, resembling a farcical joke. On the makeshift watchtower atop the warehouse, several bandits were gathered, smoking and laughing. blissfully unaware of the grim reaper approaching. When they beheld the black steel behemoth charging towards them with unrelenting force, their smiles froze in an instant. Enemy attack! Enemy attack! The shrill cries echoed from the watchtower, but it was already too late. Chunmo's foot pressed hard on the accelerator. Boom! The speed of the armored bus surged, charging like a frenzied black iron rhino directly into the absurd barricade. Crash! Wood splintered, metal twisted. The line of defense, which the bandits believed could withstand a horde, crumbled before the homeward as if made of paper, torn apart in an instant. Next came the heavy rolling door of the warehouse. Bang! A deafening sound erupted, as if it would shatter eardrums. The massive door buckled inward under the tremendous force, twisted, and was violently ripped from its frame, flying into the depths of the warehouse, trailing sparks and debris. A gaping, dark entrance opened in the warehouse wall. The homeward surged through the swirling dust like a king returned from hell, exuding an unmatched majesty as it stormed into the bandits' domain. Inside the warehouse, silence reigned. A dozen bandits, engrossed in their card game, froze in place. Their cigarettes fell to the ground, and playing cards scattered everywhere. On every face was a singular expression of profound, incomprehensible terror. They stared blankly at the steel behemoth emerging from the smoke. Blinded by the glaring white beams of its headlights, their minds blank. It's that vehicle. One bandit finally snapped back to reality, letting out a desperate scream. Damn it! Get him! Driven by the instinct to survive, a few desperate souls screamed and grabbed nearby steel pipes and machetes, attempting a final stand. Yet, they faced an onslaught from a higher dimension. Buzz, the six-barreled rotary machine gun, recently quenched with blood, emerged once more, brandishing its menacing form. Do not move. Su Qing's voice reverberated through the vehicle's loudspeaker, cold and commanding. Drop all weapons, hands on your heads, and crouch down. Otherwise, death. The word death struck each bandit's heart like a hammer. Yet, there are always those with iron heads. One burly bandit, emboldened by distance, abruptly raised a makeshift shotgun aimed at the driver's cabin. He barely had time to pull the trigger. Rat-a-tat. Su Qing didn't even grant him the chance to aim. A rapid series of shots struck the ground beneath him, sending a cascade of concrete fragments and sparks flying. The powerful impact created a shallow crater beneath his feet, causing sharp stones to pelt his shins. The bandit shrieked, collapsing in fear, his shotgun clattering to the ground. This display of lethal intimidation shattered the psychological defenses of the rest. Clatter. The bandits, like mice before a cat, hurriedly discarded their weapons, hands on their heads, obediently crouching on the ground, trembling like leaves in the wind. Hiss. The pneumatic door opened. Chen Emo stepped out of the vehicle. He paid no attention to the captives crouching on the ground, striding directly into the depths of the warehouse. This camp now bore his name. He began to tally his spoils. The bandits' plundered goods exceeded his expectations. In a corner of the warehouse, stacks of canned goods loomed like mountains. Although most labels were illegible, the quantity was staggering. Nearby stood neatly arranged red gasoline barrels. A gentle shake revealed the sloshing liquid within. These were the most valuable currency in the apocalypse. Yet, what truly captured Chunmo's attention was the enormous mound of scrap metal and refuse on the other side. The twisted car doors, the discarded engines, the disassembled circuit boards, and the bundles of wires appeared to others as nothing more than a heap of useless debris. Yet, to Chun Mo, they represented a glittering treasure trove of energy. With these materials, he could at least generate thousands of energy points. Chun Mo silently calculated in his mind, contemplating another large-scale enhancement. His gaze swept across the entire warehouse, reminiscent of a king surveying his domain. Suddenly, his footsteps halted. In the farthest corner of the warehouse, a container almost obscured by various items caught his attention. It was a standard shipping container, covered in rust, showing its age. However, unlike the other clutter, its door was secured with a brand new, exceptionally thick chain lock. In such a place, the meticulous locking of a container was peculiar. Something was amiss. Chapter 12. Discovery. Chun Mo's gaze was like a tangible spotlight, fixed on that solitary container deep within the warehouse. Surrounding it were heaps of spoils. Enough canned food to drive any survivor team into a frenzy. Enough gasoline to arm a small convoy, and the glimmering treasure of scrap metal he had envisioned. Yet at that moment, none of these treasures could compare to the rusted iron box secured by a heavy chain lock. It was too unusual. The gang led by Zhao, a group of reckless scoundrels, were simple-minded hyenas, solely focused on immediate gains. They would carelessly pile stolen food and women. Yet they treated this seemingly worthless container with utmost seriousness. This was illogical, unless what lay inside was more valuable or dangerous than food and gasoline in their eyes. Chun Mo did not approach immediately. He first surveyed his surroundings. Su Qing stood nearby, gun in hand, resembling a cold statue as she guarded the trembling captives crouched on the ground. The bandits had been thoroughly intimidated, not daring to lift their heads. Safety was temporarily assured. He took a measured step toward the container, his tactical boots lightly thudding on the dusty concrete floor, the sound echoing starkly in the desolate warehouse. As he neared, a faint, indescribable odor wafted from the container, mingling rust with the scent of decay, unpleasant yet subtle. Chun Mo halted before the container, extending his hand to touch the cold metal door, feeling its rough, icy texture. The chain lock appeared brand new, contrasting sharply with the container's age. Even the keyhole was nearly devoid of dust. He tilted his head and pressed his ear against the cold door, holding his breath. The warehouse was eerily silent, allowing him to hear the powerful beats of his own heart. Amidst this profound stillness, a barely perceptible sound penetrated the thick metal, reaching his ears. It was faint, as if something within stirred slightly, or perhaps a suppressed whimper reminiscent of a small animal. There was life inside. Chun Mo's eyes sharpened instantly. He straightened up and began rummaging through the nearby pile of tools. Soon, he unearthed a solid steel crowbar, about 1.5 meters long and as thick as his arm, from a heap of scrap metal. This heavy tool, intended for prying heavy machinery, was now perfect for unlocking. Step back, he gestured silently to Su Qing. She understood, driving the captives further into a distant corner while keeping her gun trained in that direction, prepared for any sudden developments. Chun Mo gripped the crowbar tightly, inhaling deeply, and wedged the flat end forcefully into the gap of the container door. Creak. The crowbar pried the door open just a sliver, emitting an ear-piercing sound. He pressed all his strength into it, the muscles in his arms tautening. With a low growl, he exerted his force. Crash. The seemingly indestructible chain lock, in the face of sheer brutality, was forcibly torn from the door, flinging away with a series of sharp clinks against the ground. The door swung open. A wave of even more potent stench, mingling sweat, rot, and excrement, surged forth from the crack, causing Chun Mo to wrinkle his nose. He did not rush inside, but stepped back, allowing the foul air within to mix with the fresh air outside. After a few moments, he unhooked a powerful flashlight from his tactical belt, flicked it on, and a brilliant beam of white light instantly pierced the darkness inside the container. As the beam swept through, the scene within became clear. The interior of the container was small, with corners piled high with moldy bedding and empty cans. Alongside a plastic bucket serving as a makeshift toilet, this was the source of the foul odor. Yet, in the innermost corner, where the beam's light settled, a curled-up figure trembled in response to the sudden brightness. It was a girl, appearing no older than 17 or 18, clad in an oversized, filthy, tattered men's coat that nearly enveloped her entire form. Her hair was greasy and disheveled, and her small face was smeared with dirt, rendering her original features almost unrecognizable. Instinctively, she raised her frail arms to shield her eyes from the blinding light. Through the slender gaps of her fingers, Chun Mo glimpsed a pair of eyes wide with sheer terror. However, in stark contrast to her disheveled appearance, perched on her nose was a pair of black-rimmed glasses. Though smeared with grime, they lent her an air of scholarly grace amidst her disarray. Was she a student? The thought flickered through Chun Mo's mind, just as his gaze met the girl's frightened eyes. Suddenly, an unexpected change occurred. Ding! A clear, melodious notification resonated explosively in the depths of his mind. High compatibility survivor detected. Lin Wan. Lin Wan. The name caused his heart to skip a beat. Before he could fully process it, new information streamed into his view like a cascading waterfall. Compatibility detection in progress. Gene sequence deep scan, mental field wave analysis. Chun Mo's breathing involuntarily slowed. Gripping the flashlight, he stood motionless, his entire focus fixated on the system panel in his mind. His gaze remained on the girl, but his expression had transformed. He no longer merely saw a captive survivor. He perceived her as a master gem appraiser would regard a priceless treasure buried in the earth. On the verge of emerging, the progress bar filled rapidly, 105080. Finally, it halted at a heart-stopping figure. Test complete. Compatibility 98. Extremely high. 98. A surge of incredulity ignited in Chun Mo's pupils. This number surpassed even Su Qing's 95. What did this signify? It signified greater potential, a more perfect match. Immediately following, the next line of golden text ignited a fervor within him. Specialization, direction, determination. Research, engineering. Research, engineering. Was this not the very capability he desperately required? Su Qing's weapon platform, had resolved the combat issues, yet the essence of the Ark, its upgrades, enhancements, and energy systems, all necessitated a true intellect to plan and execute. And here stood this seemingly frail young woman, as delicate as a flower, embodying the epitome of intellect. It was akin to a pie falling from the heavens, nay, a grand banquet descending from the sky. Before he could fully recuperate from this monumental revelation, the system's final line of commentary detonated within him like a bombshell, utterly igniting his emotions. Rating: extremely rare. This individual possesses extraordinary logical reasoning and engineering talent, making her the core talent to propel the Ark's technological leap forward. It is advised that the commander recruit her at any cost, without hesitation. The phrase extremely rare was repeatedly emphasized in resplendent gold by the system, as if fearing Chun Mo might not grasp its significance. His gaze transformed entirely. He had not anticipated that within this wretched, refuse-laden bandit camp lay a treasure more precious than all the resources in the warehouse combined, 10,000 times more valuable. The foolish gang under Zhao had no inkling of the existence they had confined. They were sitting upon mountains of gold, oblivious, perhaps even perceiving her as a burden. It was sheer wastefulness. Chun Mo gradually lowered the flashlight in his hand, redirecting the beam away from the girl's eyes. The warehouse was dimly lit, yet his eyes shone with an unsettling brightness. It was a blend of ecstasy, determination, and the fervent glow of a starving wolf spotting its prime prey. He had initially believed that the greatest gain from this endeavor would be the scrap metal and gasoline. Now he understood that his true acquisition was her. Chapter 13, Rescue. The girl let out a terrified gasp, her body trembling even more violently as she desperately shrank back, attempting to meld into the cold metal wall, fleeing from the man who instilled primal fear within her. Her reaction was akin to a bucket of cold water, instantly awakening Chun Mo from the stupor of overwhelming delight. He abruptly realized that his unrestrained gaze had frightened her. Indeed, how could a girl, just escaped from the jaws of a tiger and utterly exhausted, endure such raw scrutiny and possessiveness? He was not there to appraise a treasure. He was there to rescue someone. Chun Mo took a deep breath, forcibly suppressing the tumult of excitement surging within him, allowing the burning intensity in his eyes to recede into the depths of calm. He slowly lowered the powerful flashlight, shifting the blinding beam away from the girl, casting light only upon the ground beneath her feet, offering her a shadow in which to breathe. Su Qing, who had been vigilantly holding her firearm at a distance, witnessed the entire scene unfold. As a former detective, she possessed a keen insight into the psychological state of victims. She understood that the fear and distrust of men that this imprisoned girl felt had reached a crescendo. Chun Mo's overly direct gaze would only exacerbate her panic. In moments like this, a woman was needed to break the stalemate. Without hesitation, Su Qing swiftly returned her weapon to its holster, this action itself signifying a gesture of goodwill. She stepped forward, her pace measured and unhurried. The sound of her tactical boots on the concrete was soft, akin to a cat approaching stealthily. Do not fear. Su Qing paused at the container's entrance, refraining from rushing in, instead speaking in the gentlest tone possible. We are not bad people. Her voice flowed like a clear spring, washing away the thick dread that had settled in the girl's heart. Crouched in the corner, Lin Wan cautiously peered through her fingers toward the entrance. A striking young woman in a police uniform stood there, exuding an air of calm and professionalism, devoid of malice or mockery. Upon seeing Su Qing's uniform, Lin Wan's taut nerves finally began to ease, albeit imperceptibly. As Su Qing continued speaking, she gradually entered the container. She removed her reasonably clean outer coat, disregarding the girl's dirt and odor, gently draping it over Lin Wan's shoulders. The coat, imbued with a faint scent of gunpowder and soap, still retaining a hint of warmth, enveloped Lin Wan's frail frame, which seemed to consist solely of bones. The unexpected warmth caused Lin Wan to shudder. How long had it been since she felt such warmth? Since her capture, she had faced only the brutal beatings and lecherous gazes of the bandits. She felt like a tool, a piece of refuse that could be discarded at any moment. Confined within this lightless metal canister, she had thought she would perish there, in that filthy, stinking corner. But now, a police officer, as beautiful as a movie star, had wrapped her in a warm coat. Lin Wan's nose tinged with bitterness, her eyes immediately glistening with tears. Yet she bit her lip fiercely, determined not to let the tears fall. She gazed into Su Qing's calm and clear eyes, and cautiously looked over her shoulder, where the fearsome man stood silently at a distance, like a stoic statue. Behind him, a black armored vehicle, resembling a steel beast, protruded through the gaping hole in the warehouse, its headlights shining like two cold stars, silently observing the scene. A gentle police officer, a terrifying, mysterious man, and an armored vehicle scarier than any monster. This surreal combination formed a tableau that left her feeling utterly conflicted and unreal. Her fear lingered, yet within it, a slender thread of hope began to sprout. Did you kill those bad people? Lin Wan finally summoned all her courage to ask her first question. Her voice, hoarse and dry from prolonged dehydration and fright, rasped like two pieces of sandpaper rubbing together, barely audible. Yes, Su Qing nodded, providing an unequivocally reassuring response. You are safe now. Safe now, Lin Wan murmured, repeating the words as if savoring a term long forgotten. In that moment, her taut nerves snapped entirely, and two streams of hot tears could no longer be restrained, cascading down her filthy cheeks, carving clear paths in their wake. She was safe. A torrent of immense joy and pent-up grievance surged within her, overwhelming her reason like a flood. She wanted to cry out, yet feared that this might all be a dream. If she cried out, she might awaken from the dream. I am Lin Wan, she stammered through her emotional release, introducing herself in a halting voice, a signal of trust being extended. I am a doctoral student in energy engineering at Jiangxing University. They captured me. They wanted me to help them repair a generator. Energy engineering, a doctorate. Although the answer had long been clear in his heart, upon hearing the revelation of this identity, Chen Mo's heart still raced uncontrollably for a moment. He had stumbled upon a treasure. No, it was a divine being. A doctoral candidate in energy engineering. This was precisely the top-tier talent tailored for his mobile sanctuary. The immense energy consumption of the weapon platform, the fuel efficiency of the secondary turbine engine, and the future unlocking and upgrading of more high-tech functional modules. All of these required a genuine expert to orchestrate and plan. And the seemingly fragile girl before him held the key to resolving all these issues. She was 1,000 times more precious than all the supplies in this warehouse combined. Chen Mo took a steady step forward, his approach deliberate and powerful, each stride resonating with Lin Wan's heartbeat. Instinctively, she wanted to retreat, but Su Qing gently patted her shoulder, offering a reassuring glance. Chen Mo stood at the container's entrance, his gaze calm as still water. I am Chen Mo, and this is Su Qing. He introduced himself in an exquisitely succinct manner. Then, he extended an olive branch that could alter her fate. Come with us. We have a safe haven and ample food. Safety. Food. These two words, more precious than gold in a post-apocalyptic world, carried an undeniable weight when spoken by this man. After speaking, Chen Mo slowly extended his right hand towards Lin Wan. His hand was large, dry, and warm, with calluses and small scars from years of working with machinery. It was a hand capable of repairing intricate instruments and, without hesitation, ending lives. Lin Wan stared at the hand reaching out to her, hesitating. She glanced at this powerful hand, and then at Chen Mo's stern face, devoid of any visible emotion. Turning her gaze, she looked at the gentle yet formidable Su Qing, who offered an encouraging smile. Finally, she lowered her head, surveying the hellish, filthy iron box that surrounded her, inhaling the noxious stench that made her stomach churn. She could no longer bear to remain there, not for a second longer. Outside lay a world of cannibals, but this place was a living hell. These two individuals represented her only hope. With a deep breath, as if summoning all her strength, she slowly raised her frail, dirt-covered hand, trembling with a sense of reverence akin to a pilgrimage, and gently placed it in Chen Mo's broad and warm palm. In that moment of contact, Lin Wan no longer hesitated. She nodded emphatically. The choice had been made. Chapter 14. The energy engineering room. Chen Mo's palm was wide, dry, and warm, its surface roughened by years of interaction with machinery. When Lin Wan's cold, frail hand, seemingly nothing but skin and bones, rested in his, he could distinctly feel her uncontrollable tremors. He said nothing, merely curling his fingers slightly, enveloping her small hand in a firm yet reassuring grip. Then, he turned and, hand in hand, stepped out of the hellish iron box. Su Qing followed closely behind, her grip on the firearm tightened, her sharp gaze scanning the surroundings, shielding them from the fearful or numb stares of the captives. As Lin Wan was led onto the metallic steps of the armored bus, she felt momentarily dazed. With a resounding thud, the heavy pneumatic door slammed shut behind them. The cacophony of screams and crashes, capable of breaking the spirit of any normal person, along with the pungent scent of blood and the stench of the captives, was abruptly sealed outside. The world seemed to have been muted. Inside the vehicle, only the low hum of the engine idling broke the silence, akin to a gentle giant peacefully napping. A faint aroma of engine oil and metal wafted through the air. Not unpleasant, but instead offered a peculiar sense of reassurance. Lin Wan, overwhelmed by this sudden tranquility and cleanliness, instinctively tightened her grip on Chenmo's hand, as if it were her sole lifeline amidst turbulent seas. Su Qing, appearing from nowhere with a thermos, poured a steaming cup of water and presented it to Lin Wan. Staring at the rising steam, it took her several seconds to grasp the cup with trembling hands. She was parched, her lips cracked like parched earth. Cautiously, she blew on the water and took small sips. The warm liquid slid down her throat, a long-forgotten warmth gradually spreading from her core to her extremities, dispelling the cold and fear that had accumulated deep within her bones over recent days. Lin Wan's body finally ceased its violent shivering. Cradling the cup, she began to survey the sanctuary that had rescued her from hell. The interior of the vehicle was compact, yet everything appeared disordered yet orderly, contrary to her expectations of chaos. The walls were adorned with exposed wires and pipes, meticulously organized by the owner, leading clearly with a stark industrial aesthetic. Modified emergency lights provided a soft, non-glaring illumination. Her gaze swiftly shifted from the ordinary wiring to the more complex bundles of cables near the control panel, and her expression transformed. The fear and confusion that had once filled her eyes were now illuminated by a burgeoning spark of curiosity and inquiry. She instinctively released Chenmo's hand, drawn toward the fascinating apparatus like a cat captivated by a new toy, advancing slowly. Her eyes roamed over Su Qing's sci-fi-style combat seat, and then returned to the main control panel, where a virtual light screen had been activated by Chenmo. Her mouth fell slightly open, her eyes gleaming with the fervor and obsession of a top scholar encountering unknown technology. Multi-source energy supply in parallel. But the wiring layout is highly inefficient, she murmured, seemingly oblivious to Chenmo and Su Qing's presence. Her delicate fingers gesturing in the air as though conducting an invisible circuit modification. The switching logic between the main and backup power supply is flawed, with a response delay exceeding 0.5 seconds. In high-intensity combat, such an energy gap could lead to a complete system collapse. With each word, her eyes brightened. Her voice grew clearer. Suddenly, she turned to Chenmo, her previously timid demeanor replaced by the earnestness and confidence of a scholar. "I am willing to join you," she declared, her tone resolute. Immediately, she unreservedly pointed out the significant flaw of this seemingly miraculous armored vehicle. But the efficiency of its energy system is far too low. It's a disaster. Upon hearing her blunt critique, Su Qing raised an eyebrow slightly, while Chenmo simply smiled. It was a heartfelt, unreserved laughter, akin to the exhilarating joy of unearthing a priceless treasure. From this moment forth, he gazed at the girl before him, her countenance radiant with inspiration ignited by her profession, and declared, "It is now under your stewardship." No sooner had he spoken than a chilling mechanical voice reverberated in his mind, booming like celestial thunder. Ding! High compatibility pilot Lin Wan confirmed to join. Homeostasis agreement activated, crew position 1. Team integrity enhanced. Exclusive function module, energy engineering room, has been unlocked. A low, yet high-frequency mechanical whirring emanated from beneath the floor of the compartment, startling both Lin Wan and Su Qing, who instinctively stepped back. Before them, a metal floor panel, measuring 2 square meters, began to slide apart with the sound of intricate gears meshing, revealing a profound square void. In the next moment, an extraordinarily complex control console, replete with futuristic technological elegance, slowly ascended from the abyss. It was a semicircular console, crafted from an unknown dark golden alloy. The surface was adorned with a multitude of blinking lights and crystal buttons, each emitting a spectrum of colors. Dozens of optical fiber cables, varying in thickness, extended like roots from the base of the console, connecting to every corner of the vehicle. At the center of the console, 3 smooth, obsidian-like screens floated, each differing in size. As the console reached its apex, all the indicator lights flickered simultaneously, akin to a slumbering giant awakening to reveal its myriad eyes. Lin Wan's eyes sparkled with brilliance, reminiscent of the 2 most resplendent stars in the night sky. It was a fervent blend of passion, obsession, and the ultimate joy of finding her true calling. She emitted a cheer of indescribable delight, leaping forward like a fledgling bird returning to its nest. Ignoring the cold metallic edges, her hands glided over the console, trembling with reverence as if caressing a long-lost lover. Her fingertips brushed each illuminated button, touching every pulsating fiber, absorbing the faint yet steady energy emanating from beneath the surface. "This is exquisite. It is truly a work of art," she murmured, her gaze consumed by the console. Without hesitation, she seated herself in the sci-fi-inspired floating chair integrated with the console, gently placing her hands upon the 2 dark screens. At the moment her hands made contact, A series of system prompts resounded like the most exquisite symphony in Chun Mo's mind. Energy engineering room activated, pilot Lin Wan. Taking control of the home base's lower energy system, takeover complete. Optimizing energy point conversion algorithm, optimization complete. Reconstructing functional module energy matrix, reconstruction complete. A cascade of system notifications, like a melodious overture, erupted in Chun Mo's consciousness. Ultimately, two golden announcements that could elicit laughter from him flashed before his eyes. Current energy point conversion efficiency permanently increased by 50. All functional module base energy consumption permanently reduced by 20. Success. A great weight lifted from Chun Mo's heart, replaced by an unprecedented sense of fulfillment and exuberance. A 50% increase in conversion efficiency. A 20% reduction in energy consumption. This signified that from the same heap of waste, he could now extract half again the energy points as before. Meanwhile, the costs incurred in each battle and modification had significantly diminished. This exchange resulted in a doubling of returns. This was the terrifying enhancement brought forth by a genius with a compatibility rating of 98 in scientific engineering. Chun Mo observed Lin Wan, who was utterly absorbed in her world, her hands a blur upon the console as she continuously optimized various parameters. And he could no longer suppress the smile creeping across his lips. If Su Qing's arrival had equipped their mobile fortress with the sharpest fangs and claws, then Lin Wan's presence had bestowed upon it an unparalleled, infinitely evolving superheart. With her, his moving sanctuary had truly acquired an unyielding engine capable of breaking through every obstacle, galloping freely across this desolate wasteland. Chapter 15. The trading market. Time flew swiftly, and a week had passed since the conquest of Black Han Zhao's warehouse. During this week, the home base remained stationary, like a dormant beast, quietly resting in the center of the now-cleansed warehouse, undergoing a transformative metamorphosis. The scrap metal mine, which gleamed in Chun Mo's eyes, erupted with astonishing energy after Lin Wan's preliminary optimization of the conversion furnace. Ding. Waste material conversion complete. Total energy points gained, 2,150. Upon seeing this number in his mind, Chun Mo hardly hesitated and, with the unanimous agreement of his crew members, allocated the majority of the energy points towards the next enhancement of the home base. Energy points 1,500. Level 2 composite armor, modification complete. Physical resistance 80. Structural strength 50. Energy points 500. Sonar enemy detection radar, modification complete. Detection range 500 meters. Capable of marking living entities. Accompanied by the excruciating sounds of metal restructuring and electrical buzzing, a new layer of armor, gleaming with a muted luster, enveloped the entire body of the home base, perfectly concealing the previously rough welding seams and bullet holes. On the roof, a retractable disc-shaped radar was quietly installed. Now, the home base truly resembled a menacing fortress of the apocalypse. Meanwhile, Lin Wan had fully showcased her terrifying talent with a compatibility rating of 98. She practically lived in her dedicated energy engineering room, her petite figure bustling before the intricate console, reciting a litany of technical jargon that Chun Mo and Su Qing could not comprehend. The energy supply matrix is excessively redundant. Energy loss during transmission is at least 15%, necessitating reconstruction. The instantaneous power of the weapon platform is too high. An independent capacitor group can be added as a buffer to ensure firing speed without impacting the main energy system. The algorithm for this sonar radar is too crude. Give me half a day, and I can reduce its false positive rate by 90%. Observing Lin Wan, who was entirely absorbed in her world, her eyes sparkling and occasionally letting out unintelligible cheers upon overcoming technical challenges, Chun Mo and Su Qing exchanged glances, each reflecting a hint of helplessness and relief. It seemed they had truly stumbled upon a treasure. Su Qing was also industrious, in the absolute safety of their environment. She meticulously disassembled and maintained all the firearms they had acquired, utilizing the weapon platform's simulated shooting function to engage in high-intensity training, rapidly familiarizing herself with every attack pattern of her throne. The team was progressing at an astonishing pace toward stability. However, new challenges soon emerged. One day, Lin Wan approached Chun Mo, who was in the cockpit planning their next route, holding a virtual tablet projected by the system, her expression grave. "Commander, we have encountered a shortage in our supply reserves." Her delicate face was scrubbed clean, adorned with a set of reasonably fitted athletic were discovered in the warehouse. Her hair tied back in a neat ponytail. Apart from her lingering frailness, there remained no trace of the pitiable figure once confined within a steel box. With a precise motion, her slender fingers glided across a virtual tablet, summoning a series of data charts. The canned food stockpiled in the warehouse could sustain the three of us for no more than a month. Moreover, the lifespan of the core filter in the vehicle's water purification system was dwindling to a mere 20%. Once depleted, we would lose our stable source of clean water. She paused momentarily before adding a startling revelation that made Chun-Mo's eyelids twitch. Most crucially, I require an upgrade for the energy conversion module of the engine, which necessitates a high-density polymer and rare earth magnets, materials conspicuously absent from our refuse pile. Chun-Mo's gaze shifted from the map to the tablet that Lin Wan had handed him. Within his own system interface, beside the three-dimensional model of mobile home, several enticing gray icons silently corroborated Lin Wan's statement. Luxury dining, locked, requirements, fresh vegetables, refined flour, various spices. Vehicle, locked, requirements, high-quality alcoholic beverages, snack packs. These features, seemingly extravagant in the apocalypse, promised a significant enhancement in crew morale and happiness, with a food output efficiency of 200. It appeared that the days of languishing in the warehouse were drawing to a close. They needed to venture forth in search of new resources and to barter with other survivors. I know of a place. Su Qing's voice emerged from the weapon platform's seat. In recent days, she had intercepted numerous transmissions through the shortwave radio, relaying information circulating within the city. As time progressed, survivors grew restless, no longer willing to remain sequestered. In the western part of the city, a large supermarket's abandoned parking lot had spontaneously transformed into a small marketplace for trading. Individuals exchanged goods, sought information, and even traded people. Her tone chilled as she spoke of the place. It was a chaotic mix of individuals, yet it remained the only viable option for swiftly acquiring necessary supplies. Chun-Mo nodded, a decision crystallizing in his mind. Lin Wan, calculate the optimal route to the western market. Su Qing, charge the weapon system and prepare for a level 1 alert. Acknowledged. Understood. The two girls' voices chimed in unison, crisp and decisive. Half an hour later, a thunderous roar erupted as the homeward, which had slumbered for a week, awakened once more. The black steel behemoth slowly emerged from the gaping hole in the warehouse, crushing the debris at the entrance as it returned to the sunlight, speeding toward the west. In the western city, at the Carrefour supermarket parking lot, an unusual panorama unfolded amidst the apocalypse. Dozens of makeshift stalls constructed from rags, wooden planks, and discarded car doors were haphazardly arranged. Survivors congregated in small groups, their faces pale and numbed, yet their eyes flickered with vigilance and calculation. The stalls displayed a variety of goods, cans of unknown dated fermented fish, a rusted fire axe, water-damaged cigarettes, and even high-protein meat allegedly harvested from mutated beasts. Voices were hushed. Bargaining ensued, as a packet of biscuits was exchanged for 2 batteries, and a bullet traded for a precious vial of antibiotics. There were no laws, no morals. The sole currency was value. Amidst this cacophony and oppressive atmosphere, a distinctive, deep, and powerful engine roar gradually approached, capturing everyone's attention. All activity halted instinctively, and eyes turned toward the sound. At the parking lot's entrance, a black armored bus, unlike anything they had ever seen, glided into view, resembling a prehistoric beast. This imposing vehicle, enshrouded in heavy armor gleaming with a metallic sheen, bore dried dark red stains and menacing claw marks. As if it had just emerged from a sea of corpses, its massive, bomb-proof tires crushed the gravel beneath, emitting a disconcerting crunch. It was too conspicuous, too colossal, and far too intimidating. The moment this steel titan appeared, the entire parking lot seemed to be muted. The clamor of haggling vanished, replaced by expressions of shock, fear, and a myriad of complex emotions. Envy, greed, fear, and wariness. Countless gazes converged upon this uninvited guest like searchlights, speculating about the formidable presence that occupied the terrifying mobile fortress. Under the scrutiny of all, the armored bus did not advance further into the marketplace, but instead found a vacant area at the edge, coming to a halt. The engine silenced, plunging the world into a profound stillness. A new order, or rather, a new chaos, was poised to be redefined with the arrival of this vehicle. Chapter 16. Iron Fist. As the booming engine of the homeward abruptly fell silent, the Carrefour parking lot succumbed to an eerie and suffocating stillness. The noise of bargaining dissipated, and the suppressed breaths of the survivors vanished. It was as if someone had pressed the pause button, freezing this apocalyptic marketplace into a silent oil painting. All gazes, drawn like iron filings to a magnet, fixated upon the black steel titan parked at the edge of the market. Envy, greed, fear, and wariness intermingled, fermenting into a heavy sense of oppression that enveloped every heart present. They had witnessed survivors emerge in small cars, pickup trucks, and even dilapidated buses to trade. Yet, they had never encountered a mobile fortress like this, adorned with thick armor, caked with dried blood and fierce claw marks, exuding an aura that warned others to keep their distance. This contraption transcended the realm of mere transportation. It was a moving war machine. No one dared to approach or engage in conversation. They merely watched from afar, their minds racing with speculation regarding the identity of the owner of this terrifying fortress. Amidst the oppressive silence, the crowd instinctively parted, creating a passageway. A burly man clad in a military green vest, accompanied by 7 or 8 equally formidable subordinates, strode confidently from the crowd. The man was bald, his neck adorned with a necklace made of bullet casings that gleamed coldly under the dim light. A vividly tattooed black scorpion adorned his exposed right arm, appearing almost alive as it shifted with the movement of his muscles. Most striking were his fists, large, knuckled, covered in calluses and scars, resembling 2 blocks of granite. It was evident that these were iron fists capable of crushing bones with ease. He was known as Iron Fist, the ruler of this marketplace, who had established his dominion amidst the chaos with a combination of brute strength and a few firearms concealed from the world before the downfall. His subordinates behind him were equally unremarkable, yet their eyes gleamed with a unique ferocity characteristic of desperate men. They wielded machetes and steel pipes, and 2 of them brazenly displayed handguns at their waists. The sound of military boots, heavy and rhythmic, echoed as they struck the concrete, each step resonating like a drumbeat against the hearts of the onlooking survivors. He strode directly to the front of the vehicle named Home, halting before its imposing frame. He tilted his head back, surveying the steel behemoth towering over him, his eyes momentarily reflecting awe, quickly supplanted by an unabashed greed and desire for possession. Thud! He struck the heavy composite armor of the vehicle with his calloused fist, producing a dull thud. "I am Steel Fist, the boss here." His voice boomed, rough and commanding, akin to the sound of sandpaper rasping against itself, radiating an undeniable dominance. Inside the vehicle, the atmosphere contrasted sharply with the tension outside. Lin Wan's delicate face paled. It was her first encounter with such a blockade. She anxiously observed the external feed on the control screen, her small hands instinctively gripping the edges of the energy console. "Commander, radar indicates a total of 8 individuals, 2 of whom are armed with firearms. Initial assessment suggests they carry the outdated Type 77 and Type 54 handguns." Posing a low threat level, Su Qing's voice emanated from the weapons platform throne, as calm as ever. On her interface, Steel Fist and his subordinates were encased in red targeting frames, with vital statistics and threat evaluations rapidly refreshing. With a mere command from Chen Mo, the colossal beast atop the vehicle could obliterate them all in a fraction of a second. Chen Mo remained silent, seated in the driver's position, his gaze fixed on Steel Fist's arrogant visage, calm as though he were watching a tedious black and white film. He pressed the window button, allowing the heavy bulletproof glass to lower slightly, creating a narrow opening. A mixture of fresh yet foul air rushed in. "What are your rules?" Chen Mo's voice filtered through the narrow gap, soft yet clearly resonating in Steel Fist's ears. Upon hearing the response from within the vehicle, Steel Fist's face twisted into a self-satisfied sneer. He relished the feeling of manipulating a powerful, unknown adversary at will. "My rules are simple." Steel Fist held up 3 thick fingers before Chen Mo's eyes. "First, anyone wishing to trade here must surrender 30% of the transaction to my brothers as protection fees. With this money, I can ensure that no one dares to cause trouble, guaranteeing your safety in trade." "What do I call this?" "Professionalism." His subordinates behind him erupted into knowing laughter, casting glances at the home vehicle as if it were a plump lamb ensnared in a trap. Pleased with their reaction, Steel Fist began to circle the vehicle, akin to a hungry wolf assessing its prey. His palm glided over the cold armor, savoring the sense of power emanating from the metal, his greed nearly spilling over. Secondly, he halted, fixing his gaze on the lowered window, as if attempting to penetrate the dark glass to see within. "I quite like your vehicle." His tone was laced with an unmistakable possessiveness. "Brother, driving such a large vehicle alone must be lonely." He licked his cracked lips, revealing teeth yellowed from smoke. "Let me offer you a way out. As I'm in a good mood today, you leave this vehicle and the women inside." His gaze turned lecherous, as if envisioning Su Qing and Lin Wan. "Then, I will allow you to leave here unscathed. What do you say? Sounds fair, doesn't it? In this cannibalistic apocalypse, preserving your life should warrant a bow in gratitude." His laughter echoed, a cacophony of reckless mirth from his desperate companions. To them, this transaction seemed completely justified. The vehicle was merely a menacing tin can, while they possessed both numbers and firearms. Among them were even two proficient veterans, making it an overkill to deal with a man hiding behind metal. They were certain of their victory over Chen Mo. In the marketplace, the surrounding survivors retreated, wary of being caught in the fray. They gazed at the black steel behemoth with mixed emotions. Some reveled in schadenfreude, eager to witness Steel Fist deliver a harsh lesson to the newcomer. Others sighed, believing the vehicle's owner was too ostentatious, failing to grasp the perils of flaunting wealth in the apocalypse, and would ultimately pay the price for his arrogance. Yet, most were numb. They had witnessed such scenes too often. The law of the jungle reigned supreme in this world. Under the scrutinizing gazes of pity and malicious glee, Steel Fist's smile grew ever more smug. He rapped on the car window again, as if issuing a final ultimatum. Kid, have you made up your mind? My patience is limited. Chapter 17. Conflict. Kid, have you made up your mind? My patience is limited. Steel Fist's voice, gravelly and abrasive, echoed in the stillness of the parking lot, carrying the last vestiges of a cat-and-mouse arrogance. Behind him, his band of desperate men bore cruel, mocking smiles, their steel pipes and machetes glinting coldly in the dim light, akin to hyenas that had cornered their prey, awaiting the signal to feast. The surrounding survivors had retreated to what they deemed a safe distance, craning their necks to observe the eye of the storm, their gazes a blend of fear and schadenfreude. In their eyes, the outcome was inevitable. The owner of the black iron monstrosity would either submit all, seeking an uncertain path to survival, or be dragged out by Steel Fist's crew, crushed like a walnut in public execution. Time seemed to stretch, suspended in anticipation. All held their breath, awaiting the expected response from behind the narrow window, either fear or submission. Yet, what they received was a light chuckle. Huh. This sound froze the air instantly. The laughter emanated from the narrow gap of the window, imbued with an unabashed, almost absurd playfulness. Steel Fist's sneer faltered, his expression stiffening. His subordinates halted their laughter, exchanging confused glances, bewildered. Had this fool lost his mind? Even at death's door, he dared to laugh? Are you jesting with me? Chen Mo's voice rang out once more, remaining unperturbed, devoid of any fiery passion, yet striking Steel Fist like an invisible slap across the face. Damn it, you insolent fool. Steel Fist's face turned a deep shade of crimson, a torrent of humiliation erupting within him like molten lava. He felt akin to a jester laboriously performing on stage, while the audience gazed upon him with the derisive eyes of fools, particularly in front of the entire marketplace. How audacious! Steel Fist's patience had been entirely exhausted, and his fleshy countenance twisted grotesquely in rage, veins pulsating like unsightly worms upon his temples. He swung his arm back sharply, the black scorpion tattoo on his bicep seeming to come alive, a signal to engage. In an instant, his 7 or 8 subordinates reacted, spreading out in a self-assured, semicircular formation. Encircling the front of the Arkansas, rusty machetes and steel pipes were discarded, replaced by an array of makeshift rifles and antiquated handguns drawn from their cloaks and waistbands. The sound of bullets chambering echoed, a chorus of ominous clicks. The dark muzzles of their weapons aimed menacingly at the armored bus, its thick bulletproof glass and massive off-road tires. The air became thick with the acrid scent of gunpowder. The survivors watching from the marketplace gasped in fear, hastily retreating, fearful of stray bullets. What had once been a bustling market descended into chaos, a scene of utter disarray. Their gazes towards the black bus transformed from mere spectacle to that of a looming death. I shall offer you one final opportunity. Steel Fist stepped forward, nearly pressing against the front of the vehicle. He raised his massive fist, striking the composite armor beside the window with a resounding thud. Now, immediately, step down and kneel before me to acknowledge your wrongdoing. His voice, laced with fury, became hoarse. Otherwise, I shall turn your tin can into a sieve and use your head as a chamber pot. The ultimatum had been delivered. The murderous intent peaked at that moment. However, within the vehicle, there was still no response. Chen Mo could scarcely muster the effort to glance at the distorted visage on the main screen. Instead, he calmly communicated through the internal channel, issuing a simple command to the already prepared Su Qing: disarm them. The voice was soft, yet undeniably authoritative, imbued with a mechanical chill. Received, came Su Qing's succinct reply. The next moment, Chen Mo's hand descended upon the engine start button of the control panel. Without hesitation, he pressed it. Virum. The once silent arc roared to life, akin to a prehistoric beast awakened from slumber. The roar of the secondary turbine engine transformed from a low rumble to a thunderous, wrathful roar that reverberated through the heavens. The resounding wave of sound expanded like a palpable shockwave. The cement ground of the parking lot trembled violently under this terrifying display. Steel Fist, who had been shouting at the front of the vehicle, found his eardrums ringing from the sudden onslaught of sound, his mind blank. His subordinates stepped back in unison, their expressions of arrogance and malice instantly replaced by shock and terror. The weapons in their hands felt unsteady. What in the world was this engine? The noise was more terrifying than the roars of the undead. They finally realized that they were not provoking a lamb for slaughter, but an incomprehensible, steel-clad behemoth. Chapter 18. Dimensional Strike. The roar of the engine was not merely sound. It was a force of physical power. The cement ground of the parking lot trembled audibly under its terrifying might. The remaining windows of nearby buildings buzzed, threatening to shatter at any moment. This force coursed through the ground, reaching Steel Fist and each of his men, climbing up their spines to their very cores. It was an instinctual fear that could halt a heartbeat. This was not a machine. This was a living, enraged, ancient beast. Chun Mo's hand remained steady on the console, his gaze as cold as Siberian permafrost. He did not squander a second on futile bravado. As the engine's RPM reached its peak, he shifted gears. Boom. The arc lunged forward. This steel behemoth, weighing over 10 tons, unleashed a terrifying burst of power, propelled by the secondary turbine engine and specially designed off-road tires. Far exceeding its own size. It was not accelerating, it was launching. Its target, Steel Fist, and the absurd makeshift barricade of sandbags and discarded furniture before him. As the black steel front of the vehicle loomed larger in his vision, Steel Fist's last glimmer of hope and bravado was crushed. The motorcycle rider caught under the wheels became a grotesque vision of blood and mangled metal, exploding in his mind like a nightmare. Fire! Fire! He shrieked. His voice piercing and frantic with fear. Shoot out its tires. Blast its windows. His subordinates, jolted awake by his desperate cry, instinctively raised their weapons driven by sheer survival instinct. Rusty shotguns, old Type 54 handguns, and a few makeshift rifles that looked ready to explode all erupted simultaneously, unleashing a torrent of fire. Bang! Bang bang bang. The cacophony of gunfire mingled into a single chaotic chorus, bullets raining down upon the Ark's front. Then, a scene unfolded that shattered the resolve of all the bandits. Clang! Clang! Bullets struck the dull-coated secondary composite armor, leaving no holes, not even dents. Those lead projectiles, capable of piercing human flesh, were deflected upon contact with the armor's immense kinetic energy or transformed into useless lead discs, leaving only trivial white marks on the black paint. It was akin to a mere tickle. The firearms in the bandits' hands, once their instruments of power and dominance, became a complete farce in that moment. Yet Chin Mo offered them no time to digest their terror. The Ark had arrived. Boom. The barricade, deemed a safe haven by Steel Fist, crumbled before the Ark like a biscuit. Sandbags were torn apart by the tremendous force, a cloud of dust swirling into the air. Twisted metal and shattered wood flew outward like paper caught in a gale. The armored bus maintained its velocity, ruthlessly rolling over the remnants of the barricade. Steel Fist felt a whirlwind of dust assault him, the shadow of death engulfing him in an instant. No time to think. His body reacted instinctively, and he tumbled aside in a desperate attempt to evade. The hard ground scraped against his cheek and arms, igniting a fiery sting. Ignoring the pain, he rolled and lifted his head. The black steel behemoth had passed over him, halting in the center of the marketplace, the roar of its engine subsiding into a low, dangerous idle. Behind it lay a disheveled corridor, replete with the scars of destruction. The sudden silence was more suffocating than the preceding cacophony. Then, a new sound emerged. A low, high-frequency mechanical hum resonated from the bus's rooftop. Instinctively, everyone looked up. In the middle of the roof, an armored panel slid open silently, revealing the 6-barreled rotary machine gun that had previously ignited their covetous desires, now emerging like a venomous serpent, rising slowly. The dark muzzle began to rotate gracefully and lethally. Inside the vehicle, Su Qing's gaze was chillingly calm. All threats had been locked onto, her voice resonating through the internal communication channel, announcing the weapon system was primed. On her control screen, 8 red targeting boxes precisely encircled the subordinates of Steel Fist. However, the focal point of their aim was not their vital organs, but rather the ludicrous makeshift weapons they held. Chen Mo's command was succinct, a single word: disassemble. A cold smile curved Su Qing's lips. The gunfire erupted once more. Yet this time, it was not a chaotic volley, but a series of brief, precise shots, akin to the Grim Reaper's meticulous selection of targets. The first volley comprised merely 3 rounds. 3 nearly invisible streaks of fire traversed several dozen meters in an instant. A bandit, bewildered and brandishing a Type 54 pistol, felt a sudden numbness in his wrist, as if an invisible hand had forcefully struck his firearm, which shattered into fragments, flying away in disarray. A scream escaped his lips. Not from injury, but sheer astonishment. He barely had time to comprehend his own hand. The gunfire redirected towards another individual. The double-barreled shotgun in his grasp was struck with precision, the sturdy barrel twisting and tearing apart like a piece of twisted dough. What followed was an astonishing display of violent beauty, a showcase of pinpoint strikes. With each crack of gunfire, weapons were violently wrenched from the hands of the criminals. Some firearms were shattered, others had magazines sent flying, and some were obliterated mid-air, exploding into a shower of metal and wood shrapnel. The entire process flowed seamlessly. A dizzying spectacle. It was not a human at the helm. It resembled a soulless war machine executing a meticulously programmed purge. In less than 10 seconds, when the last shot rang out, the rotating machine gun's barrel gradually ceased its motion, retracting silently beneath the armored cover of the rooftop, as though it had never existed. The parking lot descended into an eerie, absolute silence. The remaining 7 subordinates of Steel Fist stood like statues, rigid and frozen in place. They maintained their stances, yet their hands were utterly empty. Each face bore a common expression of confusion, daze, and sheer disbelief, as if their worldviews had been utterly obliterated. They glanced down at their trembling hands, numbed by the immense shock, and then at the scattered remnants of weapons now reduced to mere scrap metal. Their minds were blank. What was this? They had not been killed, nor injured. Yet, they felt an anguish far greater than death itself. This was no longer a battle. It was a humiliation. A cold mockery and crushing of lower beings by a superior entity devoid of emotion. Chapter 19. Establishing authority as the menacing 6-barreled machine gun silently retracted beneath the vehicle's armor, vanishing as if it had never been there. The parking lot was engulfed in a silence more terrifying than death. The air still carried the acrid scent of gunpowder and dust, mingling with the foul odor emanating from a distant garbage heap, creating a nauseating aroma unique to a post-apocalyptic world. The 7 remaining subordinates of Steel Fist stood rigidly, like soulless wooden carvings. They still held their firearms, yet their hands were empty. Each face was marked with the same expression of bewilderment, daze, and utter disbelief, as if their very perceptions had been shattered. They looked down at their trembling hands, numbed by the tremendous shock, and then at the remnants of weapons scattered around them. Reduced to worthless scrap, their minds were blank. What was happening? They had not been killed, nor had anyone sustained injuries. Yet, they felt 1,000 times worse than death. This was not merely a combat encounter, nor even a lesson. It was a humiliation, a cold mockery from a higher-dimensional being, crushing the lesser beings without a shred of emotion. Their prideful ferocity, the weapons they relied upon for survival, appeared as fragile as mere toys before the adversary. A faint sound of pneumatic pressure release pierced the heavy silence, akin to the sound of a needle dropping in an utterly quiet concert hall, echoing in each person's ears. The black iron behemoth, the heavy door that seemed to separate 2 worlds, began to open slowly. All eyes, including those of the terrified survivors, seemed to be gripped by an invisible hand, forcing their gaze towards the yawning entrance. A slender figure descended from the vehicle, not the towering, muscular demon they had envisioned, but an ordinary man clad in clean work attire, with a well-proportioned frame and a stern, even somewhat handsome visage. Yet, this seemingly unremarkable man, as his tactical boots met the debris-strewn concrete, seemed to lower the atmospheric pressure of the entire parking lot. Chun Imo paid no heed to the utterly demoralized bandits, nor did he acknowledge the awestruck or terrified gazes of the survivors. He stepped out, advancing slowly towards Steel Fist, who was struggling to rise, his face as pale as parchment. Each step he took resonated like a heartbeat, heavy and rhythmic, causing those who once dared to resist to instinctively recoil like mice before a cat, some collapsing in fear. Stopping before Steel Fist, Chun Imo stood still. He was leaner and slightly shorter than Steel Fist. Yet, at that moment, his mere presence emanated an invisible pressure that made Steel Fist feel as though he were gazing up at an insurmountable mountain. "You just said," Chun Imo finally spoke, his voice low and devoid of emotion, "you admired my vehicle?" The question pierced Steel Fist's heart, already filled with fear and humiliation, like a poisoned dagger. His body trembled violently, cold sweat cascading down his bald head like a stream. However, he had long been a self-proclaimed sovereign, and the inherent ruthlessness of a desperate man prevented him from kneeling before all, like a dog. "Do not revel in this." Steel Fist squeezed out a few words through clenched teeth, attempting to mask his inner terror with a facade of bravado. He yearned to convey that he had allies behind him, that he possessed formidable backup. Yet, Chun Imo did not grant him the opportunity to continue. His expression remained unchanged as he raised his right leg, as swift as lightning, before anyone could react. He delivered a powerful kick to the knee of steel fist supporting left leg. Crack! The excruciatingly clear sound of bone fracturing resonated, echoing like thunder. Steel fist's robust thigh, resembling a tree stump, bent at an unnatural angle, defying the laws of human anatomy. Steel fist's roar abruptly ceased as he lowered his head, staring blankly at the leg that no longer belonged to him. His mind blanked for a second, overwhelmed by severe pain and shock. 1 second later, a scream, more beastly than human, pierced the night sky, erupting from his lips. His once mighty body could no longer endure, crashing to the ground. Hands clutching his grotesquely deformed leg, writhing in agony like a wild boar with a shattered spine. This bloody and brutal scene induced a collective gasp from the surrounding survivors, with a few timid women shrieking and covering their eyes, unable to bear the sight. Chen Mo did not glance at the writhing steel fist. He stepped forward, slowly raising his foot to rest upon steel fist's uninjured right ankle. Then, he gradually applied pressure downward. Creak! The bones groaned under the immense weight, producing a chilling, hair-raising sound. Steel fist's cries transformed into a choked whimper, laced with sobs. He distinctly felt his ankle bone inching closer to the brink of shattering. The sheer terror and despair of witnessing his own destruction, powerless to intervene, was 1,000 times more agonizing than death itself. I asked once more. Chen Mo leaned closer, his voice cold as a demon's whisper, resonating clearly in Steel Fist's ears. What did you just say? In that moment, Steel Fist's psychological defenses crumbled entirely. The fierce and dignified visage twisted by pain and fear dissolved, leaving only the primal instinct for survival. I was wrong. I was wrong. Please. I was wrong. Tears streaming down his face, he pleaded desperately, his head banging against the hard concrete floor. I should have recognized your power. I am nothing. Spare me. I will give you everything. Please, spare me. In the face of absolute power, his once proud violence, his so-called dignity and rules, were as fragile as a jest, crumbling under pressure. Upon hearing his complete breakdown, Chen Mo's expression remained impassive. He slowly released his foot. His purpose had been achieved. He no longer regarded the crumpled figure of Steel Fist, now reduced to a pitiful heap on the ground, his cries feeble and devoid of strength. Standing tall, Chen Mo surveyed the surroundings. His gaze, like an invisible, icy blade, swept across the faces of every survivor in the marketplace. All who met his gaze, whether earlier reveling in schadenfreude or numbly observing, immediately averted their eyes, as if stung by a scorpion, unable to meet his stare. The entire parking lot lay in a deathly silence. Only the mournful wails of the wind through the ruins and Steel Fist's suppressed, intermittent sobs remained. Chen Mo stood there, a solitary figure, commanding the entire scene with his presence. Chapter 20. A new order. Finally, he spoke. From this day forth, I shall oversee this marketplace. Chen Mo's voice was not loud, perhaps even somewhat monotonous, yet in the pervasive silence, it struck like a thunderclap, resonating in every ear and echoing in their minds. Everyone abruptly lifted their heads, their expressions akin to encountering a ghost. Oversee? What does that mean? Would he, like Steel Fist, become a tyrant here, collecting protection fees, robbing, and exploiting? Fear ensnared the survivors' hearts once more, as they pondered if they had just sent away a ravenous wolf only to welcome a more ferocious tiger. Seemingly perceiving their thoughts, Chen Mo's next words left everyone momentarily stunned. I will merely maintain order and ensure fair trade. His gaze swept over the haphazardly constructed stalls and the pale faces of the terrified survivors. You may continue to exchange resources here. I will not interfere with any transactions nor levy any fees. However, his tone shifted sharply, turning frigid as the harshest winter wind. He slowly raised his hand, pointing at the still twitching Steel Fist on the ground, resembling a dead dog. Anyone who dares to use violence to threaten or rob here will meet the same fate as him. Boom. This declaration was more impactful than the previous roar of an engine. The parking lot erupted into a cacophony of disbelief. Survivors exchanged incredulous glances, unable to fathom their ears. No protection fees? Ensuring fair trade? How is this possible? Is this still the apocalypse? Their gazes toward Chen Mo began to shift subtly. The earlier fear and trepidation swiftly dissipated, replaced by a more complex emotion. It was a profound awe, akin to witnessing a glimmer of hope after struggling in darkness for too long. They looked at the once mighty Steel Fist still howling on the ground, then at the man standing there, not particularly imposing in stature, yet seemingly capable of supporting the weight of the world. They finally understood. A new order had arrived. Chen Mo paid no further heed to the crowd's reactions. He sought neither their adoration nor gratitude. He had come for a more tangible purpose. He nodded toward the black iron behemoth, raising his chin slightly. The pneumatic door opened once more. Su Qing descended from the vehicle, clad in a crisp police uniform. A pistol at her waist, her expression devoid of emotion. Her sharp gaze, akin to that of a hawk, coldly scanned the entirety of the scene. She walked directly toward Steel Fist's stunned subordinates. Those once brazen thugs trembled as if caught in a tempest, some collapsing to the ground in fear upon meeting her gaze. Su Qing halted before them, her voice soft yet crystal clear. Load everything you have hoarded onto the vehicle. Food, medicine, fuel, everything without exception. You have 10 minutes. With that, she turned away, standing like a frigid statue, weapon at the ready. It was a silent yet far more potent form of surveillance than any threat. The Steel Fist subordinates were momentarily stunned, and then they felt as if a great pardon had been granted. Just moving things? No need to die, nor to have their legs broken. They scrambled to their feet, hastily rushing toward a small warehouse behind their former stronghold, the supermarket. Soon, a comical yet astonishing relocation began. Once the oppressors, they now found themselves in the humblest role of porters. They hoisted heavy wooden crates, clutched bundles of canned goods, and carried enormous barrels of gasoline. All under the cold gaze of Su Qing, lining up as they trembled toward the black steel beast. The surrounding survivors watched in a daze, witnessing the wealth hoarded by the Steel Fist gang for months flowing like water into that terrifying armored bus. Crates of luncheon meat, the production dates long obscured, had become the currency of the apocalypse. Bundles of compressed biscuits, life-saving rations, and numerous barrels brimming with gasoline, the lifeblood that could power vehicles and bring light and warmth. Additionally, several first aid kits adorned with the Red Cross symbol were filled with precious antibiotics, bandages, and disinfectants. These supplies were sufficient to allow any small team to weather the coming winter in relative comfort. And now, they all belonged to that man. No one found it inappropriate. In the apocalypse, spoils rightfully belonged to the victors. Moreover, this victor had restored a long-lost order to their lives. Inside the vehicle, Lin Wan observed everything unfolding outside through the surveillance screens. Her small face remained somewhat pale, watching the bandits carry the supplies, humbly approaching the homeward. Her heart was a tumult of emotions. Was this the style of Chen Mo? Domineering, direct, yet terrifyingly efficient. He established the most civilized rules through the bloodiest means. This stark contrast left her feeling an inexplicable, heart-stopping shock. When she saw box after box of medicines and barrel after barrel of fuel being loaded onto the vehicle, her eyes sparkled with the light of a scholar, uncontrollably brightening. With these supplies, the water purification system's filters could be repaired, and the energy engineering room's upgrade plans could finally be set in motion. 10 minutes later, as the last box of canned goods was thrown onto the vehicle, the Steel Fist gang's warehouse had been completely emptied. The spacious cabin of the armored bus was now filled to the brim with various supplies, leaving only a narrow passageway. Report to the commander, all supplies have been accounted for. Su Qing returned to the vehicle and reported succinctly. Chen Mo nodded. He cast one last glance at the Steel Fist, still struggling to survive on the ground, and at the group of bandits akin to lost dogs. His eyes betraying no emotion. He turned and boarded the vehicle. With a hiss, the pneumatic door slammed shut, isolating everything outside once more. The engine of the homeward let out a low growl again, under the watchful eyes of all the survivors in the market. This black steel beast slowly turned its head and drove away from the land it had just conquered, without a hint of nostalgia. Inside the cabin, the rich aroma of food mingled with the sharp scent of gasoline, creating an incredibly reassuring fragrance amidst the apocalypse. At that moment, Chen Mo's mind was greeted by the system's notification sound as expected. Ding! A large amount of disposable resources detected. Would you like to convert them into energy points? Chen Mo gazed at the supplies that filled half the cabin, a faint smile gracing his lips. He decided to partially convert them, turning all the scrap metal and 1/3 of the fuel into energy points, while reserving the remaining food and medicines for strategic stockpiling. He did not choose to feed everything into the system. Energy points were fundamental, but tangible resources were the insurance for the team's survival and the cornerstone of stability among the people. Particularly, his gaze fell upon the two still grayed-out icons on the system interface, luxury restaurant and onboard. Unlocking these two features that could significantly enhance the team's happiness required a greater variety of ingredients and supplies. Command received. Converting. Conversion complete. Total energy points gained, 680 points. Chen Mo looked at his newly replenished energy point balance, feeling the homeward steadier drive due to its heavy load. And calmness washed over him. He turned to his two crew members. Su Qing was seated on her throne, meticulously cleaning her sidearm with a piece of clean deerskin. Her gaze focused and sharp. Lin Wan had already dived back into her energy engineering room, her eyes shining as she pored over a pile of freshly acquired electronic components and circuit diagrams, muttering to herself as if she had entered another world. A cold warrior, a frenzied scientist, and he, the commander of a mobile fortress. A peculiar yet immensely reliable team was beginning to take shape. Chen Mo withdrew his gaze and looked ahead once more. Outside the windshield stretched a dilapidated and desolate road, extending to the crimson horizon. At the end of the road lay more ruins, more unknowns, and further challenges. Conquering a market and vanquishing a mediocre gang was merely a trivial first step in this wasteland of the apocalypse. He understood that his true journey had only just begun. Chapter 21. Searching for the main control system, the Homeward was cruising smoothly. The fully laden supplies made the chassis of this steel beast more stable, absorbing every bump in the road perfectly thanks to its heavy tires and suspension system. Inside the cabin, the rich aroma of luncheon meat mingled with the pungent scent of gasoline, creating a comforting fragrance amidst the apocalypse. Su Qing sat on her throne, diligently cleaning her sidearm with a piece of clean deerskin. She had disassembled the weapon into its precise components, neatly arranged on a tray before her. Her focused expression suggesting she was tending to a rare work of art rather than a mere firearm. Chen Mo sat at the driver's seat, controlling the vehicle while reviewing the city map recently confiscated from the Steel Fist gang on a virtual screen before him. This hand-drawn map was marked with different colored pens, indicating the majority of resource points, danger zones, and known survivor camps in the western part of the city. Although rough, it held immense value. Everything appeared calm and orderly until a sudden flurry of footsteps shattered the tranquility. A figure burst forth from the energy engineering room at the back of the cabin like a small whirlwind. Her face was freshly washed, now clad in a reasonably fitting sports outfit found in the warehouse, her hair tied back in a neat ponytail. Except for her continued frailty, she bore no resemblance to the pitiful creature once imprisoned in an iron box. At this moment, her face radiated the earnestness of a scholar, coupled with the urgency of someone whose house foundation was askew. "Commander," she exclaimed, brandishing a pale blue virtual tablet projected by the system, nearly thrusting it into Chen Mo's face. "I have just conducted a comprehensive inspection of the Homeward systems, and the results are not optimistic." Chen Mo's gaze shifted from the map to her serious little face. "Our home, now merely a burdened five-wheeled vehicle." She waved her small hands excitedly, employing a trending internet phrase that Chen Mo could not comprehend but sensed was not favorable. She appeared formidable, yet her foundation was precarious. A facade of gold and jade, with decay within. Her delicate fingers flew across the virtual tablet, summoning charts brimming with intricate data and red alerts. "Look, our secondary composite armor has sufficient physical resistance. Yet against energy attacks or corrosive environments, it's as flimsy as paper. Additionally, Sister Su Qing's weapon platform boasts 6 barrels of machine guns, which sounds impressive. But the ammunition and energy consumption are astronomical. Engaging in a battle of the earlier scale would nearly deplete 1/3 of our energy reserves. The cost-effectiveness is far too low." Most importantly, she took a deep breath, pointing to a module circled in red at the center of the tablet. "Our modification potential has reached its peak." "What does that mean?" Chen Mo furrowed his brow slightly. "It means we are akin to a luxurious tractor," she analogized, her small face filled with frustration. "No matter how fast it runs or how thick its armor, it remains a tractor. To transform into a true tank, or even an interstellar battleship, we lack the most crucial element, the main control system." Her finger emphasized a line of golden text that enlarged on the screen. "Conditions for unlocking advanced function module, intelligent factory, main control chip. Examples: energy shield module, electromagnetic cannon weapon array, optical camouflage system." Gazing at the enticing array of terms glowing like treasures from a sci-fi film, Chen Mo's breath momentarily halted. Energy shield, electromagnetic cannon. This was the future he envisioned. The current motherboard's computational power had reached its limits, incapable of accommodating the operational commands of such advanced modules. Her voice brought him back to reality. "We require a genuine industrial-grade brain to replace this rudimentary control core." Chen Mo's eyes sharpened instantly. "Where can we find it?" Her confidence flickered as she recalled some pre-apocalyptic data. Such high-level chips are exclusively employed in top-tier, fully automated intelligent factories. In the entire Jiang City, there's only one place that meets this criterion. Her finger traced the map, ultimately encircling a vibrant red circle in a region at the northwest corner of the city. Jiang City Silicon Valley Tech Park. Chen Mo's gaze lingered on that name, lost in thought. He was not swayed by the allure of powerful blueprints. The more valuable the item, the stronger the forces guarding it, a timeless truth in the apocalypse. He refrained from issuing immediate orders, instead retrieving the long silent shortwave radio. Having just established his reputation at the market, the name of his home had surely spread among the survivors. Now was the opportune moment to leverage this renown for intelligence. He returned the frequency to the previous public channel. The radio crackled, a cacophony of static interspersed with hushed discussions among survivors. Did you hear? The Steel Fist gang has fallen. An armored vehicle took them out in one fell swoop. Not just fallen, I saw it with my own eyes. Steel Fist's leg was broken, like a dead dog. The machine gun on that vehicle rattled, obliterating their weapons in mere moments. Incredible skill. They call themselves the Home. And I heard they don't charge protection fees as long as trades are fair. Listening intently, Chun Mo's expression remained impassive. He grasped the microphone and pressed the talk button. This is the Home. He uttered only 5 words, and the entire channel fell into a profound silence. I need information about Jiang City Silicon Valley Tech Park. Chun Mo's voice was steady and authoritative, carrying an undeniable tone of trade, offering one valuable piece of information in exchange for 10 cans of luncheon meat. 10 cans of luncheon meat. This proposal detonated in the silent channel like a heavy bomb. After a prolonged silence of several seconds, a voice trembling with fear cautiously emerged. I know. That place is a forbidden zone. A death trap. The speaker seemed to recall something horrifying, his voice quivering uncontrollably. Our team merely wanted to scavenge some electronic waste from the perimeter, still a kilometer away. Then, suddenly, a horde of things like wasps descended from the sky. They moved too fast to see. All we heard was a buzzing sound, and our vehicle was shredded to pieces within seconds. Not a single person remained intact. There are ghosts. Man-eating metal monsters. Don't go. Please, don't go. In his final words, the survivor nearly screamed. His signal abruptly cut off in a cacophony of panic, as if his companions had forcibly shut down the radio, fearing they would attract something's attention. Once again, the channel descended into silence. Everyone was petrified by the gruesome account. Inside the vehicle, her small face paled as she instinctively clutched Chun Mo's clothing. Su Qing's brow furrowed tightly as she gazed at the marked area on the screen, solemnly stating, "Commander, the threat level is extremely high. The enemy possesses aerial superiority and is an unknown unit, with an uncertain number and high aggression." However, in response to their reactions, a playful smile crept onto Chun Mo's face. The elusive, mysterious team, reliant on drone warfare, annihilating anyone or anything that approached. The intelligence perfectly corroborated the description of the hive. A tech hunting team in the system's database. What others perceived as a forbidden death zone appeared to him as an untouched treasure trove, brimming with high-end components and cutting-edge technology. He turned to face his 2 crew members, each with differing expressions, and a subtle smile graced his lips. "Are you afraid?" Meeting his gaze, Su Qing's eyes gleamed with resolve, sharp as a blade. "Reporting to the commander, my Gatling gun is thirsting for action." Though she was still somewhat frightened, the thought of that main control chip capable of transforming the Home steeled her courage. "For science and progress." "Excellent." Chun Mo averted his gaze, focusing ahead. Beyond the windshield lay a desolate, crumbling road extending into a blood-red twilight. He picked up the hand-drawn map, marking the name Jiang City Silicon Valley Tech Park with a large, ambitious circle of red. "Su Qing, ensure the weapon platform's energy is at maximum and check all ammunition reserves." He paused, his voice turning cold and resolute, akin to issuing a battle command. "Prepare for combat." Chapter 22. The hive of the no man's land. The Home raced down the dilapidated road, the upgraded secondary turbo engine roaring with a newfound power, no longer strained, but rather robust and steady. Inside the vehicle, the atmosphere was grave. Lin Wan had returned to her energy engineering room, her small face taut, hands a blur over the semicircular control panel. "The optimal route has been plotted, and we are currently navigating around large obstacles. Estimated arrival at the target area perimeter in 40 minutes. Commander, according to the analysis of radio intelligence, it is highly probable that the enemy units consist of military or industrial-grade drone swarms, capable of high-speed maneuverability and collective combat. Our armor can withstand physical impacts. Yet we must remain vigilant against the specialized warheads they may carry, such as high-explosive or armor-piercing munitions." Her voice resonated through the internal communication system, calm and professional. A stark contrast to the trembling figure she once was, confined within an iron box. "Su Qing, set the radar to maximum power and monitor all aerial units." Chun Mo's gaze remained fixed ahead, his voice steady. "Acknowledged." Su Qing's response emanated from her combat station, aptly named the throne. The main screen before her shifted to the circular scanning interface of the radar. A green light wave swept methodically across the display, revealing only chaotic light spots representing the ground debris, while the sky remained eerily clear. Time passed, second by second. The scene outside grew increasingly desolate. Abandoned buildings dwindled, replaced by vast stretches of forsaken industrial complexes and barren land. The air was permeated with the acrid scent characteristic of chemical leaks, as if the entire world had succumbed to an eerie silence. This was the outskirts of Jiangxing's Silicon Valley Technology Park, an area scarcely trodden even before the apocalypse. Suddenly, an urgent alarm pierced the stillness of the cabin. "Report, Commander." Su Qing's voice tightened, the radar detecting a high-speed, moving target. "Directly ahead, 3 kilometers away. The numbers are incalculable. They are coalescing into a singular mass, advancing towards us." Chen Mo's eyes sharpened in an instant. He slammed on the brakes, simultaneously pulling the handbrake. With a screech of tires that grated on the nerves, the heavily laden Homeward came to a steady halt, leaving 2 distinct black skid marks on the road. Almost simultaneously with the vehicle's stop, everyone heard it. Buzzing. The sound approached, initially resembling a swarm of flies buzzing in the distance, but within mere seconds, it escalated into a high-pitched metallic drone, seemingly capable of tearing the sky apart. At the edge of the horizon, a massive, dense black dot emerged, expanding at a terrifying speed until it transformed into an ominous cloud of countless metallic constructs, blotting out the sun. "They are coming. Prepare for impact," Chen Mo growled. Without needing to be reminded, Su Qing and Lin Wan clutched tightly to their surroundings. In the next moment, the black cloud collided violently with the Homeward. Clank, clank, clank. The sound was akin to hail battering an iron roof, instantly drowning out all noise within the cabin. The vehicle began to shake violently. Numerous drones, each no larger than a palm and resembling metallic bees, frantically assaulted and tore at the Homeward's secondary composite armor with their sharp noses and rapidly spinning drills. Sparks flew, reminiscent of cheap fireworks on a festive occasion. Armor integrity, 98. 97. Structural stability, no immediate threat. Lin Wan's eyes were glued to the data on the console, reporting loudly, her voice quivering from the violent vibrations. Chen Mo's expression remained unchanged, though a weight settled in his heart. The individual attack power of these drones was not formidable. They could not inflict effective damage on the composite armor. However, their sheer numbers were overwhelming, so numerous that it induced a terrifying qualitative change. They descended like a swarm of piranhas, consuming the defenses of the Homeward in the most primal, savage manner. It was pure numerical supremacy. "We cannot remain passive." A fierce glint flashed in Su Qing's eyes. She was already prepared. The 6-barreled rotating machine gun atop the vehicle sprang into action upon receiving the command. "Open fire." Su Qing's thumb pressed down decisively. Roar. The piercing, thunderous roar once again shattered the silence. A searing metal storm erupted from the 6 spinning barrels, creating an unassailable barrage aimed at the dark cloud of drones. Boom, boom, boom. Drones caught in the barrage erupted into fiery fragments and debris. Yet, this seemingly effective attack was akin to pouring water into a boiling pot of oil. More drones, undeterred by the onslaught, surged from all directions to fill the void. Su Qing's brow furrowed tightly as she quickly discerned the issue. These drones were too small, too swift, their flight paths utterly erratic. Her pride in precise shooting diminished against such locust-like swarms, yielding minimal effect. Although the Gatling gun covered a wide area, its accuracy against these high-speed, small targets was woefully inadequate. Out of the 100 rounds she fired, perhaps fewer than 10 struck true, while the rest wasted their firepower in empty space. "No." Su Qing gritted her teeth, shouting into the communications channel, "The targets are too small, too fast. Effective locking is impossible. If this continues, our ammunition and energy will be depleted swiftly." This was the first time they were entirely suppressed by the enemy in terms of firepower. The once proud meat grinder that had instilled them with absolute confidence now appeared clumsy and impotent. "Cease fire, conserve ammunition." Chen Mo's voice was calm, devoid of any tremor. He understood that in this situation, engaging in a war of attrition with the enemy was the most foolish choice. Reluctantly, Su Qing released the fire button, and the roar from the vehicle's top ceased abruptly. Inside the cabin, they were once again enveloped by the maddening sound of incessant impacts. Lin Wan analyzed their communication frequency and control mode. Attempt electronic interference or intrusion. Chen Mo immediately issued new orders. "No, the enemy's encryption level is too high, and it operates on a standalone local network. We lack the front-end port to connect." Lin Wan's face flushed with urgency. "Unless we can capture a live one, and let me dismantle it for hardware analysis." "Capture a live one." Chen Mo glanced at the frenzied metallic storm outside, a self-deprecating smile creeping onto his lips. This was more absurd than asking Su Qing to shoot down a fighter jet with a handgun. They were ensnared in a predicament, an unprecedented dilemma purely born from a technological disparity. The Homeward's armor could hold for a time, but trapped in this manner, it would inevitably be worn down by the unending assault of these metallic pests. They were like flies caught in amber, unable to move. Just then, Chen Mo's gaze, through the observation window before the driver's seat, keenly caught a hint of anomaly. In the distance, beneath the shadow of a building in the ruins of the technology park, a small group of drones was not targeting the Homeward. They were hunting a small figure darting across the ground with remarkable speed. Chen Mo immediately zoomed in on that area. On the screen, a diminutive figure clad in a tattered hooded sweatshirt was desperately navigating the debris, displaying acrobatic agility as she ran, rolled, and evaded. It was a girl. Her speed was astonishing, always evading the energy projectiles launched from the drones before they could strike the ground, maneuvering at seemingly impossible angles. Yet, her situation was perilous. The number of drones pursuing her was ever increasing, their assaults growing more relentless. Streams of blue energy beams erupted around her like the sides of death, sending clouds of concrete debris flying. She resembled a fragile boat amidst tumultuous waves, on the verge of being completely engulfed. Chapter 23. A desperate rescue inside the cabin. The atmosphere was as oppressive as a solid block of lead. The endless storm of metallic bees, a harbinger of death, was relentlessly eroding the life force of the Homeward. The lament of armor, the futility of ammunition, and the ceaseless onslaught of enemies created a deadlock. However, Chen Mo's gaze had long since pierced through the immediate dilemma, fixating on the diminutive figure fleeing among the ruins in the distance. To save her? The thought seemed absurd to Chen Mo at that moment. They were struggling for their own survival, ensnared like moths in a spider's web. Any unnecessary movement could hasten their demise. Rescuing a complete stranger, from any rational perspective, was an utterly foolish choice. Yet, as he observed the girl deftly dodging explosions with an agility beyond mortal comprehension, he saw a reflection of his former self. In that forsaken auto repair shop, under the oppression of a corpulent boss and the ostracization of colleagues, he too had fought alone and stubbornly to survive in the narrowest of margins. In this godforsaken apocalypse, if the last vestige of humanity's impulse to live was extinguished, what difference was there between him and the mindless ghouls outside, who only knew how to feast upon flesh? Damn it, I'll take the gamble. Since boarding this vehicle, his life had become a series of high-stakes bets. Lin Wan. Chen Mo's voice resonated through the internal communication channel, unwavering and as calm as ancient ice. Analyze the structural weaknesses of that office building on the left. Mark them for me. In 3 seconds. Huh. Oh, understood. Lin Wan was momentarily taken aback by the sudden command, but she didn't question it. The scholar's mind shifted into high gear, her hands a blur on the console. Su Qing. Chen Mo's orders came in rapid succession. Cease aerial fire. Conserve ammunition. On my command. Concentrate fire to clear a direct path for that girl. Received. A flicker of confusion crossed Su Qing's eyes, but she unhesitatingly released the firing button. The reassuring roar from the vehicle's roof came to an abrupt halt. Though she did not grasp the commander's intent, she chose to trust him without reservation. The crossbeam between the 3rd and 4th floors is the area of highest stress. Lin Wan's voice chimed in just in time. A red dot appearing on the virtual map before Chen Mo. Brace yourselves. Chen Mo bellowed, a fierce light igniting in his eyes. He slammed the accelerator to the floor. Boom. The Homeward, which had merely been enduring the onslaught, roared to life like an unchained behemoth, releasing a primal fury. The vehicle surged forward, disregarding the drones clinging to its sides, turning its head with a defiant stance, and violently charging toward the dilapidated 7-story office building. In that moment, not just Su Qing and Lin Wan inside the vehicle, but even the drones pursuing the girl paused in bewilderment. They could not comprehend why this massive iron canister chose to charge at a building instead of fleeing. In the next heartbeat, Chen Mo provided them with an answer. Boom. A sound reverberated, enough to dim the very heavens. The snarling front of the Homeward, clad in secondary composite armor, struck with precision and brutality at the structural vulnerability between the 3rd and 4th floors of the building. Steel beams groaned in agony, concrete wept. Under the overwhelming weight and kinetic energy, the building's mechanical equilibrium was shattered in an instant. From the point of impact, spiderweb-like cracks spread wildly across the wall in mere seconds. Following the pull of gravity, the upper half of the building began to tilt, emitting a spine-chilling creak as it began to collapse. Now, Chen Mo's roar echoed through the communication channel. Su Qing was already prepared. As the building began to fall, Clouds of dust and debris erupted into the air, momentarily disrupting the formation of the drones. Buzz. The six-barrel rotary gun re-emerged. Its menacing muzzle now aimed not at the sky, but downwards. Rat-tat-tat-tat-tat. Su Qing's gaze was as sharp as an eagle's. Instead of providing covering fire, she wielded an extraordinary control, compressing the Gatling's trajectory into a straight and precise line of deadly intent. The torrent of bullets grazed the girl sprinting forward, ruthlessly sweeping towards the drones pursuing her from behind and the sides. Boom, boom, boom. Several diving drones were instantly detonated in midair, erupting into dazzling fireworks. This corridor of death, carved by bullets, pointed directly towards the open door of the homeward. In that fleeting moment, the girl, desperately fleeing in the distance, clearly noticed the sudden change. She hesitated for a brief second, then a remarkable spark of survival ignited in her eyes, hidden beneath the shadows of her hood. Without a moment's pause, she propelled herself forward, her body launching like an arrow along the newly cleared path towards the steel behemoth slowly emerging from the rubble. Huge stones and twisted steel rained down like hail, crashing around her and stirring clouds of dust. The energy projectiles from the drones exploded behind her, the searing shockwaves threatening to topple her. Yet, her steps never faltered. Closer, even closer. She could see the soothing light emanating from the open door, just 5 meters away. A stray drone, evading detection, emitted a shrill screech as it shot out from the smoke, swift as lightning, aiming for her back. "Watch out!" Su Qing cried out. But there was no time to redirect her aim. The girl's pupils constricted as the shadow of death enveloped her. However, in that critical moment, she executed an unexpected maneuver. She slid forward, her body skimming the ground, narrowly avoiding the fatal strike. Using the momentum from her slide, she forcefully twisted her waist, transitioning from a prone position to a crouch, then propelled herself with powerful legs. Bang! She shot upward like a cannonball, tracing an elegant arc through the air, landing precisely towards the open door. Bang! Her body thudded heavily against the metallic floor of the vehicle, producing a crisp, muffled sound. Before she could regain her balance, the pneumatic door behind her slammed shut with a forceful bang. The cacophony of buzzing and explosions that would shatter the spirit of any ordinary individual was instantly muted. The world seemed to have been silenced, leaving only the deep hum of the idling engine and her own breath, which rasped violently like a wind-blown bellows. Chun Imo slowly turned his head, observing the girl curled up on the floor, filthy and trembling like a leaf, weakened by exhaustion and fear. She lifted her head, revealing a small face smeared with dust and blood beneath her hood, her startlingly bright eyes fixed on him, brimming with vigilance, confusion, and a hint of bewilderment at having survived. Yet, Chun Imo's attention was entirely diverted from her. The moment the girl boarded, a cold, emotionless mechanical voice resonated like a celestial echo in the depths of his mind. Beep. Survivor Mia detected boarding. Conducting homeostasis compatibility test, scanning individual, analyzing mental field fluctuations. A torrent of data flashed rapidly across the virtual screen before Chun Imo, culminating in a colossal golden percentage figure, even more dazzling than Lin Wan, which froze at the center of the display. Test completed. Compatibility 99. Top tier. Chun Imo's heart skipped a beat before he could fully process this overwhelming surprise. The next line of golden text sent his blood racing. Specialization direction determined. Information warfare drone control. Rating, ultra rare. This individual possesses extraordinary dynamic vision and neural reflex speed, making her the sole adapter for the Hive drone hangar, functional pod. Commander is advised to recruit immediately. Chapter 24. Turning the tables. Ding 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 ding. Outside, an endless metallic storm relentlessly battered the vehicle, as if urging him to make a decision. Chun Imo wasted not a single second. He stepped forward, approaching the girl still curled on the floor. He crouched down, disregarding the wariness in her eyes, and spoke directly, with an authoritative tone that brooked no argument. "I am Chun Imo, the owner of this vehicle. We saved you, but now we are trapped." He gestured towards the drone swarm outside, his voice steady and devoid of emotion. "I need your abilities to resolve this. In exchange, this vehicle will be your home." Mia was taken aback. Her startlingly bright eyes gazed unblinkingly at the man before her. His gaze was cold and direct, akin to a sharp scalpel that sliced through all pretense, cutting straight to the heart of the matter. How did he know she possessed special abilities? Yet now, there was no time for such musings. Her survival, to be seated within this vehicle, was monumental fortune. She glanced at her sister Su Qing, clad in police uniform, who offered her a kind smile, then back at the powerful man squatting before her, whose presence was almost suffocating. She had no choice. Rather, this was the best choice she could hope for. I am Mia. She spoke with a voice still trembling. What can I do? Excellent. Shinemo rose, uttering no further unnecessary words. No sooner had he finished speaking than the system's voice confirmed the finalization in his mind. Beep. Top-tier compatible pilot Mia confirmed for recruitment. Homeostasis agreement activated. Crew position 1. Exclusive functional pod. Hive drone hangar unlocked. Adapting installation in progress. A deep, resonant hum, distinctly different from before and imbued with a sense of high technology, emanated from the side wall of the cabin. Between Su Qing and Lin Wan's designated seats, a section of what was once a mere armored panel began to glide apart with precise mechanical sounds. A cockpit of extreme sci-fi design unfurled from the wall's recess like petals blossoming. It was a semi-enclosed, egg-shaped seat crafted from an unknown silvery alloy, adorned with sleek, futuristic lines. In front of the seat, there were no physical screens, but instead, 3 holographic displays of varying sizes projected vast streams of data in pale blue light into the air. Flanking the seat were 2 peculiar spherical controllers, their surfaces covered with a layer of flexible material capable of sensing bioelectrical currents. This contraption resembled nothing of a cockpit, but rather the pinnacle of equipment from a sci-fi game. Wow! Mia gasped, her mouth agape in awe. The disheveled appearance of a hunted girl vanished in an instant, replaced by an amalgamation of euphoria, obsession, and the exhilaration of a top-tier player encountering a rare item. She nearly scrambled to her feet, like a cat discovering a new realm, rushing forward in leaps and bounds. Dynamic capture joystick, holographic data waterfall, and this neuron sensing seat. She circled the cockpit like a whirlwind, her words tumbling forth in a fervent stream, incomprehensible to Chun Mo and Su Qing. My heavens, this configuration is fit for a professional StarCraft league. Who designed this? Without hesitation, she plopped down into the seat. As if it possessed a life of its own, the chair adjusted itself to her form the moment she settled, perfectly enveloping her petite frame. An indescribable sense of fit and control surged through her spine, radiating throughout her body. She gently placed her hands on the 2 smooth spherical controllers. The instant her fingers grasped them, the 3 holographic displays flickered to life, an avalanche of data cascading down, coalescing into a succinct and powerful welcome message. Hive drone hangar connected. Pilot Mia, welcome to your throne. Mia's expression transformed entirely. The last vestiges of timidity and confusion evaporated, supplanted by an absolute confidence that surveyed the world with disdain, as if she commanded everything. A playful smirk curved her lips, reminiscent of a top-tier villain preparing to dominate a game. Game time, she murmured, her fingers dancing over the spherical controllers, leaving a dazzling trail of afterimages. On the main display, countless red dots, representing enemy drones, filled the screen like a starry sky, while amidst them, a green cursor symbolizing their home ship was being fiercely assaulted. Let me see what your firewall is made of. Is it built from scrap? Mia's speed was unfathomable, as streams of blue data commands erupted from her fingertips like the sharpest of blades, plunging deep into the seemingly impenetrable command network of the enemy drones. First layer protocol breached, second layer identity verification bypassed. Found you. Under her deft control, the blue cursor, emblematic of her prowess, danced through the overwhelming torrent of crimson data streams like an elite dancer, nimbly weaving and pirouetting. With each leap, it landed precisely on the defensive nodes of the opposing system, tearing open a breach. The entire process flowed seamlessly, imbued with a violent aesthetic. Within a mere 10 seconds, Mia's movements abruptly halted as she snapped her fingers with a crisp sound. Commander, your hive is now under my dominion. As her words fell, the frenzied drone storm outside, battering the Ark, experienced a peculiar pause. All drones simultaneously ceased their assault, as if a pause button had been pressed, quietly hovering in midair. What is happening? They VE stopped. Lin Wan and Su Qing exclaimed in unison. Before they could process this, Mia's eyes sparkled with mischief. Now, I shall grant you 3 seconds to experience what it means to fight oneself. With that, her hands moved once more. In the next instant, a scene that sent chills down everyone's spine unfolded. The hovering mass of black clouds split violently down the middle. Half of the drones turned their sharp rams and menacing cannons upon their counterparts. Buzzing. No firing commands were needed. The 2 metal storms collided with a frenzied ferocity, engaging in mutual destruction. The thunderous roars of explosions, the ripping of metal, and the shattering of components converged into a symphony of death amidst apocalypse. Countless drones erupted into brilliant flares in the sky, debris and fragments raining down like a deluge, blanketing the ground. The previously terrifying swarm that had rendered Chun Mo and his companions helpless was now self-destructing at an astonishing pace. This was no longer a battle. It was a unilateral, bloody slaughter orchestrated by their own ranks. Well done, Su Qing exclaimed as she beheld the dazzling spectacle on the screen, akin to fireworks. Lin Wan's mouth hung open, wide enough to fit an egg, as she watched Mia, sitting comfortably in an egg-shaped chair, as if merely playing a casual game. Feeling her worldview shift once again. Is this the pinnacle of genius at 99 compatibility? How absurdly unfair. In less than a minute. As the last drone shattered into fragments at the hands of its fellow comrades, the world fell utterly silent. In the sky, only about a third of the drones, now fully under Mia's control, hovered like the most loyal of sentinels around the Arkansas. Mia stretched languidly, a playful smile gracing her face, a smile befitting a victor. While the opposing commander was likely furiously smashing his keyboard, Chun Mo exhaled deeply, gazing out at the chaos strewn across the ground and the spoils in the sky that had changed allegiance. He turned to cast a profound glance at the girl who had just executed a stunning reversal. He had won this gamble, and a significant victory it was. Well done, Chun Mo said, a genuine smile forming at the corner of his lips. Now, the entire tech park belongs to us. Chapter 25, The Storm with Chun Mo's command. A grand salvaging operation commenced. The Ark slowly glided into the central plaza of the tech park, where nearly 100 drones, entirely under Mia's control, became the most efficient transport fleet. Lin Wan was wholly consumed by excitement, akin to a mouse that had fallen into a vat of rice. Directing the drones to continuously retrieve the wreckage of downed drones, high-precision sensors, and a myriad of electronic components, both familiar and unfamiliar, back to the Ark's onboard conversion furnace. This micro-attitude controller is military-grade. Bring me 10. That is a semi-finished high-energy laser emitter. Though the energy core is destroyed, the focusing lens is still usable. Retrieve it. Oh my goodness. That is the Hive's data server. They didn't even have time to format it. Mia, quickly. Physically disconnect the network and bring me the entire cabinet. Her eyes sparkled with a frenzied gleam, akin to that of a top scholar discovering a treasure trove of knowledge. Su Qing, on the other hand, was responsible for vigilance and counting the spoils. She led a team of drones in a thorough search of several main research buildings in the tech park. Soon, they located the Hive team's lair, a secret server room on the 3rd underground level. Inside, several lifeless bodies lay sprawled across the floor, evidently having perished during an internal conflict after realizing their control over the drones had been seized, or perhaps they had simply succumbed to despair and taken their own lives. For Chun Mo, this was the best possible outcome. He preferred not to leave any survivors, nor did he relish the prospect of interrogation. The dead were the safest option. This server room was a veritable paradise of resources. In addition to vast stores of food and drinking water, they even had a small hydroponic vegetable garden, with a few wilted tomato plants bearing some green fruit. When Lin Wan excitedly presented a palm-sized smart factory master control chip, meticulously crafted with countless intricate circuits, that she had extracted from the Hive's main server, the atmosphere within the team reached a zenith. Commander, with this, combined with the seized materials, I am 90% certain that I can install an energy shield on the Ark within 3 days. Lin Wan's eyes gleamed like two 1-kilowatt light bulbs. At that point, not only these little bees, but even anti-tank missiles will bounce off us. Huffed, with my army of drones, who needs a shield? Mia, lounging with her legs crossed, fanned herself with a drone while casually sucking on a lollipop she had unearthed from who knows where, exuding an air of relaxation. Su Qing shook her head at the two lively characters, but couldn't help but smile lightly. For the first time, the team was infused with a joyful atmosphere. Chun Mo surveyed the scene before him, and for once, a rare feeling of ease washed over him. Armed with the master control chip, an abundance of resources, and 3 top-tier crew members whose abilities complemented one another and whose personalities varied, his mobile home finally had the capital to take flight. Just as the camaraderie blossomed in the wake of the battle, a dissonant voice abruptly pierced the air. It was the shortwave radio placed at the control panel by Chun Mo. It had been silent for quite some time, but now, it suddenly erupted with a cacophony of urgent and chaotic static, as if being disrupted by some formidable force. Warning to all survivors. A hoarse, distorted voice, filled with despair and terror, intermittently crackled from the radio. Laughter ceased abruptly in the cabin. Everyone instinctively turned to the radio. A super electromagnetic storm is forming, repeating. This is not a drill. The storm is accompanied by corrosive acid rain. Seek shelter in the deepest underground. Do not trust any metal shelters. They will become your The voice was abruptly cut off after a piercing electrical noise. The entire channel, indeed the entire world, was plunged into a profound silence. An electromagnetic storm? Mia's playful smile froze, and her lollipop clattered to the ground. As a prodigious girl who interacts daily with electronic devices, she understands better than anyone the implications of those four characters. It signifies that all electronic equipment could instantaneously transform into a heap of scrap metal. Although the Ark possesses designs to withstand electromagnetic pulses, none can guarantee a safe escape when confronted with a cataclysm of unprecedented intensity. Something is amiss. Lin Wan's reaction was the swiftest. She dashed back to her energy engineering room, her fingers flying across the control panel, bringing up the scanning interface of the onboard weather radar. "Commander, look!" Chen Mo and Su Qing quickly gathered around. On the radar screen, a colossal, spine-chilling crimson vortex of energy was rapidly coalescing above their location, spinning menacingly. The atmospheric ionosphere displayed severe anomalies, and the ozone layer had expanded by 300%. Lin Wan's face turned ashen as she typed furiously, a series of alarming data calculations echoing in her mind. The storm's intensity exceeds the upper limits of our defense systems. If we are struck directly, over 70% of the Ark's electronic systems will fail instantaneously, including our engines and weapon platforms. Her words fell like a bucket of icy water over everyone. But that's not all. Lin Wan took a deep breath and called up another analytical model, her voice trembling with fear. The electromagnetic storm will tear apart the acidic gas layers in the upper atmosphere, bringing them down with it. What the radio reported is true. Following the storm, there will be a widespread deluge of highly corrosive acid rain. Our secondary composite armor can only withstand that level of acid rain for, at most, half an hour before being completely corroded through. A paralyzed system and corroded armor imply that the Ark would become an immobile, rain-soaked iron coffin, and they would be trapped within, suffocating to death. Just moments ago, the atmosphere was filled with joy and hope, but now it was shrouded in a cloud of despair. They had just triumphed over a formidable enemy, seized a wealth of spoils, and even acquired the key to their future. Yet, in the blink of an eye, fate seemed poised to reclaim it all. There's no time to install the energy shield. Lin Wan's voice quivered with a hint of tears. Material processing and module construction will take at least 3 days, but look at the storm's formation speed. At most, we have 5 hours before it strikes. Su Qing's expression turned grave as she instinctively grasped her sidearm, aware that human effort pales in the face of natural disasters. Mia slumped, resembling a wilted eggplant, hugging her knees in the corner, devoid of the earlier aura of a great overlord. The entire cabin fell into a profound silence. A sense of powerlessness coiled around each heart like a vine. It was amidst this oppressive, nearly hopeless quietude that Chen Mo's voice slowly emerged. His tone, though soft, pierced through the stagnant despair like a needle. "Half an hour is sufficient." The three girls simultaneously raised their heads, disbelief etched across their faces. Chen Mo bore no trace of fear or panic. His gaze remained calm, even tinged with a hint of reckless determination born from desperation. He approached Lin Wan's control panel, pointing at the ever-expanding red storm vortex on the screen, his voice cold and resolute. "If we cannot hold our ground, then we must charge forth. Lin Wan, immediately activate all conversion furnaces and convert every piece of scrap we just salvaged into energy points. Leave no remnants. Su Qing, Mia, direct the drones to gather every usable steel plate, metal tool, anything that can shield us from the rain, and load it into the Ark." He paused, surveying his crew members, who had been forcibly dragged back from the brink of despair, and spoke deliberately. "We do not have the luxury of time to construct a perfect Ark. However, we can build a sufficiently sturdy raft before the flood arrives. All hands on deck. We must reinforce the Ark to its limits before the storm descends." Chapter 26. The Cage of Desperation. At Chen Mo's command, the war machine, which had just emerged from battle and had yet to savor the fruits of victory, entered a state of rapid operation anew, but in a radically different manner. All conversion furnaces were operating at overload. Energy points were surging. Lin Wan's face tightened, her eyes fixated on the fluctuating numbers on the control panel. Her voice edged with anxiety. All the scrap metal and electronic components scavenged from the tech park were ruthlessly fed into the furnace at this moment, transformed into their last line of defense against the impending calamity. Outside, Mia and Su Qing were racing against time. "Take down the fire hydrant from that building on the left, and the metal casing of that distribution box. Get them now," Mia commanded like a true queen bee, directing hundreds of drones like a swarm of industrious and frenzied worker bees. They abandoned graceful flight patterns. employing the most brutish methods to rip down every seemingly sturdy metal structure within the tech park, hauling them toward the Ark, swaying unsteadily. Su Qing stood atop the vehicle, personally overseeing the reinforcement efforts. Enormous steel plates, twisted iron doors, and even an entire billboard were haphazardly piled and welded onto the Ark's roof and sides. At this moment, the Ark no longer resembled a fearsome steel beast. Rather, it appeared as an unsightly mobile shack constructed from a scavenger's meager possessions. Yet, no one cared about appearances, because the sky had changed. In mere minutes, the heavens darkened at a visibly alarming rate. Heavy clouds, as thick as ink, converged from all directions, forming a massive, spine-chilling, slowly rotating vortex above the tech park. The air was laden with a suffocating heaviness, as if the entire sky had transformed into a colossal leaden weight pressing down upon them. "Commander, the atmospheric ionosphere is collapsing." Lin Wan's voice quivered, almost instantaneously. As her words fell, a blinding bolt of lightning, as thick as a barrel, struck without warning from the center of the cloud vortex. It did not strike any target but exploded in midair, unleashing an invisible, destructive pulse wave. Within the cabin, all the lights flickered violently, emitting a cacophony of distressing crackles, then extinguished for half a second before flickering back to life. Alarms blared from Lin Wan and Mia's consoles, their screens filled with an array of static and garbled messages. "It's an ultra-high-intensity electromagnetic pulse," Mia screamed. 40% of our external sensors are fried. 1/3 of the drones have gone dark, plummeting from the sky. The Ark's main system has been impacted. The backup power has switched automatically. System reboot in progress. Reboot failed. Unknown errors in the core module. Lin Wan's face turned pale. The technological advantage they had once prided themselves on now appeared as fragile as a mere jest in the face of this apocalyptic calamity. However, this is merely the beginning. A faint sound, incongruous with the surrounding environment, echoed upon the car's roof. Soon after, a second, then a third sound followed. Tapping, 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 growing increasingly dense and resonant, as though countless beans were simultaneously scattered upon a metal surface. It was raining. Chen Mo's gaze pierced through the dust-laden windshield, observing the outside world. Large, bizarrely pale yellow raindrops cascaded from the heavens, striking the ground, the ruins, and the unsightly, recently reinforced shell of the homeward. A faint hissing sound, reminiscent of meat sizzling, accompanied by a sharp, acrid scent, emanated from the roof and windows of the vehicle. The pale yellow droplets, upon contact with the metal, began to boil violently, releasing wisps of bluish-white smoke. The areas struck by the rain, whether the composite armor of the homeward itself or the makeshift iron reinforcements, were visibly corroded, forming tiny pits at an alarming rate. It was strongly corrosive acid rain. It had truly arrived. Alarms blared. The integrity of the external armor continued to plummet. Lin Wan watched the red data on the console slide downward, feeling her heart plunge into an abyss. At this rate, they would not last half an hour. In fact, they would likely be thoroughly melted through in less than 20 minutes. Barbie, this time it was truly Barbie. Mia curled up in her egg-shaped seat, clutching her knees. Her face pale, her lips unconsciously murmuring trending internet phrases, yet devoid of her usual playfulness, leaving only sheer despair. However, just when everyone thought this was the most dire situation they would face, a deep rumbling, as if emanating from the very core of the earth, erupted without warning. The thunderous sound was distinctly different from the rumblings of the sky. It was heavy, resonant, carrying a frequency that sent shivers down the spine. Slowly emanating from beneath their feet, from deep within the earth. The ground began to tremble violently. An earthquake? Surely not. Was nature offering a 2-for-1 calamity? Su Qing instinctively gripped the armrest of her seat, her face displaying a bewildered horror for the first time. No, it was not an earthquake. Chen Mo's pupils constricted to a perilous pinprick as he fixated on the outside, at the desolate concrete square now blanketed by acid rain. In the center of the square, the ground began to bulge upward in a grotesque manner, forming a massive mound of earth. Web-like cracks radiated from this mound, spreading wildly in all directions. Boom! A deafening explosion. Rocks and earth erupted, soaring into the air. A colossal, grotesque head, marked by ring-like folds and viscous liquid, burst forth from the ground, exceeding all imagination. This head bore no eyes, no nose, only a gaping maw that occupied 2/3 of its surface, resembling a chrysanthemum in full bloom. Inside that cavernous mouth were thousands of pale, serrated teeth, spinning at high speed like chainsaws. The burrowing worm. Even the portion of this beast that had emerged from the earth was more robust and towering than the homeward itself. It released a silent roar to the sky, the chrysanthem-like maw opening wide to consume the acid rain that fell, as though relishing a delectable appetizer. Following this, two more thunderous booms resonated from opposite directions of the square. Two additional, slightly smaller, yet equally terrifying burrowing worms emerged in succession. The three monstrous creatures surrounded the homeward in a triangular formation. They appeared uninterested in the immobile iron hulk, greedily devouring the acid rain descending from above. Inside the vehicle, one could hear a pin drop. Su Qing, Lin Wan, and Mia, the three girls, had lost all color from their faces, now only reflecting pure, paralyzing terror. If the previous electromagnetic storm and corrosive acid rain had instilled a sense of despair, then at this moment, the three prehistoric beasts crawling from the depths of hell transformed that despair into an inescapable, suffocating reality. Commander Lin Wan's voice trembled like leaves in the wind. The system database recorded that burrowing worms were extremely sensitive to vibrations. Any source of vibration exceeding 10 Hz would be perceived as provocation and prey. Chen Mo's heart sank deeper. He finally comprehended what true despair entailed, a perfectly crafted death trap forged by nature's wrath and monstrous beasts. Stationary with the engine off, they would be corroded and melted by the acid rain above. Yet if they activated the engine to escape, the vibrations exceeding 10 Hz would instantly provoke the frantic attack of these three terrifying creatures. To move would mean instant dismemberment. To remain still would lead to a slow demise. Forward was hell, backward was the abyss. No escape. Chapter 27. The 9th Aerospace Research Institute. Were they to await death passively? Su Qing instinctively tightened her grip on the sidearm at her waist. Yet she knew that against such monstrous entities, a handgun was no different from a mere stick. Alarms blared. The integrity of the external armor continued to plummet. Lin Wan's console emitted a red alert, like a death knell resonating in each person's heart. The makeshift iron reinforcements were already melting under the corrosive acid rain. Droplets of pale yellow acid began to seep through the gaps, corroding the metal floor of the vehicle, creating small pits that emitted smoke. Despair surged like a tide, threatening to engulf them all. Amidst this silence, a hurried, chaotic sound of keyboard clattering abruptly broke the stillness. It was Lin Wan. She dashed back to her energy engineering room, her beautiful eyes bloodshot, her hands a blur across the semicircular console. She had not given up. Her brain, deemed an exceptionally rare superbrain by the system, was racing at unprecedented speed under the adrenaline rush. Countless data, plans, and modification blueprints flashed before her like a waterfall. Resist corrosion, evade vibrations, corrosion, vibration. These two terms struck her mind like heavy hammers, reverberating incessantly. No, the line of thought was wrong. Lin Wan abruptly lifted her head, a near-manic light igniting in her eyes. Why must we endure? Why must we evade? Her voice, tinged with excitement, pierced through the despair within the vehicle like a lightning bolt. We should be immune to them. She slapped the console. A bold and audacious new plan retrieved from the depths of the system database. Commander, there is a way. She pointed at two new modules glowing with golden light on the screen, her excitement rendering her speechless. We can create memory alloy armor. This type of armor can remember its original form at a molecular level, and even if corroded by acid rain, it can instantly self-repair as long as it has sufficient energy. A perfect immunity to corrosive damage. And this, the repulsive levitation engine. It does not generate thrust through the combustion of fuel, but rather by creating an anti-gravity field that allows the vehicle to hover. There is no mechanical vibration, no noise. Those insects cannot even detect our presence. We can glide past them like phantoms, soaring above their heads. This declaration was akin to a potent stimulant, surging through the hearts of everyone present. Immunity to corrosion. Hovering flight. Mia and Su Qing's eyes sparkled with newfound hope. However, Lin Wan's tone took a sharp downturn as she pointed to a lengthy list of materials at the bottom of the proposal, her expression falling. The creation of these two modules requires two exceedingly rare special materials, self-repairing memory metal and an anti-gravity suspension core. There is none of that in our scrap pile. The flickering flame of hope seemed ready to be extinguished by a cold deluge. Chen Mo's gaze fell upon the list, his eyes sharp as blades. Is there any in this technology park? I'm not sure. Lin Wan shook her head. Materials of this caliber are typically reserved for the most elite aerospace fields. Aerospace. Those four syllables struck Mia's mind like a bolt of lightning. Wait. She leapt from her seat, rushing to Chen Mo and gesturing toward a direction outside the window. When I was being chased, I think I saw a sign. She quickly returned to her throne, pulling up the last transmission from the drone just before it lost contact. The storm was too fierce. Most drones were rendered useless, but a few military-grade reconnaissance aircraft, known for their strong anti-jamming capabilities, should still be operational. Gritting her teeth, Mia manipulated the controller with swift precision. In the brief intervals of the electromagnetic storm, she seized a signal window that lasted less than 3 seconds. Buzz. A small reconnaissance drone, resembling a bat in its sleek, black form, quietly launched from an inconspicuous port atop the ark, vanishing like a streak of black lightning into the torrential acid rain. On the main screen before Mia, static flickered before a shaky, blurred image materialized. The drone flew low, skimming the ground as it darted through the ruins. Over there, Mia maneuvered the drone, recalling her memories, weaving around a collapsed building. The camera revealed an even grander expanse of ruins before them. The architectural style there starkly contrasted with that of the technology park, imbued with the ruggedness and weightiness of the former Soviet Union. Before a relatively intact white building stood a massive, corroded metal sign, resiliently enduring the ravages of acid rain. The drone zoomed in. Most of the lettering had faded, but the top line, boldly inscribed in both Chinese and Russian, remained legible: the 9th Aerospace Research Institute. Lin Wan's breath nearly halted at that moment. "This is it," she exclaimed, on the verge of jumping up. "The Aerospace Institute. Inside, there must be the materials we need." Ding. As if to validate her words, the system's notification chimed in Chun Mo's mind. High-energy material signal detected. Target locked. 9th Aerospace Research Institute. Detection of self-repairing memory metal and anti-gravity suspension core reactions. Material compatibility, 100. Hope was no longer a distant fantasy. It lay merely a few kilometers away, quietly awaiting them in the depths of the acid rain-shrouded ruins. The cabin fell into a deathly silence. All eyes were fixed on Chen Mo. To go or not to go? This was a choice more challenging than any they had faced before. To venture forth meant they would pilot this tin can, which could fall apart at any moment, through the corrosive acid rain, while being surrounded by 3 monstrous hell beasts, embarking on a perilous sprint to the brink of death. To stay meant watching their armor melt away, ultimately leading to their burial alongside the vehicle. Hiss. On the roof, a steel plate, corroded to its limits, finally succumbed, melting through with a small hole. A drop of pale yellow liquid dripped onto the metallic floor before Suching, rising in a wisp of smoke, leaving behind an eternal scar. The countdown to death had already begun. Chun Mo slowly lifted his head, his gaze sweeping over his 3 crew members. He saw the remnants of fear in their eyes, but beneath that fear lay a resolve born of desperation and trust. He smiled, a blend of madness and fervor. Lin Wan, plot the sprint route and concentrate all energy on the engine and temporary armor. Suching, be prepared for any unforeseen circumstances. Mia, with the remaining drones, keep a close watch on the movements of those 3 insects. Chun Mo returned to the driver's seat, gripping the cold steering wheel as though seizing the fate of the entire team. His voice resonated through the internal communications channel, clear and resolute. "Everyone, brace yourselves. We shall set forth to reclaim our future." Chapter 28, The Race Against Death. "Everyone, brace yourselves." Chun Mo's voice echoed clearly through the internal communications channel. "We shall set forth to reclaim our future." He did not allow anyone a moment to respond. In that instant, as the corrosive liquid symbolizing the countdown to death dripped down, Chun Mo slammed the accelerator to the floor. Boom. What had merely been idling at low speed, the secondary turbo engine was suddenly squeezed for all its potential. All accumulated energy was poured into it in a desperate gamble. The vehicle surged forward in an instant. This ignited a powder keg of chaos. The violent engine vibrations, exceeding 10 hertz, instantly drew the attention of the 3 digging worms in the square. Roar! The terrifying jaws of the 3-headed beast, resembling a grotesque flower, ceased their consumption of acid rain and turned in unison toward the ark, the small moving intruder. "They're coming. Commander, the one on the right is moving first. It's advancing toward our path." Mia's voice trembled with the violent jolting. Her eyes fixated on the 3 rapidly moving red dots on the radar, feeling as if her heart might leap from her throat. Chun Mo gripped the steering wheel tightly. The treacherous route ahead had already formed in his mind. The ark raced through the acid rain. The makeshift metal reinforcements on the vehicle emitted wisps of smoke, sizzling under the corrosive assault, peeling away in large chunks, melting. Boom. The ground ahead suddenly exploded. The smaller digging worm, with its massive head, charged at the ark with tremendous force. It came too fast. It appeared without warning, completely blocking Chun Mo's path forward. "Watch out!" Suching shouted in alarm. Just as the vehicle was about to collide with the grotesque maw covered in slime and sharp teeth, Chun Mo yanked the steering wheel sharply while simultaneously pulling the handbrake. Screech. This armored bus, weighing over 10 tons, executed a drift that defied the laws of physics at high speed. The massive body barely grazed past the worm. The putrid slime and rubble crashed violently against the bulletproof glass, producing a sound that made one's teeth ache. Chun Mo could even see through the car window the monstrous jaws of the creature, its razor-sharp teeth spinning like a meat grinder. What the hell? It can float, Mia exclaimed, taken aback by the extreme maneuver. Before she could finish her astonishment, Chun Mo had already released the handbrake and pressed the accelerator to the floor once more. The Homeward let out a deep roar as it surged out from the narrow gap of death. 100 meters to the left ahead, there was a high-energy reaction underground. It was about to break through. Mia's warning alarm sounded again. Su-Ching. At 3 o'clock, that red 3-story building. Open fire with the machine gun. Chun Mo's voice was calm and clear. Su-Ching was taken aback, but quickly understood Chun Mo's intention. Received. Instead of attacking the worm that was about to emerge from the ground, she turned the gun toward the innocent abandoned building. The rapid fire of bullets instantly tore the already unstable structure into pieces. With a thunderous crash, the building collapsed, massive concrete blocks and rebar falling like rain, directly landing on the spot where the second digging worm was about to break through. A roar filled with pain and fury erupted from underground, momentarily halting the worm's attack. Well done, Chun Mo praised as he drove the Homeward past the ruins. This is teamwork. Warning, armor integrity has dropped to 40%. The outer armor on the right side is completely destroyed. Energy reserves are below 20%. Engine temperature is too high, approaching critical levels. A cacophony of red warning lights blinked frantically on the control panel, as if performing a final symphony for them. The state of the Homeward had deteriorated to an extreme. Even worse, ahead, a collapsed overpass blocked their path to the Aerospace Research Institute, like an insurmountable chasm. Behind them, the largest digging worm had adjusted its stance and was charging toward them with overwhelming force. A chasm in front, a pursuer behind. There's no way out. We're trapped. Mia's voice trembled with despair. Who says there's no way out? A glint of madness flashed in Chun Mo's eyes. Instead of slowing down, he pressed the accelerator deeper than ever before. Commander, the engine is overloaded by 200%. It's going to explode, Lin Wan screamed in anguish. Chun Mo ignored her, his gaze fixed intently on the collapsed overpass. The broken bridge formed a natural, steep incline. A wildly audacious idea formed in his mind. Hold on tight, Chun Mo roared. The engine of the Homeward emitted a mournful wail under extreme overload. The entire vehicle shook violently, as if it would fall apart at any moment. It surged like a black meteor, unflinching, toward the shattered bridge. Boom. The enormous wheels crushed down on the sloping concrete. With immense inertia and the engine's final explosion, this steel behemoth, weighing over 10 tons, for the first time, broke free from the grasp of gravity. It soared into the air. The entire vehicle leaped over the gaping maw of the pursuing digging worm, which was wide open below. Inside the cabin, everyone was pressed firmly into their seats by the weightlessness and violent vibrations, their minds blank. Mia peered through the porthole, and she could even see the glinting, sharp teeth within the creature's cavernous mouth. Crash! A deafening sound, as if to shatter the earth. The Homeward landed heavily. The entire vehicle emitted a sickening metallic distortion, the suspension system completely failing upon impact, scattering parts and supplies throughout the cabin. Su-Ching and Mia were jolted senseless. Crashing against the control panel, their foreheads instantly bruised. But they couldn't afford to focus on the pain, for they were still alive. Damn it, Commander! That was incredible! Mia exhaled deeply, her voice filled with awe at their narrow escape. They had crossed the chasm and temporarily shaken off their pursuers. In the distance, the white building, rich with Soviet architectural style, came into view. The 9th Aerospace Research Institute. Hold on. We're almost there. A trickle of blood seeped from the corner of Chun Mo's mouth, the result of biting his tongue to stay alert. He endured the excruciating pain as his entire skeletal structure felt on the verge of collapse, maneuvering the nearly defunct steel vehicle for one last sprint. However, the roar of the engine grew weaker, eventually fading into a feeble wheeze. Thick black smoke billowed from the gaps in the front of the vehicle. All the gauges on the dashboard had dropped to zero. They had reached their limits. Within less than 100 meters of the rusted gate of the Research Institute, the Homeward's speed diminished further, ultimately coming to a halt with a reluctant groan. The engine had shut off. Inside the cabin, only the sound of heavy breathing remained. The three girls gasped for breath, accompanied by the patter of acid rain outside. Chapter 29. Breaking free from the cocoon, is this how it ends for us? Mia's pale face clutched her knees, murmuring to herself. No. Mo's voice broke through the despair, not loud, but like a red-hot iron spike piercing through the frozen air. He abruptly stood from the driver's seat. His eyes devoid of fear, filled only with the madness born of desperation. We haven't lost yet. He seized 2 spare blast shields hanging on the wall of the vehicle and tossed them to Su Qing and Mia. Su Qing, Mia, charge out with me. Lin Wan, stay in the car and prepare to receive supplies. What? The 3 girls were momentarily stunned. Charge out. Outside is acid rain that can melt steel and an epic horror beast. ISNT that the same as throwing ourselves into the afterlife. There is no time to explain. Mo's voice thundered. If you want to live, follow me. Without another glance at them, he lifted a steel plate from the car door as a makeshift shield and slammed the switch to open the pneumatic door. As the door swung open, a wave of scorching air mixed with a strong acidic scent surged in. Mo roared, leaping into the pale yellow curtain of death like a released cheetah. Su Qing and Mia exchanged glances, seeing shock and a spark of ignited madness in each other's eyes. Damn it, I'm all in. Mia gritted her teeth, unleashing the competitive spirit of an esports girl. Su Qing said nothing but silently raised her blast shield, following Mo into the fray. The acid rain hissed as it hit their makeshift shields, emitting a piercing corrosive sound and rising in wisps of smoke. The 3 formed a triangle, shielding Mo in the center as they launched into the final 100 meters of their death sprint toward the distant white building. The burrowing worm behind them seemed drawn to the 3 tiny creatures that had escaped from the canister. Its enormous head turned slightly, but ultimately focused its attention on the larger target, the Arkansas. Its gaping maw descended slowly. Boom. Mo kicked open the rusted glass door of the research facility, and the 3 of them tumbled inside in a disarrayed rush. The interior of the research facility was enveloped in silence, the air thick with the musty scent of long-stale decay. Over here, without the need for system prompts, Mo's keen sense of direction and acute intuition for energy fluctuations allowed him to pinpoint their objective immediately. The trio navigated through the dimly lit corridor, finally stopping before a heavy alloy door that resembled a vault. A complex electronic keypad flickered with a faint red light. Stand back. Su Qing stepped forward, drawing her sidearm and firing 3 precise shots at the control panel. Bang, bang, bang. Sparks flew as the control panel was obliterated, yet the alloy door remained steadfast. Damn it, it's a physical lock. Su Qing cursed under her breath. Mo wasted no time. He glanced at the door hinges, took a deep breath, and channeled all his strength into his right shoulder. Boom. He launched himself like a battering ram against the alloy door. A resounding crash echoed as the door shuddered violently. But it did not yield. Once more. Boom. Boom. With Mo's frenzied, near self-destructive assaults, the sturdy hinges finally emitted a groan of distress, and with a thunderous crash, the entire door collapsed inward. Behind it lay a vast, hangar-like circular hall. In the center of the hall, 2 display pedestals covered with thick, blast-proof glass silently showcased their coveted prizes. To the left, a stack of gossamer-thin metallic plates shimmered with a liquid metal-like luster. To the right was a sphere the size of a human head, pitch black, with the appearance of swirling galaxies within. Self-repairing memory metal and anti-gravity floating core. Quickly, Mo and Su Qing simultaneously raised their weapons, unleashing a barrage of gunfire at the blast-proof glass. After exhausting 2 magazines, the glass finally developed a spiderweb of cracks. Mo seized a nearby fire extinguisher and brought it crashing down. Crash. The glass shattered in response. Mo hefted the immensely heavy floating core, while Su Qing and Mia frantically stuffed the memory metal plates into their belongings. Retreat. The trio plunged back into the rain, sprinting frantically toward the Ark. At that moment, the Ark was in dire straits. The armor on its roof had nearly melted through entirely, and the worm's cavernous maw loomed ominously above the vehicle. Foul, viscous slime dripping down, corroding the chassis to a state of ruin. Hurry, hurry. Lin Wan watched the screen, the gaping maw drawing ever closer, tears welling in her eyes. We're back. Mo's voice echoed from the entrance as the 3 burst into the cabin like a whirlwind. Bang. The door slammed shut behind them. Hurry. There is no time. Lin Wan had already lifted the engine inspection hatch in the middle of the cabin, revealing a tangle of intricate wiring and connectors. Mo placed the floating core firmly into the slot, while Su Qing and Mia handed the memory metal plates to Lin Wan. Main energy matrix, connect to port 3. Memory metal to cover the main armor layer. Activate molecular activity with energy. Lin Wan's mind raced at full throttle, issuing commands rapidly. Mo and Su Qing became the most efficient of assistants, frantically installing under her direction. Boom. The vehicle jolted violently, The worm's massive maw had finally closed. The Ark was entirely engulfed. Inside the cabin, all lights flickered violently before plunging into utter darkness. The world descended into an abyss of silence and despair. It's over. This is truly the end. Mia's voice brimmed with pure hopelessness. Yet, amidst this darkness, a soft hum, a sound altogether different from any that had preceded it, began to resonate from the bottom of the cabin, filled with a sense of sci-fi wonder. A gentle blue glow emanated from the floating core, illuminating the entire cabin in an instant. The repulsion floating engine installation complete. Energy matching at 100. Memory alloy armor coverage completed. Molecular reconstruction in progress. The system's prompt echoed in Chunmo's mind like celestial music. The intense pressure and friction that could shatter one's very insides vanished in that moment. In its place was an unparalleled sensation of weightlessness, as though they were floating upon water. They were airborne. Through the porthole, they could see the Ark gliding like a specter, ascending silently between the layers of the worm's closing, grinding teeth. Hiss! The highly corrosive digestive fluids splashed against the vehicle. But this time, there was no acrid smoke. No indentations. Instead, the armor's surface, where the liquid made contact, glimmered with a resplendent blue hue, and the corroded areas rapidly reconstituted and repaired at a visible molecular level. Gleaming as good as new, before their eyes, the Ark slowly ascended from the gaps between the beast's fangs, its pristine blue armor radiant with a defiant elegance. Breaking free from the chains of gravity, it escaped death, evaded despair, and transcended the bonds of earthly pull. The brand new, shimmering blue armor, now impervious, sparkled brilliantly under the deluge of acidic rain. A new era quietly dawned with the ascent of this vehicle. Chapter 30. Uninvited guests. The cabin fell silent in an instant. But this time, it was not the suffocating silence of despair. Rather, it was an absolute stillness infused with overwhelming awe and ecstasy. We were flying? Mia pressed her small face against the cold porthole, watching the colossal hellish beast below, still futilely gnashing at the air, shrink into a grotesque black. In her wide, startlingly bright eyes lay an expression of disbelief. It felt as though she were playing a meticulously crafted survival game, only to have her dilapidated bus suddenly transformed into an anti-gravity spaceship straight out of a sci-fi blockbuster. The surreal twist of fate caused her mind to short-circuit. The repulsion floating engine distorted the gravitational field, creating a buoyancy force, while the memory alloy armor self-repaired at the molecular level. Lin Wan, like a little madwoman, obsessively caressed the newly appeared modules on the control panel, muttering, "My God, this defies logic. But it's so beautiful." For a top-tier scholar, the thrill of transforming the impossible into the possible was intoxicating beyond compare. Su Qing remained silent, quietly observing the grotesque wounds on the vehicle's exterior, corroded by acidic rain, healing at a visible rate beneath the shimmering blue glow, restoring their smoothness. A profound sense of security surged within her, an unprecedented feeling. This vehicle was now a true, impenetrable mobile fortress. In the sky, the terrifying electromagnetic storms and corrosive acid rain seemed to have exhausted their strength, beginning to dissipate slowly. As the dark clouds dispersed, a long-awaited crimson sunset pierced through the layers of clouds, cascading its glow upon the newly forged memory alloy armor of the Arkansas. It reflected a dreamlike luster. They had survived, and in a manner akin to ascension. A formidable life requires no explanation. "Commander, where shall we go now?" Su Qing inquired, casting a glance at Chun Mo, her tone imbued with a hint of admiration and trust that she herself was unaware of. "Let us find a place to rest." Chun Mo replied, his voice steady, though the tight grip on the steering wheel betrayed the tumult within him. He deftly maneuvered the Ark, now unshackled from the constraints of tires, gliding silently like a phantom ship several meters above the ground, heading away from the tech park. This sensation was novel, liberating, and infused with an undeniable sense of power. However, they had not ventured far when Mia's startled voice rang out. "Wait. Commander, look over there." Pointing to the front side, she directed a surviving reconnaissance drone to relay images from afar. There, several kilometers away on a main road, an enormous convoy of survivors, akin to a colossal serpent, slowly slithered through the ruins. This vast assembly comprised hundreds of vehicles, led by several modified heavy trucks with fearsome horns welded to their fronts. In the middle were various private cars, buses, and small trucks, their roofs and windows brimming with luggage and odds and ends, and at the rear, a few agricultural tractors belched black smoke. The convoy stretched for miles, banners fluttering, though those so-called flags were mostly tattered cloths and bedsheets tied to poles. Hundreds of vehicles meant at least several hundred, if not thousands, of survivors, a formidable force capable of navigating the apocalypse. The Ark Convoy, the name sprang to Su Qing's mind. She had heard tales of this band of survivors on the market's radio more than once. Rumor had it that their leader, Long Gu, was a charismatic and ambitious figure who had gathered many survivors, painting a grand vision of rebuilding human civilization that countless despairing souls revered him as their savior. While Chen Mo and his companions observed, it was evident that the other party had also taken notice of them. The lead heavy trucks suddenly halted, causing the entire convoy to come to a standstill. Countless heads emerged from windows, gazing skyward at the ominous silhouette gliding silently above. Suddenly, the public communication channel of the Ark crackled to life with the sound of an incoming signal. Then, a magnetic, impassioned voice, imbued with an innate fervor, resonated throughout the cabin. "Friends up ahead, please hold your position. We are the Ark Convoy, and we mean no harm." Chen Mo remained silent, merely signaling Mia to zoom in with the drone-S camera, focusing on the most ostentatiously armored heavy truck at the front of the convoy. On its roof stood a middle-aged man clad in a Zhongshan suit, sporting a slicked-back hairstyle, who appeared to be in his 40s, brandishing a loudspeaker and enthusiastically addressing them. He did not resemble a marauder of the apocalypse, but rather a concerned entrepreneur or a politician delivering a campaign speech. "Friends, I recognize your strength. To possess such an extraordinary flying fortress, you must be the elite among humanity." Long Ji's voice brimmed with admiration, as if he were beholding a magnificent work of art. "But my friends, do you see?" He extended his hand, gesturing toward the throng of people and the endless line of vehicles behind him. "The edifice is crumbling, and the solitary pillar cannot hold. Individual strength is ultimately limited in the face of natural disasters and hordes of the undead. Look at these people behind me. They are mechanics, doctors, farmers, teachers. They are the last embers of human civilization. United, we can endure this wretched apocalypse. It is our only path to survival." His voice was utterly compelling, and many among the Ark Convoy survivors displayed fervent expressions of agreement, with some even beginning to chant Long Ji's praises. Inside the cabin, Mia scoffed quietly, muttering, "Here comes the grandiose rhetoric. That pie is both large and round." Long Gu continued his performance. "Friends, I see your might, and I envision our future. On behalf of the 326 survivors of the Ark Convoy, I extend to you the most sincere invitation. For the future of humanity, to weather this harsh winter together, I implore you to surrender this magnificent mobile fortress. Let us, the Ark Convoy, manage it collectively and distribute its resources democratically. You will become the heroes of our Ark. This fortress shall be our shared home, bearing the hope of the revival of human civilization. Imagine, we could use it to forge paths, transport supplies, and ensure the safety of us all. With it, we would possess the means to rebuild our home upon this wasteland." Such words were resplendent in their grandeur and righteousness. However, Chun Mo's expression remained utterly impassive. He listened quietly, as if observing a mediocre actor's clumsy performance. "What say you? Friends, consider my proposal. It is for us all, for the future of humanity." Long Ji's voice rose again, filled with anticipation. At last, Chen Mo picked up the communicator. He replied with just 2 words, "Declined." His tone was low, devoid of emotion, akin to an unyielding glacier, instantly freezing Long Ji's impassioned address into an awkward silence. Long Ji's smile faltered. The fervor on the faces of the survivors behind him shifted to disbelief. Declined? He actually declined? After a brief moment of stunned silence, Long Ji's countenance darkened visibly. Yet, in just a second, that shadow was replaced by a more profound, heart-wrenching indignation. He discarded the loudspeaker and turned to face the more than 1,000 survivors behind him, his voice drenched in sorrow as he howled, "Comrades, do you see? Have you all witnessed this? I wish to offer my heart to the moon, yet it merely illuminates the gutter." He clutched his chest, appearing utterly devastated. While we endure hunger and hardship for the sake of humanity's flickering flame, some choose to embrace their formidable power, hiding within their iron shell, coldly observing our struggle for survival. They possess the means to save more lives. They have the capacity to lead us to rebirth. Yet they refuse. They are selfish. They are cold-blooded. They are unworthy of wielding such power. His words ignited the jealousy and resentment simmering within the hearts of those survivors, long dulled by the apocalypse. Yes, why should they pilot the flying fortress while we gnaw on rations? Surrender it. Let them relinquish the fortress. They are traitors to humanity. In an instant, the crowd erupted with fervor, countless fists raised to the sky. and a multitude of greedy and furious gazes shot like arrows toward the solitary black fortress suspended in the air. Long Gu surveyed the scene before him, his face contorted in a self-satisfied grin, believing he had taken control of the situation. He understood that a seed of hatred had been sown. Chapter 31. The moral kidnapping within the communication channel of the Ark. Brother Long's impassioned speech reverberated, echoing with an aura of justice and hope. Yet, the atmosphere inside the carriage starkly contrasted with this righteousness. How grandly he painted the picture, so large and round, that I nearly fell for it. Mia lounged regally on her throne, legs crossed, a lollipop dangling from her mouth, her delicate face revealing unabashed disdain. Democratic management? Why not just say communal wives? Truly a master of manipulation. His aim was not to persuade us. Su Qing leaned against her battle seat, her gaze icy as she scrutinized the middle-aged man on the monitor, who was pounding his chest and lamenting with fervor. He was speaking for those behind us. By exploiting our rejection, he incited their jealousy and greed, fashioning himself into a tragic hero advocating for the people. Such tactics were not unfamiliar to me. As a former detective, she possessed a deeper understanding of human nature's darker facets than most. Lin Wan's small face paled with indignation. She didn't grasp the convolutions, but her simple values told her that taking from others, while exuding such brazen confidence, was inherently wrong. Robber logic, she muttered bitterly. Chun Mo remained silent, his expression impassive as he observed the twisted faces on the screen, distorted by envy and rage, fists raised as if to tear them apart. He understood that Brother Long had succeeded. In this apocalyptic world, where order had crumbled and morals had decayed, the instinct to survive reigned supreme. When the pressure of survival escalates, reason and logic become the least valuable commodities. Why should you sit in your spaceship, enjoying safety and comfort, while we struggle like dogs on the wasteland? Brother Long had astutely seized upon this sentiment and amplified it infinitely. He did not need to defeat Chun Mo. He merely needed to turn Chun Mo into the common enemy of all survivors. Comrades, Brother Long raised the loudspeaker once more, his voice hoarse with emotion, imbued with a tragic resonance. We offered them a chance. We gave them the opportunity to become heroes, to save human civilization. Yet they rejected it. They would rather cling to their iron shells than lend a hand to us, their fellow beings struggling in the mire. Such selfish individuals are unworthy of wielding such immense power. This fortress belongs to all of us. To humanity. Yes. Surrender it. Hand it over. The crowd's fury ignited, coalescing into a terrifying roar capable of engulfing everything, surging towards the solitary black fortress in the sky. Commander, what should we do? Should we flee? Mia asked, her previously nonchalant demeanor replaced by tension. We cannot leave, Chun Mo replied slowly, shaking his head. If we depart now, it would solidify our guilt as fugitives. Brother Long would stick to us like a stubborn plaster, tarnishing our reputation completely. In any survivor gathering, we would be rendered pariahs. What then? Fight them? Su Qing's knuckles were turning white. There were at least 1,000 people below. Even if we could win, it would consume a considerable amount of ammunition and energy, and most of them were merely ordinary people incited to anger. She could not bring herself to fire upon these innocents. Fight! A smile crept upon Chun Mo's lips. Why must we fight? He turned to Lin Wan. Repulsive levitation engine, maximum power output. What can we achieve? Lin Wan paused momentarily, then understood Chun Mo's intent. Her cheeks flushed crimson, not from fear, but from exhilarating excitement. Commander, without considering energy consumption, we can instantly ascend to 300 meters high or execute a low-altitude high-speed breach, exceeding 300 kilometers per hour. Furthermore, it is completely silent. Excellent. Chun Mo nodded, returning to the pilot seat. His hands grasped the steering wheel once more. This time, he held the power capable of overturning the world's understanding. Everyone, brace yourselves. As his voice faded, he abruptly pushed the lever forward. With no roar of engines, no screech of tires, the Ark emitted a faint, almost futuristic hum. The entire vehicle seemed to break free from the shackles of gravity, transforming into a black flash, hurtling towards the massive convoy below. This sudden spectacle left everyone in shock. In the previous moment, the black fortress hovered hundreds of meters in the air. In the next, it dove down with an imposing presence, akin to an eagle with talons extended, descending from the clouds. It's coming. Open fire. Quick fire. Panic erupted in terrified screams from the convoy. However, the Ark was far too swift. It did not collide with a single vehicle, but flew close to the ground, darting past the sprawling formation of vehicles like a ghostly specter. The intense airflow sent tattered luggage and bed linens soaring into the air. Before the survivors could comprehend the unfolding event, The black fortress had made a wide arc, like an elusive phantom dancer, silently hovering above the flagship armored truck at the forefront of the arc convoy. It floated there, merely 10 meters above the ground, casting a massive shadow over Brother Long and his prideful vehicle. The world fell into a profound silence once more. The previously fervent survivors now gazed skyward, mouths agape. Like a group of indigenous people witnessing a miracle, their minds blank. It can fly. It truly can fly. And so swiftly, so silently. This was beyond the realm of modified vehicles. It represented technology from another dimension. Brother Long's complexion darkened, turning a shade deeper than the bottom of a pot. All his meticulous planning, his stirring speech capable of rallying thousands, had become a mere joke in the face of this absolute, unreasonable technological dominance. While he was still attempting to reason with others, they had soared above him in a towering Mecca. How could this continue? Friends, let us speak civilly. Brother Long managed to force out a grimace that resembled more of a cry than a smile, tilting his head in an attempt to ease the atmosphere. Chen Mo ignored him. He pressed the communication button once more. This time, his voice, amplified through the Arc's external speakers, resonated like a cold thunderclap, echoing in every ear. My Arc was forged from technology and sweat, risen from a sea of corpses and blood. Your Arc, however, is cobbled together through begging, jealousy, and theft. Do you desire it? You may, but at the cost of your life. These words struck Brother Long's heart like an invisible hammer, causing his face to turn a deep shade of purple. In front of over 1,000 subordinates, he had been so openly threatened and humiliated. If he did not respond, he could forget about being Brother Long. Do not take this too far. A glint of madness flickered in Brother Long's eyes. Do you truly think we are easily intimidated? He suddenly drew a handgun from his waist, aiming it at the arc above. Everyone, open fire. Bring it down. He roared hysterically, driven to madness. A frenzy that conquered his fear. Those loyal subordinates behind him began to draw their weapons from the vehicles. Several heavy machine guns mounted atop the trucks pivoted their barrels ominously towards the underbelly of the Arkansas. Since you refuse to contribute to the future of humanity, we shall eradicate you, the malignant tumor, on behalf of mankind. Long Gu found his last shred of moral justification for his assault and pulled the trigger without hesitation. Bang! The gunshot heralded the commencement of war. Rat-a-tat-tat. The heavy machine guns unleashed a torrent of bullets, weaving fiery chains that frantically targeted the hovering black fortress above. Inside the vehicle, Su Qing wore a chilling smile, reminiscent of one gazing upon the dead. Commander, they have opened fire. Then let us silence them, Chen Mo replied, his voice calm and unwavering. Ding 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 ding. The relentless barrage struck the armored underbelly of the Arkansas. Yet, the anticipated spectacle of sparks and flying metal failed to materialize. The bullets met the shimmering blue alloy armor, producing not the sharp sound of metal upon metal but a dull thud, akin to striking thick rubber. Each impact sent rippling waves of blue light across the armor's surface, resembling the ripples on a water surface. The kinetic energy of the bullets was instantly absorbed and nullified, falling like weary stones without leaving so much as a mark. This astonishing scene left the assailants below dumbfounded. What in the world is this armor? My bullets, why does it feel like shooting at cotton? One bandit exclaimed in confusion. Long Ji's madness swiftly solidified into disbelief. His pride in heavy firepower became a complete farce before the enemy. Chen Mo chose not to retaliate immediately. Instead, he aimed to shatter their last glimmer of hope. Gently, he pushed the steering wheel to the left. The colossal arc glided through the air like a weightless feather, executing a graceful arc as it swiftly maneuvered laterally. Silent and swift as lightning, it evaded the heavy machine gun's line of fire, appearing on the flank of the convoy. Below, the bandits continued to futilely fire at their previous position, oblivious to the fact that their target had become a ghost, manifesting at their most vulnerable side. This uncanny maneuverability shattered their last psychological defenses. Run. Quick, run. It's a monster. We can't fight it. It's Zenith Star technology. In the middle and rear of the convoy, the ordinary survivors caught in the chaos erupted in frantic screams. And some frightened drivers recklessly turned their vehicles around, attempting to flee this death zone. Mia, mark their heavy weapons, Chen Mo instructed through the internal channel. Received. I've already prepared a feast for you, Commander. Mia's eyes sparkled with excitement. She felt as though she were not in a battle, but playing a high-definition real-time strategy game. As she maneuvered, dozens of surviving reconnaissance drones swarmed from the Arc's various corners, seamlessly blending into the dim night. On the main screen before Su Qing, red targeting boxes indicating enemy heavy machine gun positions illuminated with precision. Su Qing, dismantle them. Understood. Her gaze sharpened like a blade. were. The 6-barrel rotary gun elevated once more, its dark muzzle slowly rotating to lock onto the first target, a Soviet heavy machine gun mounted atop a modified truck, where 2 bandits frantically attempted to reposition it. Su Qing's thumb gently pressed the semi-automatic button. Tap, tap, tap. Not a frenzied barrage, but 3 exquisitely precise shots. The first bullet cleanly severed the machine gun's support. The second obliterated the massive ammunition box, scattering countless bullets across the ground. The third bullet grazed a bandit's scalp, leaving a fist-sized hole in the truck's metal siding behind him. Terrified, the 2 bandits tumbled from the truck roof. Before they hit the ground, Su Qing had already redirected her aim to the second target. Rat-a-tat-tat. Another series of precise shots. The heavy machine gun on another vehicle, along with its operator, was instantly reduced to a pile of burning debris and flesh. With Mia's comprehensive reconnaissance and targeting, every heavy weapon point of the ARC convoy became a living target under Su Qing's gun. With each gunshot that rang out, a firepower position was permanently erased from the battlefield. The entire process took less than a minute. When the last heavy machine gun was obliterated in midair, an eerie silence enveloped the battlefield. Long Gu stood dazed atop his flagship truck, his still-smoking handgun appearing comically absurd. He watched in disbelief as the armed forces he had relied upon to establish order were dismantled in less than a minute in a manner that felt almost mocking. His mind went blank. The ARC slowly returned, hovering once more above him, its vast shadow enveloping him entirely, as if under the gaze of the Grim Reaper. How could this be? Long Gu muttered, his face ashen. His once proud manipulation of hearts and rhetoric felt as fragile as paper in the face of overwhelming technological might. Now, Chun Mo's icy voice, like the final judgment, resonated from the loudspeakers, echoing in the ears of every survivor. We can now have a serious discussion about the future of humanity. Chapter 33, Annihilation Discuss? What is there left to discuss? Long Gu stood dazed atop his flagship truck, his still-smoking handgun now appearing utterly ridiculous and laughable. He watched helplessly as the armed forces he relied upon to establish order were dismantled in less than a minute, reduced to disarray in a manner almost mocking. His once proud heavy machine guns lay scattered on the ground, mere scraps of metal. His most loyal and ferocious subordinates, at that moment, resembled frightened quails, scrambling back into their vehicles, too terrified to show their faces. As for the thousands of ordinary survivors in the convoy, they were utterly paralyzed by the spectral agility and divine precision of the gunfire they had just witnessed. The entire convoy plunged into an eerie silence. The previously stirred fury and greed, potent enough to engulf everything, evaporated instantaneously before the overwhelming might of superior technology, leaving only a raw, bone-deep fear. Long Gu's mind was a blank slate. His once celebrated machinations and eloquence, his ability to turn black into white and robbery into benevolence, felt utterly impotent in that moment. How could this be? Long Gu murmured, his face ashen. He had lost, utterly and without suspense. Yet, just as the last flicker of hope in his heart prepared him to plead for mercy, a more ferocious resolve surged from the depths of his being. He could not concede. He understood all too well that should he yield, should he kneel, everything he had painstakingly built, the halo of his savior persona, would shatter in an instant. At that moment, he would be worse off than an ordinary survivor. Since death was inevitable, he might as well wager one last gamble. He would bet that his adversary would not dare to ruthlessly strike down thousands of unarmed survivors. Brothers, Long Gu abruptly turned around, facing the anxious faces behind him, and raised the loudspeaker with all his might, unleashing a frantic roar. You all see this? This demon. He wants to annihilate us. We have no way out. He is but one man, one vehicle, yet we have thousands. Thousands who refuse to be enslaved. No matter how formidable he is, his bullets are limited. His energy is finite. His voice, distorted by fervor, brimmed with desperate incitement. For the children, for the wives, for our survival, for the last shred of humanity's dignity. Charge with me. We will bury him under our numbers. Overwhelm him. Tear him apart. Charge. As he shouted the last word, he leaped down from the heavy truck, brandishing his pistol, charging madly towards the Arkansas. The crowd was once again swept away by this desperate frenzy. Charge. Let us fight to the end. For survival. Kill him. Seize his ship. Some of Long Gu's die-hard followers and desperate renegades, with bloodshot eyes, let out beast-like howls, following in his footsteps towards the Ark in a suicidal charge. More ordinary people, caught in the current of survival instinct and herd mentality, numbly surged forward in a chaotic throng. In an instant, the throng of over 1,000 people resembled a murky and uncontrollable flood, mingled with cries, roars, and sporadic gunfire. Sweeping towards the solitary black fortress suspended in midair, a genuine battle of human waves had commenced. Inside the vehicle, damn. This old man really doesn't regard people as human beings. It's a definite case of orcs never yield unless provided with food and shelter in real life, Mia commented, unable to suppress her disdain as she observed the chaotic and frenzied scene on the screen. Commander, they've completely lost their minds, Su Qing remarked, her brow furrowing in discomfort at the sight. Lost their minds? Yet, Chun Mo's expression remained utterly unperturbed. He gazed at the tide of people surging forward, his eyes as calm as if observing a swarm of ants charging towards a windmill. Let them awaken to reality, he said, turning to issue new orders. Mia, activate the holy light mode. Su Qing, switch to non-lethal ammunition, targeting all the leading assailants. Wound them, but do not kill. Understood. Got it. The two girls responded simultaneously, their voices imbued with a hint of cold relief. The ark began to ascend slowly, resembling a deity overlooking the realm of mortals. In the next moment, a hum resonated. Around the ark's body, dozens of hidden launch ports silently slid open. Not gun barrels, nor cannon mouths, but dozens of high-powered floodlights. These lights had been conveniently installed during Chun Mo's previous modifications. Under Mia's control, beams of blinding, almost palpable white light erupted like divine punishment, illuminating the chaos below. Ah, my eyes. I can't see. It's light. So blinding. The foremost individuals in the throng screamed in unison as they encountered the intense light. They felt as though their retinas were seared by red-hot iron, their vision instantly engulfed in a dazzling white, tears streaming uncontrollably down their faces. The entire charge disintegrated in that moment. People collided like headless flies, shrieking, rolling, trampled by those behind them, oblivious to the chaos. But this was not the end. Sonic weaponry, initiate plaza dance mode. Chun Mo's voice echoed once more. All right, just you wait and see. Today, I am the brightest star in the arena. Mia's face broke into a devilish grin. Accompanying her actions, the loudspeakers outside the ark blared not Chun Mo's cold voice, but a jarring cacophony of sound. Devoid of rhythm, blending high-frequency noise with infrasound. Move to the beat, move to the beat. The sound was so overwhelming that it felt as if it could shake a person's very organs from their body. The bizarre rhythm and frequency sent waves of palpitations, nausea, and dizziness through all who heard it. Ugh, don't let it go. My head is going to explode. Help. What is this abomination? Blinded by the light and deafened by the sound, the entire ark convoy transformed into a hell on earth. People covered their eyes, plugged their ears, writhing on the ground in agony, vomiting, completely stripped of any capacity to resist. This was the dimensional strike brought about by technology. There was no need for slaughter. Merely stripping away one's sight and hearing could subject them to tortures more harrowing than death. Amidst the chaos, a few of Long Gu's most loyal followers, bolstered by sheer willpower, squinted towards the ark, firing their weapons haphazardly. They became Su Qing's targets. Pop! A faint gunshot, nearly inaudible amidst the tumultuous noise. A rubber bullet struck the knee of a robust man charging forward, causing him to scream and collapse like a felled tree, rolling on the ground, clutching his leg in agony. Pop! 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 Su Qing's shooting was calm and efficient. With each gunshot, another would-be rebel attempting to organize a counterattack fell with precision. Be it knee, wrist, or shoulder, excruciating pain, but never fatal. In the face of absolute precision, any display of reckless bravado becomes a mere farce. Within a mere 30 seconds, when the cacophony of gunfire had subsided entirely, the battlefield was bereft of any standing figure. Thousands of survivors lay scattered like harvested wheat, some writhing on the ground, others retching, and a few weeping while clutching their legs. The scene was chaotic, yet no one had perished. Chun Mo gradually silenced the blinding lights and noise, allowing the world to reclaim its tranquility. The Ark of Home descended gently, ultimately hovering silently before Long Gu, who lay on the ground, covering his eyes in disbelief. All his madness, ambition, and schemes had been shattered to pieces in that brief minute. Through the loudspeaker, Chun Mo's emotionless voice resonated, akin to a sentence of judgment. I said, let us talk. Chapter 34. The moment of choice. Chun Mo turned and ascended the slope, his silhouette unwavering, akin to a blade sheathing itself with decisive elegance. The multitude of survivors parted before him like waves of wheat driven by a tempest. Each face bore the marks of survival's bewilderment and the dread of an uncertain fate. With a resounding thud, the pneumatic door of the Ark of Home sealed shut behind him, isolating him from the violently reshaped world outside. Yet the sky remained tumultuous. Dozens of drones, once instruments of divine illumination, had transformed, their gun barrels gleaming with a chilling red light, circling like vultures, silently surveilling the crowd's every move. An hour loomed like an invisible guillotine above them. A stifling silence enveloped the scene, broken only by Long Ji's slowly cooling corpse and the expanding dark crimson pool beneath him, silently reminding all present that the recent events were no mere nightmare. Time passed, each second heavier than the last. At last, someone cracked under the pressure, collapsing. "I don't want to die. I don't want to die." A young woman sat on the ground, clutching her knees, her muffled sobs igniting the pent-up emotions within the crowd. "It's all Long Ji's fault. If he hadn't provoked that demon, we wouldn't be in this predicament. What good does that do now? We need to think of a plan. We have just an hour. What do we do? What can we do? We are mere lambs to the slaughter, either to serve or be left to perish." A voice filled with resentment and bitterness echoed through the throng. "To serve? At least that means survival. And you want to go out there? The acid rain has just stopped. Who knows what horrors await? Can you survive the night alone?" A more pragmatic voice countered. The crowd began to fracture. A small group huddled together, whispering fervently, "I would rather die than be a dog to such a person. He killed long ago. He is a devil," shouted a loyalist, eyes red with fury. "Give it a rest. With your build, you wouldn't even suffice as a snack for him," a shrewd-looking thin man scoffed. "This is survival of the fittest. Following Long Gu was a matter of no choice. Now, this new path is far more promising, gilded and weighty. Only a fool wouldn't embrace it. But he wants us to trade our worth. I'm just a delivery driver. What worth do I have?" Someone lamented despairingly. "Are you mad? You may have no worth, but you still have strength. If all else fails, you can at least labor. It's better than being devoured by zombies outside. This is a post-apocalyptic version of equitable labor distribution, understand? At least it's fair." These debates were relayed back to the Ark of Home through the drone's high-definition audio capture, word for word. Mia lounged with her legs crossed, observing with keen interest. "Commander, this lot down there is rather amusing. Such a variety of human conditions. That thin fellow shows promise as a strategist." Chun Mo remained silent, gazing intently at the screen. His expression devoid of emotion, akin to a deity observing an ant colony. 40 minutes swiftly elapsed. Eventually, someone made a choice. With a hum, a battered Wuling Hongguang, under the scrutiny of the crowd, was the first to rev its engine. A scruffy middle-aged man leaned out of the window, addressing a few familiar faces. "Brothers, I'm a worthless life, a burden if I stay. I'll take my chances outside. Life and death are fated. Wealth and honor are in the heavens. Take care, everyone." With that, he pressed the accelerator, and the van, seeming on the verge of disintegration, was the first to depart the parking lot. His departure toppled the first domino. One after another, dozens of vehicles roared to life. Among them were free-spirited loners unwilling to be restrained, die-hard remnants of Long Gu, and many ordinary individuals gripped by fear of the future, preferring to tread a familiar path into the abyss. Silently, they gathered their belongings, without a sound, without farewells. Casting a final